This scene opens in a dimly lit warehouse littered with bodies and a discarded handgun, where our main character is currently running for his life and completely out of breath, trying to piece together the chaotic events of the fateful day he actually died. Suddenly, massive black tentacles erupt from the shadows, forcing him to sprint across the debris, desperate to reach the fallen pistol before the writhing monsters can corner him. Spinning around with zero time to aim or formulate an actual plan, he squeezes the trigger and unleashes a desperate barrage of gunfire into the darkness, landing several direct hits on a terrifying tooth-filled maw that shrugs off the bullets, only for a rogue tentacle to instantly impale him straight through the chest, bringing a brutally violent end to what was supposed to be just another boring workday. Gritting his teeth, our boy desperately grabs the slimy appendage currently boring a hole through his chest and screams for his mysterious ally to strike before his consciousness fades away entirely, prompting the red-haired warrior in golden armor to unleash a blinding high-speed sword strike, carving through the writhing mass of darkness with a flurry of effortless, lethal slashes, which completely shreds the shadow beast into harmless floating chunks of dark matter, leaving our hero to violently spray blood as the severed tentacle finally slips free, before he slumps against the metal lockers with a gaping fatal wound in his torso. Wheezing through a mouthful of blood, the kid realizes his first day is officially his last, while the golden-armored savior calmly sheathes her blade amidst the settling dust of the warehouse, staring down at him with a cold, unreadable expression that offers absolutely zero comfort. Looking down at his rapidly bleeding form, the golden-armored warrior leans in close, hovering her glowing hand over his chest to offer some bittersweet parting words, admitting that despite her incredible powers, saving his life is completely out of the question, which our dying boy takes surprisingly well, coughing up blood while claiming he always wanted to be a hero, before weakly reaching out to grab her hand with the very last of his strength. Asking for her name since dying without knowing who saved the world feels a bit awkward, prompting her to introduce herself as Raylina, a legendary Valkyrie of the Dawn, who gently squeezes his hand and finally addresses our dying hero by his name, Noah, thanking him for single-handedly saving the entire world from a horrific, shadowy doom, right as his vision fades to black, ending his short-lived heroic career before it even started. Suddenly a glowing red core begins to fracture with a sharp echoing crack, revealing a lone warrior standing defiantly against a massive terrifying horde of demonic beasts, who casually readies his blazing red spear as waves of pure fire erupt around him, right before an armored lion-like monster leaps from the darkness with a deafening roar. Without flinching, the spearman drives his weapon straight through the beast's chest in midair, only for an even larger tooth-filled worm monster to immediately rise from the shadows, prompting the mysterious fighter to flash a sinister red-eyed grin at his next victim. Then he fearlessly dashes straight into the chaotic army to start his next bloody crusade, while Noah suddenly wakes up floating in a quiet cosmic void completely devoid of any physical pain, clutching his head in confusion as his memories of the real world begin fading away. Noah tries to process the chaotic memories of that terrifying monster and this mysterious Valkyrie, wondering if this bizarre star-filled cosmic void is actually his new afterlife before spinning around to check if he is truly alone in this endless space, only for massive dark tentacles to suddenly wrap around him from the cosmic shadows, demanding to know what he possesses as they introduce themselves as the incarnation of the void. They explain that his shattered soul was scattered across the rifts, but they managed to recreate him, prompting Noah to offer a highly skeptical thank you to the floating blue flame of his soul, though staring at his glowing hand only leaves him feeling completely numb and detached. This cosmic entity quickly shuts down his gratitude, demanding the mysterious seal currently in his possession, leaving our boy completely bewildered since he has absolutely no idea what seal they are talking. This cosmic entity explains that a mysterious seal bonded with Noah's soul when he died, which sounds great in theory, except our boy has absolutely no idea how soul-searching actually works. But since he prefers not to anger the giant space octopus, he takes a deep breath, and suddenly a brilliant blue light erupts from his chest, completely catching him off guard, summoning a holographic system screen that helpfully lists his current age status as officially dead. Staring at the floating interface, Noah can barely believe his desperate attempt actually worked, though the screen only raises more questions by confirming the seal is permanently fused to his soul, leaving the cosmic entity to grumble about how separating the seal is now basically impossible. Hearing this, our hero can only offer a beautifully sarcastic shrug of disappointment, prompting the entity to offer him a new life and untold power, provided he becomes their puppet. Looking entirely unfazed, Noah casually asks what happens if he decides to reject their generous offer, and the cosmic entity immediately threatens to rip his soul away without a second thought, planning to digest his essence just to scrape out whatever power remains inside the seal, which earns a sarcastic grin from our boy as he realizes free will is completely off the table. Still, he jokingly asks if he can get a lawyer before signing his afterlife away, prompting the giant space octopus to explain that soul pacts are governed solely by spiritual strength, a detail Noah immediately calls out as a totally rigged deal since he cannot trust them, but with his memories rapidly slipping away into the void with every passing second, he desperately tries to hold on to the fading sensation of what it actually felt like to be alive, before slowly reaching out to accept the pact, wondering what terrifying price he will ultimately have to pay. Noah clenches his fist and flat-out refuses the system prompt, knowing void pacts are a scam. He boldly calls out the entity's bluff, realizing a literal god wouldn't need to ask for permission. This entity calls Noah a perplexing soul right before launching another wave of dark tentacles, which instantly wrap around his limbs and bind our boy tightly in place, squeezing the air right out of him as the shadows creep closer to his face. Suddenly, a hooded cosmic entity made of swirling galaxies manifests to reject his refusal, looming over Noah while the dark appendages keep him completely pinned to the spot. This entity gets right in his face, offering a lovely alternative of harvesting his soul upon death. Noah tells them to buzz off, but the rigged system screen simply changes both options to yes, leaving him completely bound in darkness as his spirit slowly begins to break under the pressure. This cosmic entity tilts its head in genuine confusion, offering him godhood and absolute worship, but Noah refuses to bow to a monster, even as the dark tentacles squeeze tighter, prompting the galaxy-faced entity to ask what exactly it will take to make a deal, as the suffocating grip suddenly releases and drops our boy back onto his hands and knees. Catching his breath, Noah reminds the entity that spiritual strength is supposed to govern their pact, boldly proposing a new deal where his own spirit takes full control of the contract, which the entity laughs off, threatening to erase him from existence right then and there, only for Noah to flash a smug smirk, calling out their inability to actually do it. Amused by his sheer audacity, the cosmic entity bursts into laughter and accepts the terms, triggering a massive painful surge of purple energy that begins transforming his soul for the real world. As the swirling purple energy of the void wraps tightly around Noah's physical form, a system notification pops up to confirm his transformation is complete and rebirth has officially begun, with the cosmic entity flashing a massive toothy grin eager to watch his next moves, before our boy suddenly plunges headfirst into a swirling pool of dark liquid energy, only for the system to announce he has successfully arrived in a brand new world called Arender. Meanwhile, a group of hooded cultists chants dramatic praises around a glowing red-hot summoning circle, completely unaware that their terrifying abyssal demon is actually just a very confused headache-ridden Noah. One hooded summoner immediately panics, absolutely losing his mind because their supposed demon can actually speak, prompting the rest of the cult to desperately rationalize this as some ancient divine test, leaving Noah sitting awkwardly in the spotlight as a bunch of weirdos bow down to worship him. Before Noah can even process his surroundings, a bound and gagged woman is dragged onto the stone, as the lead cultist begs him to accept her very life as a sacrificial offering to their new god, leaving our boy completely horrified as he realizes he has accidentally joined a literal human sacrifice. To make matters worse, a massive bald executioner immediately draws a giant sword with terrifying ease, preparing to slice the poor woman in half right in front of his very eyes, prompting Noah to desperately search his mind for any kind of cheat code to stop this madness, which instantly triggers a glowing blue system screen that helpfully generates a brand new survival quest, telling him his only real option right now is to run for his absolute life, an instruction he is more than happy to follow as he prepares to bolt from the altar. Realizing these crazy cultists actually think he is some kind of all-powerful, bloodthirsty, ancient elemental, standing tall on the altar, Noah demands to know where he is, pointing accusingly at the cultists, who immediately bow and tremble, explaining they summoned him to Arender in exchange for an awakened's life. Noah puts on a dramatic show of anger, though internally he cringes hard at his own terrible acting. This panicked cultist quickly try to reassure their great one that he can enter the material realm at will. Sitting back to think, our boy desperately tries to plan his next move with zero information, prompting the system to ding and unlock the Identify perk, a universal skill for analyzing his surroundings. Peeking through his fingers, Noah decides to test this new power on the people standing right before him. His scan reveals a weak cultist, a deadly abyssal executioner and a captured flame warden who might be his ticket out. Realizing he needs a massive distraction to free her, Noah spots a glowing blue screen offering a solution, and eagerly reaches into the inventory slot to grab a mysterious scroll that could change everything. Noah pulls out the scroll, completely baffling the cultist who must mistake his basic inventory trick or high-tier space magic. Turns out the scroll is just a cosmic welcome letter detailing the terms of his highly volatile soul contract. Seizing the moment, our boy raises the scroll and dramatically decrees that the sacrificial woman must be spared. This sudden change of plans immediately throws the hooded cultists into a wave of confused sweaty murmurs, prompting Noah to flash a menacing glare and coldly ask if they dare to reject his divine command. This panicked summoners quickly stammer that skipping the blood sacrifice is completely unprecedented in their dark history, but Noah shuts them down with a sharp shout, casually stepping off the altar to take control, walking straight over to the bound captive to inspect his supposed new servant up close. Leaning down, He quietly whispers that he has no clue what is happening, begging her to play along, instructing her to rise on his cue so they can both escape. The cultist then instantly breaks his cool facade as he realizes his bluff has completely and utterly failed. One of the cultists points out the obvious, screaming that their elemental is actually just a regular human, prompting the furious cult chief to order his capture just as Noah's escape quest officially fails, forcing him into a brutal new survival quest where his only option is to escape the cult leader's life. The cultist is then forced to leave the cult leader's life, as Noah's escape quest officially fails, forcing him into a brutal new survival quest where his only option is to fight or die. As a heavy brass key clatters onto the stone floor during the chaotic scuffle, seizing the initiative, our boy mounts the giant executioner and unleashes a relentless barrage of savage punches, leaving the massive brute completely incapacitated and trembling on the cold stone floor. Until Noah halts his final blow, his eyes locking onto the shiny key resting just out of reach, Noah lunges forward across the stone floor, desperately reaching out to grab the fallen brass key. Snatching the metal in midair, he hurls it toward the captive woman while screaming for her to wake up, but as the key flies through the air, a sharp blade suddenly flashes right past his face, forcing our boy to spin around and raise his fists as another cultist steps up to fight, while the massive bald executioner charges back into the fray, swinging his giant sword with absolute fury. Suddenly dark purple tendrils of void energy erupt from the ground, wrapping tightly around Noah's neck, leaving him completely paralyzed as the cosmic entity's shadow rises to mock his pathetic struggle, which is terrible timing because the executioner's massive blade is already coming down with lethal speed, plunging straight through Noah's chest and instantly sending his holographic health bar plummeting down to critical levels, as the brutal strike skewers him completely, cementing a disastrous start to his new fantasy life. Coughing up blood on the cold stone floor, Noah looks up to see the executioner raising his massive sword, but a sudden fiery blast clangs against the blade, completely catching our boy off guard as the massive executioner screams in absolute agony while bright flames engulf his entire upper body. Staring wide-eyed at the sudden turn of events, Noah can barely believe his eyes, because the flame warden has finally broken free, standing tall as blazing fire wraps around her arms, and with a fierce glare, she unleashes a massive wave of fire that sweeps across the chamber, leaving the remaining cultists to surround her with drawn weapons, completely outmatched by her raw power, until she spins into a massive vortex of raging flames, incinerating everything in her path. Furious at his useless minions, the cult leader steps forward to handle the fiery threat himself, while a sneaky cultist lunges from the shadows to finish off our crawling, heavily injured hero. Noah's health bar plummets to a measly 8% as a sneaky cultist prepares to strike, but the cosmic entity's dark power suddenly surges, forcing a brutal counterstab through the shadow's chest, sending a massive wave of fresh blood splattering across the cold stone floor, which instantly triggers a barrage of system notifications announcing the common cultist has been completely consumed. As the bloody blade swings down to finish the job, more crimson splatters across the chamber. This system confirms he somehow completed a secret objective to free the captive flame warden, Aurelia, leaving our boy staring in absolute disbelief at the glowing blue screens floating before his eyes. Unfortunately, his health bar continues to tick down to a critical 6% while he bleeds out, forcing him to collapse face-first onto the hard stone floor in complete and utter exhaustion, cursing his absolute trash luck for seemingly dying the exact same day he arrived in this world. Just as his life flashes before his eyes, a system prompt offers him a path awakening, and before he can even process the transition, Noah wakes up staring at a giant claw machine, realizing he has somehow been transported straight into a brightly lit, noisy arcade, a nostalgic setting he definitely did not expect to see after almost getting skewered. Suddenly a calm voice cuts through the neon noise, welcoming our boy to the area, revealing a neat-looking clerk with glasses casually waving at him from behind the prize counter, prompting Noah to immediately drop his guard and demand to know who this guy is, openly wondering if this is just another annoying void god trying to play mind games. But the clerk quickly raises his hands, begging Noah to chill out and let him explain. Introducing himself as Dylan, a guide created entirely from the depths of Noah's own subconscious mind, Noah crosses his arms skeptically, listening to the guide complain about his lack of a last name, as Dylan casually confirms he is indeed a representative of the void sent to manage their pact, explaining that he only exists inside this mental realm because of their newly forged contract. Shrugging off the attitude, our boy wanders over to one of the retro arcade cabinets, grabbing the joystick to ask if this entire nostalgic setup is actually his personal astral script, which instantly triggers a bright flash of light as the old CRT monitor zips to life, displaying a flashy premium system notification that offers him 3 different awakening paths at once. Leaning back, Dylan explains that an astral script is simply a magical manifestation of his soul, revealing that his soul chose this specific nostalgic layout to help him process his power, prompting Noah to smile as he realizes it looks exactly like the arcade from his childhood. Noah hovers his hand over the arcade buttons, asking what he's actually supposed to do here. Dylan taps his foot, explaining that guiding people through an awakening isn't usually his job, but since this is a special case, he instructs our boy to just hit the start button, which immediately boots up a retro screen that begins integrating Noah's past life experiences. Turns out he has to choose 3 paths based on power, constitution, agility, and mystic attributes, with Dylan explaining that these choices will ultimately shape his core stats and make him stronger. Pointing at the screen, Noah asks happens if he goes with a basic warrior path, prompting a pixelated character to pop up, showing a pretty standard stat boost per level. So our boy jiggles the joystick to quickly scroll through the other basic physical classes before Dylan points him toward the other machines, agreeing that these starting options are way too boring. Pointing to the next arcade machine, Dylan suggests a healing-focused path since Noah is currently bleeding out. Intrigued by the suggestion, our boy steps up and firmly presses the glowing white button, hoping a quick class change will instantly patch up his heavily bleeding material body, only for Dylan to crush his hopes, prompting Noah to spot a rare option called Exsanguinator, which lets him manipulate blood to either heal himself or absolutely wreck his enemies. A perfect dual-purpose class that Dylan agrees is a solid choice for staying alive, leaving our boy with 2 more crucial slot selections to lock in his build. This guide eagerly points toward a legendary option, practically begging Noah to take the bait, but Noah immediately rejects the legendary Void's Herald path to avoid becoming a literal cosmic puppet, choosing instead to focus on practical combat skills that will actually keep him breathing. Next, he checks out the epic Astral Walker path, which offers sweet agility and mystic stat boosts, followed by the Void Hunter class, a perfect fit for tracking down anything in his way. Satisfied with his triple class setup, Noah locks in his final choices with a confident nod, prompting both of them to let out a massive sigh of relief as the tension fades, and with a quick pull of the joystick, he slams down on the arcade buttons, only to flinch in surprise as the retro machine suddenly starts acting incredibly weird. Dark, shadowy liquid begins oozing from the monitor, accompanied by a deeply unsettling rustling sound. Before massive void tendrils burst out of the screen to wrap around his hands, dragging our boy forward as he struggles desperately against the overwhelming parasitic rip, while Dylan casually smiles, mentioning he completely forgot to warn him about the painful integration process. As the dark void portal swirls violently above him, Noah braces for the agonizing awakening process, while Dylan watches with a smug smirk as shadowy tendrils wrap tightly around our boy's face, prompting Noah to scream a heartfelt curse at his guide before getting sucked into the abyss, and instantly a barrage of system screens confirms he has successfully unlocked 3 powerful new classes, boosting his core stats across the board and handing him 14 juicy free attribute points to spend. Back in the real world, our boy gasps for air as he shivers on the bloody floor, immediately activating his newly acquired blood drain skill to keep his soul anchored to his body, which instantly boosts his passive health regeneration by a massive 100% for the next 5 minutes, causing the fatal stab wound in his chest to knit back together with glowing crimson threads. Unfortunately, the furious cult leader is already stepping up to personally put an end to his miraculous recovery. A dark void tendril suddenly whips across the room, striking Aurelia right in the face, as the cult leader unleashes his dark magic, summoning multiple shadowy tendrils to corner her, but she simply wipes her mouth, looking completely unfazed as hot steam rises from her skin. Meanwhile, a new system quest pops up for Noah, featuring a highly sarcastic optional objective to simply not die. Back in the fight, Aurelia leaps backward to dodge another massive sweep of the dark tendrils, raising her arm to block a heavy strike as the shadowy whips keep raining down on her, until she clenches her fist, letting her fiery magic burst forth in a brilliant display of raw power, charging straight toward the floating cult leader while deflecting his dark attacks with her blazing fists. While the madman laughs hysterically, completely unaware that a very angry fire mage is about to ruin his day, resulting in a massive explosive clash of fire and shadow that shakes the entire underground chamber. Staring at the ridiculous quest screen, Noah desperately tries to figure out his next move, especially since his newly updated status screen shows 14 unassigned attribute points waiting to be spent, leaving him to debate whether to dump them all into one stat or play it safe. With a sudden spark of determination, our boy decides to go for a balanced build, instantly boosting his stats across the board to give himself a fighting chance in this madness. Meanwhile, Aurelia continues her relentless assault, diving straight through the dark tendrils to strike the leader, landing a heavy blow before gracefully pivoting away as the cult leader struggles to keep up, only for her to slam her blazing fist directly into the stone floor with explosive force, shattering the cult leader's defensive stone barriers into a million tiny useless pieces. This sudden display of raw power leaves the madman sweating as his smug confidence completely evaporates. Seizing her chance, Aurelia rains down a massive barrage of fiery boulders from above, forcing the panicked cult leader to quickly weave a defensive shield of dark magic, which results in a massive blinding explosion that rocks the entire underground chamber. Meanwhile, Noah spots a discarded sword on the floor and quickly grabs it, immediately storing the weapon into his handy system inventory for later use, before pushing himself up to stand, feeling much better after his quick healing. Glancing back toward the center of the room, our boy suddenly freezes, calling out to Aurelia as she gets violently blown back by a powerful shockwave, only to turn around and find the floating cult leader looming right behind him, who hilariously tries to claim this whole murderous ritual was just a giant misunderstanding. Noah quickly plays along, claiming he is a divine emissary sent to deliver a vital message. This cult leader demands to know if our boy thinks he is an absolute idiot, but the madman's furious expression quickly shifts into pure, unadulterated disbelief, as Noah dramatically unrolls a scroll, addressing the cult leader by his actual name, claiming the cosmic entity itself has personally sent down a divine response to his prayers. Our boy flashes a smug grin, hyping up the scroll as a once-in-a-time honor, except the cult leader instantly sees right through the bluff, preparing to strike, unleashing a massive wave of dark energy that forces Noah to panic in real time, prompting him to quickly activate his newly acquired Astral Walker Blink skill to escape, teleporting safely out of harm's way just as the dark magic obliterates his previous position. Reappearing midair, Noah immediately summons his inventory screen to grab his newly stored weapon, reaching right through the glowing interface to pull out the discarded sword, ready to turn this desperate magical skirmish into a very personal physical encounter. And with a sudden drop, our boy dives straight toward the distracted cult leader, driving the blade clean through the madman's chest in one fluid, brutal motion, leaving the shocked cult leader spitting up blood as his grand plans instantly fall apart, while Noah slides gracefully across the stone floor to secure his landing. Clutching his bleeding chest, the weakened villain can only gasp as Noah yells for backup, prompting Aurelia to stomp her foot down, unleashing a massive wave of explosive fire. As she charges forward to personally deliver the final blazing blow to their enemy, Aurelia delivers a devastating, fire-infused kick straight to the weakened cult leader's chest, sending him flying across the chamber like a flaming ragdoll in a spectacular explosion, as he violently crashes into the stone wall, coughing up a fresh wave of blood. But our fiery mage isn't even close to finished, leaping high into the air and unleashing a relentless barrage of blazing punches directly onto the helpless villain, absolutely obliterating his smug face with a series of highly satisfying explosive strikes before raising her leg high to charge up one final, devastating fire-infused axe kick, which slams down with enough force to officially put the cult leader out of commission. Instantly, a massive wave of system notifications alerts Noah that his 3 classes have leveled up, boosting his core stats even further and granting him another 14 free attribute points to spend. A rare tome reward pops up alongside a weird notification about absorbing the dead boss, and with the threat finally neutralized, our boy collapses backward onto the stone floor in pure relief, only for Aurelia to step over him, demanding some immediate answers about his bizarre arrival, prompting Noah to cheekily tell her she's welcome instead of explaining his magical summoning circle entrance. But the fiery mage isn't playing around, summoning a flame to threaten this potential shape-shifting monster, demanding to know if he is actually a human native to this fantasy world, which instantly triggers a massive wave of panic in our boy's mind. As he realizes telling the truth might get him executed on the spot, so he quickly decides to lie, firmly denying that he is from another world, leaving her to suspiciously ask if he is allied with the cultists or the Iron Fists. Noah pushes himself up, genuinely clueless about these factions while Aurelia aggressively demands some straight answers. He quickly denies any connection, staring nervously at the blazing fire swirling in her clenched fist. Letting the flames die down, Aurelia actually apologizes for her intense interrogation and thanks him for the assist. She admits that getting betrayed by her own adventuring team earlier today has left her completely on edge. Our boy offers a sympathetic nod, agreeing that she has had an absolutely brutal day. Trying to explain his weird behavior, Noah mentions his system quest literally told him to avoid dying, which only leaves the fiery mage completely baffled by his bizarre otherworldly gaming terminology. Giving up on the explanation, Noah casually reveals he died at his job before getting reincarnated here. This wild claim completely shocks Aurelia, who points out that resurrection requires divine intervention. But our boy simply shrugs, admitting he is just as clueless about this magical mess as she is. Aurelia slowly paces around, admitting outerworlders are rare, but she finally believes he isn't lying, before she suddenly plops down onto the cold stone floor to sit cross-legged, prompting Noah to ask why she is chilling instead of planning their immediate escape. But she just gives him a knowing look, realizing he truly is clueless about this world. She clasps her hands together, explaining that meditation is the standard way to replenish spent mana, pointing out that Noah's own aura is practically running on empty right now, which leads our boy to awkwardly explain that his old world only had cheap magic tricks, leaving him to sweat nervously as he wonders if his creepy blood-draining class is a massive taboo. Thankfully, the fiery mage waves off his worries, explaining the local guild only outlaws necromancy and sacrifices. Just as he prepares to join her, a bright blue system screen suddenly pops up overhead. This system immediately rewards him with a meditation skill, doubling his passive mana regeneration rate, prompting Noah to scroll through his interface to see what other tricks he has unlocked, which brings up his updated stat sheet alongside 3 highly intriguing class abilities, leading our boy to tap on the final skill to check out its description, revealing a devastating spell that promises to vaporize absolutely anything standing in his path. He immediately tests it out, though a system warning alerts him that it drains his health, but our boy just grins, knowing his blood-draining class will easily offset that cost. Meanwhile, Aurelia finishes her meditation and stretches, announcing she is fully charged and ready to move, as they both walk past the crater containing the thoroughly tenderized remains of the cult leader, until the fiery mage suddenly leans down with a triumphant smirk, having spotted something valuable. Aurelia holds up a fancy golden cylinder, explaining it's actually a high-capacity spatial storage device. She mentions they can easily crack it open for loot once they reach the city, prompting Noah to wonder if he can replicate that handy trick with his own system inventory, but Aurelia warns him that these physical devices are strictly blood-bound to their owners, leaving her to aggressively search the dead cult leader's corpse for some kind of key. So our boy asks to examine the golden device, catching it as she casually tosses it over. At that exact moment, his eyes glow with a strange blue light as he inspects the artifact, and his cheat code system immediately offers to bypass the lock and transfer all the loot, leading Noah to happily tap the confirmation button without a single second thought, instantly rewarding him with a massive haul of rare mana stones, gear, and powerful magical items. While rummaging through the cult leader's clothes, Aurelia mentions she is also looking for a cellar key, only for Noah to casually hold up a shiny gold key, leaving her completely dumbfounded. He explains he looted it from the storage device, along with a bunch of other high-tier gear, as he tosses the key to the stunned mage, who can't believe his bypass cheat actually worked. Deciding to ditch his torn shirt, our boy happily grabs a fresh set of dark robe, but as he slips them on, he notices a bizarre golden ring that looks incredibly suspicious, which turns out to be a creepy eyeball-embedded accessory known as the Ring of Abyssal Eye. Aurelia reassures him it's not cursed, explaining it actually grants a massive boost to his mana capacity, prompting Noah to reluctantly slip it on even if the literal eyeball keeps staring right at him, instantly upgrading his identification skills while giving his magical stats a much-needed passive boost. Suddenly, Aurelia delivers a brutal kick that sends another lingering cultist flying across the room. Noah glances over, realizing his newly upgrading identification skill lets him see her level, revealing she is a level 68 flame warden who is almost as strong as the boss, prompting our boy to quickly test out his new gear and check his inventory, as he happily summons a pair of dual daggers to practice his combat swings. Meanwhile, Aurelia slowly walks over to the pile of ashes left by the cult leader, summoning a small flame in her hand as she looks down with a solemn expression, asking Noah if that desperate fight was actually his very first time taking a life. She admits her years of adventuring have made it incredibly easy to spot the signs, leading Noah to ask why she still chooses this dangerous life of constant violence. She explains that her burning drive comes from wanting to protect people from the world's endless evil, before turning to ask our boy if he feels any regret for taking a life today. But Noah calmly shakes his head, knowing it was strictly a matter of kill or be killed. Aurelia smiles in agreement, pointing out that those cultists and her betrayers would have only claimed more victims, prompting Noah to reach back into his handy system screen to pull out his newly acquired skill tomes, asking her if she thinks he actually has what it takes to survive as a professional adventurer. And she happily lists his strengths, praising his quick thinking, cool head, and solid de-escalation tactics. Flashing a genuine smile, our boy gladly accepts the rare compliment from the high-level mage, silently thanking his years of gaming and lying on job interviews for preparing him for this moment, as Aurelia explains he needs a proper magic circle to use the books as a conduit. Aurelia watches in absolute disbelief as a bright blue light suddenly erupts from the book, since Noah casually bypasses the standard magic circle rules to activate the tome directly, leaving the ancient book to flutter open and dissolve into pure system data, prompting our boy to confidently tap the confirmation screen to unlock a new ability, which immediately asks him to choose a path for his brand new site-based skill. He instantly selects the Void Hunter path, officially consuming the common skill tome, which immediately unlocks a powerful new passive ability called the Void Hunter's Eye. And thanks to his creepy new eyeball ring, the skill instantly jumps to level 3, unleashing a massive beam of dark energy that completely envelopes our boy in power, as he slowly opens his newly enhanced eyes to see the world in a whole new light. Noah is absolutely thrilled, feeling like he just upgraded his vision to a crisp 4K resolution, and he excitedly turns to Aurelia to brag about his brand new ability to see mana. But she immediately bursts his bubble, clarifying that he is actually just looking at her aura, prompting our boy to look down at his own hands as a purple glow envelopes them. He calls the sensation sick, leaving the confused mage to wonder why having an aura is an illness. Shifting his focus, Noah places his hand on the second tome to unlock another rare ability, which instantly dissolves into a crimson swirl of data, granting him a basic level 1 bleed effect. Aurelia nods in approval, noting that weapon-inflicted bleed status effects are incredibly rare and valuable. Before they head out, she hands him a low-grade mana stone, warning him never to eat anything stronger, dramatically clutching her throat to warn him that high-tier stones will cause fatal mana poisoning. Aurelia explains that eating a slightly higher-grade stone grants a temporary power boost, but the immediate side effect is agonizing paralysis that is usually completely lethal, and consuming anything stronger will literally make his body explode on the spot, leaving him to suffer a slow, agonizing death as pure mana shreds his insides. Noah carefully pockets the dangerous red crystal, ready to finally get to work, as they navigate the dark stone corridors to search for hidden treasure rooms, while Aurelia wraps her hands, hoping to find clues about her missing target, recalling how the cultists locked all their prisoners away in deep underground dungeons. This fiery mage warns him to stay alert for hidden traps, lingering cultists, or worse, prompting them to quietly venture deeper into the eerie silence of the ancient ruins. As they quietly navigate the dark stone corridors, Noah keeps a close eye on their surroundings. Aurelia suddenly stops at a doorway, turning back to ask if he still has the golden storage device, which prompts our boy to casually hand the shiny artifact right back to her. She immediately channels her fiery mana, letting the flames engulf her bandaged wrist to activate its power, raising her glowing fist high to act as a makeshift flashlight in the pitch-black room, illuminating a massive stone tablet covered in strange ancient ruins that detail the cult's dark history, leading Noah to reach out and touch the carvings, realizing human greed never truly changes across worlds. This fiery mage bitterly lists the classic excuses, from the simple allure of power to being led completely astray, pointing out that these cultists were still fully grown adults who chose to commit these atrocities, before she kneels down to search the floor, leaving Noah to ponder the grim reality of this world. Pointing at a flickering stone floor, Aurelia warns Noah that it's actually an illusionary trap. Our boy clarifies he doesn't pity the cultists, but wonders about those forced into this life. Aurelia explains that the holy priests of Hellion have been purging abyssal corruption for ages, using a sacred purification ritual designed to burn away any trace of dark influence, which basically translates to a brutal public execution where survivors are left completely broken. Hearing this, Noah clenches his fist in disgust, calling out the sheer cruelty of their system, but the fiery mage coldly shrugs it off as an unnecessary evil of their world. Suddenly, Aurelia halts in her tracks, pointing ahead as her eyes light up with excitement, revealing a massive stone door sealed tight by a swirling vortex of blue magical energy. Deciding against finding a key, she casually prepares to punch the magical barrier into oblivion. Aurelia channels her explosive fire magic, letting the flames wrap around her bandaged fist, and she winds up a massive punch, ready to obliterate the magical barrier, unleashing a devastating explosion that completely shatters the stone door into tiny pieces, leaving Noah to dryly comment on her incredibly subtle and quiet breaching tactics, as they step inside what appears to be the cult leader's private study. This fiery mage flips through a dusty book, finding absolutely nothing of value, prompting our boy to suggest that a paranoid cult leader would hide his real treasure. So he begins tapping his foot along the floorboards to search for hollow spots, until he spots a suspicious book on the shelf and gives it a firm pull, triggering a hidden mechanism that immediately rewards him with a face full of ancient dust. A rare skill book prompt suddenly pops up, offering him a powerful void summoning ability, but our boy quickly swerves the notification, prioritizing his search for the hidden room first. Stepping onto a pile of heavy books while explaining his tactics are strictly movie-inspired, which pays off instantly when pulling a specific volume reveals a hidden keyhole, prompting him to pull that handy gold key right back out of his inventory, sliding it into the slot with a satisfying click that echoes through the room, causing the massive wooden bookshelf to rumble and slowly slide out of the way, revealing a dark hidden passageway that leaves the high-level mage completely stunned by his success, leaving her to wonder what kind of bizarre world teaches its citizens such specific dungeon-crawling tricks, as they appear inside only to find ominous blood splatter staining the cold stone floor. Aurelia raises her bandaged finger, casting a small glowing light spell to illuminate the dark path, revealing a grim blood-splattered dungeon corridor lined with heavy iron cell doors on both sides. When suddenly a bright blue system screen pops up right in front of Noah's face, offering him a brand new hidden quest that warns of dark secrets buried behind these stone walls, but before he can even accept, the fiery mage charges ahead with pure rage in her eyes, unleashing a devastating flaming punch that completely obliterates a creepy pale monster lurking in the shadows, only to find a horrifying pile of fused writhing bodies blocking their path forward, as the tragic victims scream out in absolute agony, begging for their suffering to end, prompting Aurelia to raise her blazing fist once more, warning the tragic abominations to stay back, while Noah watches in horror, deeply unsettled by the sheer helplessness of their agonizing screams. Stepping forward, Aurelia raises her hands as blazing flames erupt around her bandaged wrists. She unleashes a massive pillar of fire to incinerate the horrifying pile of flesh, but the writhing abomination merely thrashes in the flames, refusing to go down easily. Noah watches in sheer disbelief, wondering how this grotesque nightmare is still clinging to life, as his hands begin to tremble from the sheer pressure of the creature's overwhelming malice. This agonizing screams of the fused victims echo through the dark corridor as they twitch violently, unleashing a deafening, high-pitched shriek that triggers a sudden warning from Noah's system, which immediately slaps our boy with a nasty terror debuff, tanking all of his stats. Coughing up blood from the mental shock, Noah barely has time to react before it leaps, crashing down with a brutal strike that shatters the stone floor right where he stood. In a desperate bid to survive, Noah instantly triggers his newly acquired blink skill, teleporting him safely out of harm's way just as the creature's attack crushes the stone floor. But Aurelia isn't so lucky as the grotesque abomination suddenly turns its fury on her, slamming the powerful mage hard against the stone wall with a brutal, bone-shattering strike, leaving the screeching monster to gloat over its sudden upper hand in the dark corridor. Fortunately, our boy isn't about to let his only ticket out of here get pulverized. Spamming his teleportation ability so fast that the system immediately upgrades it to level 2, which allows him to reappear right above the beast and deliver a heavy, distracting blow. Though his desperate counterattack barely seems to register on the massive, rive-riding pile of flesh, forcing a bruised Aurelia to struggle back to her feet while cursing their terrible luck. Seeing the monster prepare to finish off Aurelia, Noah refuses to let his ticket out die, and he instantly grips his dagger to trigger his newly upgraded teleportation skill once again, plunging his blade deep into the beast's back, though the system warns it resists his bleed effect. As the giant tail swings back to crush him, our boy casually teleports out of harm's way, but a sudden system alert reveals his mana pool has plummeted to a critical 9%. Realizing he is completely out of options, Noah desperately glares at the dangerous red crystal in his hand, swallowing the stone to instantly refill his mana while accepting the agonizing poison side effects. Unleashing a relentless flurry of rapid slashes that carve right through the creature's thick flesh, before landing gracefully on the stone floor as the massive abomination finally collapses in a pool of blood. Exhausted and trembling from the poison, Noah prepares to drain the beast's blood to finish the job. This system immediately alerts Noah that the flesh-grafted horror has successfully resisted his bleed effect, forcing our boy to quickly blink back into the air to avoid a counterattack, where he delivers a rapid slash that finally triggers the elusive bleed status effect, but the monster instantly shrugs it off as his mana plummets to a critical 4%. Left with no other choice, Noah lands and desperately crunches down on the dangerous mana stone, instantly boosting his stats to 200% while triggering a lethal dose of mana poisoning, allowing him to channel a massive swirl of dark void energy right above the beast, before unleashing a devastating blast that completely obliterates the screaming abomination's head. With the threat neutralized, our boy gracefully leaps off the massive pile of dead flesh, though the agonizing poison coursing through his veins means his struggle is far from over. Unleashing his boosted strength, Noah crosses his blades to deliver a massive dual energy slash, carving through the grotesque flesh pile with a relentless flurry of high-speed strikes, which triggers a double system upgrade that pushes his core combat skills to level 3, prompting our boy to prepare one final decisive blow to end this nightmare. Diving headfirst to plunge his blades deep into the writhing mass of flesh, sending the screaming abomination into its death throes just as his massive stat buff expires. But the sudden onset of paralysis and a splitting migraine leaves him completely vulnerable, allowing the stubborn beast to retaliate by launching its massive fleshy tongue right at him. Before he can recover, the slimy appendage wraps tightly around his paralyzed body, leaving our boy completely bound and at the mercy of a very angry abomination. Aurelia remains completely unconscious, slumped helplessly in a shallow pool of cold water, while the grotesque abomination greedily gulps Noah down, thinking it just scored an easy meal. Suddenly the beast's fleshy torso begins to shudder violently as something stirs deep inside. Our boy plunges his dagger right through its stomach, inflicting a critical bleed effect, triggering a massive chain of system notifications that instantly drain the monster's blood to heal him, sending the massive flesh-grafted horror crashing to the cold stone floor with a heavy thud. With a desperate surge of strength, Noah tears his way out of the creature's rubbery skin, standing tall amidst the gore while his ominous shadow flickers with a creepy red-eyed glow. Walking away from the carcass, he heads toward Aurelia as the system confirms his hard-fought victory, rewarding him with a massive wave of stat boosts and skill upgrades for surviving the nightmare. This system showers Noah with legendary loot notifications while he lies face down a pool of blood. Dragging his battered body upward, our boy tries to process the bizarre absorption notifications popping up, but the sheer physical toll of the battle quickly catches up to his exhausted mind, and he collapses back onto the cold stone floor with a heavy, bone-rattling thud, leaving both of our heroes completely unconscious in the dark, blood-soaked dungeon corridor until Noah's blood-stained hand begins to tremble violently as he slowly regains consciousness, dragging himself up onto one knee. While clutching his splitting headache in absolute agony, deciding to sit and meditate, he triggers a massive 100% boost to his mana regeneration, but a sudden violent spasm in his chest cuts his peaceful recovery short, sending him crashing back down as he desperately wonders what is happening to his body. A barrage of system alerts floods his vision, confirming he is basically a walking medical disaster. Walking over to check on him, Aurelia listens as Noah dryly admits he wishes he was unconscious. She expresses her disbelief that they both survived, openly thanking him for saving her life twice. This proud mage beats herself up over getting taken down so easily by a single monster. Stopping right in front of our boy, she pauses to address his rapidly deteriorating physical state. This high-level mage casually diagnoses his severe mana poisoning, reassuring him that it is not a big deal, while Noah struggles to sit up as she explains there is an incredibly simple cure. Her simple advice is to close his eyes and purge his remaining mana until he is completely empty. Trusting her advice, our boy closes his eyes while the mage watches him with a reassuring smile. Dark energy begins to vent from his body as the system confirms he is successfully draining mana. While Noah's heart beats wildly, a system warning pops up to alert him of his critically low mana. He collapses heavily onto the floor, coughing up blood as his mana pool officially hits 0%, but the extreme purge actually works, instantly removing the lethal mana poisoning from his battered body, leaving our boy to collapse flat on his back while Aurelia explains his recovery will take a few days, prompting Noah to weakly ask if she has any water or a spare healing potion to speed things up, which she gladly hands over, allowing him to greedily chug the liquid to patch up his wounds, before he pulls out his newly acquired legendary skill book, determined to gather every advantage he can get. Placing his blood-stained hand onto the cover as the ancient tome begins to glow with blinding light, triggering a legendary system prompt that asks if he wants to unlock the powerful new life blood ability. And with a sudden burst of golden energy, his class officially unlocks the devastating new skill. This system screen reveals his new life blood skill permanently doubles his health regeneration, prompting Aurelia to ask what it does while Noah explains his new emergency healing reserve, which immediately makes the powerful mage pout about how unfair his ridiculous luck is. Shrugging it off, Noah points out that her entire magical world is unfair to him, but their banter is cut short as a mysterious prompt asks to consume an unknown item. Swiping his hand, Noah unlocks a legendary item called the Shard of Infinite Potential, hoping this mysterious artifact will finally upgrade his basic identification skill to reveal hidden secrets, though he squints at the missing text while Aurelia explains it might be sealed or broken. Suddenly, a chaotic storm of system alerts surrounds Noah, warning him about genetic code modification, leaving our boy paralyzed on his knees while a worried Aurelia asks what is happening. While Noah panics, a flood of system notifications suddenly flashes right before his eyes, revealing a mysterious new quest to track down the scattered shards of an unknown artifact. But his body suddenly rejects the massive influx of energy, forcing him to choke up blood. Luckily, his Devourer trait kicks in to forcefully trigger a purification process on his failing body, purging the toxic corruption from his system in a violent, terrifying spray of black fluid. As he violently hacks up the remaining poison while his vision begins to blur, leaving him completely dizzy and collapsed in a massive puddle of his own dark blood. Fortunately, the system confirms the purification worked, boosting his stats and removing his debilitating fatigue, though the sheer physical exhaustion still leaves our boy barely able to keep his eyes open, and he faceplants hard onto the stone floor while a stunned Aurelia watches in absolute silence. Aurelia watches him in utter disbelief, wondering what kind of toxic wasteland our boy originally came from. Meanwhile, Noah finally gets to wash off the grime under a steaming hot shower. Reflecting on how he went from a miserable office job to absorbing blood in a single day, turns out a simple hot shower is literally enough to trigger a full system cleanse, leaving him feeling completely refreshed and looking like a brand new action hero before he sits down on a proper bed to review his updated status screen. This system reveals a massive jump in stats, along with 30 unallocated attribute points, prompting our boy to swipe the screen only to freeze in absolute shock. As he discovers his Devourer trait grants a permanent 5% boost to all attributes, he swipes to learn that his growth attribute will continuously scale with his own actions. As a massive surge of power flows through Noah, his stats shoot straight through the roof, and right on cue, Aurelia creaks the door open to check if he finally survived, prompting our boy to awkwardly offer her a turn in the steaming hot shower. But she dryly reveals she already took one while he was busy playing Sleeping Beauty, apparently cleaning herself up while dragging his heavy, unconscious body all the way to safety. Realizing he was only out for a couple of hours, Noah strokes his chin thoughtfully, before the muscular mage suddenly asks if he is finally ready to leave this dump, leaping into the air to announce they have a much better place to be. Soon the duo is riding armored beasts down a sunny forest path toward their next destination, leaving the dark, blood-soaked dungeons behind as they prepare to face whatever comes next. Entering the town, they are instantly greeted by a massive, cheering crowd of excited locals, which makes our boy ask if she gets this royal treatment everywhere they go. But Aurelia admits it only happens in tiny rural villages like this one. Looking down at the lively street, our boy decides he might actually enjoy this new life, as they slowly ride their armored mounts through the bustling, gossiping crowd of villagers. Arriving at the local stable, the duo finally dismounts to stretch their legs, while Noah affectionately the ride. Meanwhile, Aurelia hands a pouch of manicores to the stable boy for their feed. This young worker is completely stunned as he pulls out a high-value glowing crystal, leaving our boy to realize that generous tipping is a universal rule for getting good service. Aurelia warns Noah to keep his mouth shut about his origins, since nothing about him makes sense, explaining that while seasoned travelers know about outerworlders, these isolated border villagers certainly do not, meaning a talking plant would probably cause less of a scene than his bizarre existence. And they finally step inside a cozy local inn to secure a place to rest, where the friendly innkeeper immediately asks how long they plan on staying in town. Sliding over some glowing manicores, the mage books a room with 2 separate beds, before asking Noah if he wants to head upstairs while she goes to handle some business. But our boy decides to hang out downstairs to enjoy a rare moment of peace, until he accidentally lets slip another weird comment that instantly raises the innkeeper's eyebrows, earning him a stern warning from Aurelia to stop talking before he ruins everything. Chuckling at Aurelia's fiery attitude, Noah jokes with the innkeeper about how much he actually enjoys her feisty nature. Offering him a drink, the innkeeper notes that anyone emerging from the lost woods is either an idiot or an adventurer. Either way, a stiff drink is exactly what a weary traveler needs to settle their nerves. Although it is still quite early in the day, our boy decides some alcohol is exactly what he needs, prompting the host to loudly order a fresh mug of ale from his busy staff amidst the noisy tavern chatter. Before the drink arrives, Noah introduces himself and casually admits that he is indeed brand new to this world. Grabbing the heavy wooden mug, he prepares to drop a massive truth bomb on the unsuspecting local. Chugging the ale, he casually mentions he only awakened yesterday, sending the innkeeper into absolute shock. This warning falls on deaf ears as the man advises him to dump the girl before he gets killed, leaving our boy to happily savor his delicious drink without a single care in the world. Noah quickly clarifies that he only awakened because a near-death situation forced his hand, extending a hand to introduce himself as Lorien while our boy politely shakes it, and a quick system scan reveals the friendly host used to be a warrior, prompting Noah to ask what kind of monster could permanently strip away someone's magic. Lorien explains his party bit off way more than they could chew in a northern dungeon, where a translucent pearly nightmare paralyzed them instantly and slaughtered most of his crew, leaving him with zero answers about the mysterious beast that ruined his life. Chugging his drink, Noah is instantly annoyed when his new passive skill cures his intoxication, slamming his mug down in frustration because he literally cannot even get a buzz. Until Lorien points out he can just toggle the passive off to enjoy his drink. Thrilled with this loophole, Noah demands another round to celebrate his newfound cheat code, while Lorien laughs and points out that his skill is basically the ultimate hangover cure, and a short while later our boy successfully triggers a high-level intoxication debuff, only for his lifeblood passive to instantly kick in and purge the alcohol from his system. Shifting gears, Noah asks the innkeeper about the mysterious disappearances plaguing the local woods, prompting Lorien to sigh as he confirms that locals have indeed been vanishing into thin air, a dark trend that started 6 months ago when 2 searchers vanished without a trace, forcing the terrified villagers to completely abandon the forest after professional adventurers found absolutely nothing. Things only got worse when the local mines collapsed, leaving 0 survivors for the rescue teams, which led the town to seal the place off until a new squad was summoned recently. Lorien explains that sealing the mines permanently would completely ruin the local economy, especially since terrifying, ghostly howling has been echoing from the dark depths lately, raising massive concerns about a potential undead infestation that could attract the guild, which would force a total evacuation that absolutely nobody in town wants. Stepping outside to clear his head, Noah takes a stroll down the street, but he suddenly stops when he notices a noisy crowd gathering nearby, hearing anxious villagers gossip about the mayor's sudden decision to seal the mines, since the sole surviving adventurer just returned with some incredibly grim news, prompting the panicked crowd to storm right up to the mayor's office, as a weary man slowly opens the door to face the angry mob. This mayor tries to calm down a furious, bearded miner named Jerome, who loudly accuses the leader of trying to starve the entire town to death, prompting the stressed mayor to plead that sealing the mines is their only hope for survival. Squeezing through the mob, Noah suddenly bumps right into Aurelia, who is equally shocked to see him. Turns out, she wanted a private chat with the mayor about the party that betrayed her, and since they both need supplies, our boy suggests they step in to help, telling the skeptical mage to watch and learn as he boldly pushes through the crowd. Our boy confidently steps right between the two arguing men, instantly catching everyone off guard, smoothly suggesting they collaborate on a solution instead of screaming at each other like children, leaving the stunned leaders to wonder who this incredibly confident stranger actually is. This group heads out to the sealed mine, which is completely buried under a massive rockslide, where Jerome explains this place was actually a young dungeon that died when its core was destroyed, prompting a highly confused Noah to ask if dungeons can actually kick the bucket, since a tamed dungeon is basically a gold mine that can literally build entire kingdoms. Aurelia wonders if they are dealing with a nation-level undead threat that would mobilize every major guild, but the bearded miner clarifies it was just a standard run-of-the-mill Earth-type dungeon before the collapse. Staring at the massive wall of solid rock, our boy wonders if his obliterate skill could clear it. Instead of using magic, they all grab heavy pickaxes and start hacking away at the stone, until Jerome delivers a single devastating kick that shatters the entire rock wall in an instant, leaving Noah to wonder if that was pure muscle or just a decade of high-level mining experience. Stepping inside, Jerome points out the glowing mana stones regenerating along the cave walls. Aurelia warns Noah to stay sharp since former dungeons are basically monster magnets, prompting our boy to quietly draw his daggers while keeping his eyes peeled, as Jerome notes the eerie lack of normal cave critters since the noises started. Soon, the trio arrives at a massive sealed metal door blocking the main section, which the bearded miner slowly pushes open to reveal the dark depths beyond, only for them to immediately step into a literal pool of fresh blood, revealing a horrific scene of slaughtered miners scattered all over the tracks, before a disgusting echoing belch suddenly rings out from the shadows ahead, followed by a blood-curdling shriek that instantly sends shivers down their spines. Hearing the terrifying noise, Aurelia screams for the guys to halt as they dash forward, but a sudden, blinding blue flash on the ground cuts their reckless charge short, revealing a severely mutilated survivor clinging to life in a massive pool of blood. Kneeling beside the dying man, Noah tries to get answers about what attacked them, only for the victim's eyes to glow purple as he gasps out a final warning, before dark parasitic tentacles violently burst from his body as the system identifies a void-grafted threat, prompting Aurelia to scream at our void back away from the transforming host. Ironically, the system immediately registers the rescue quest as completed, handing over some free experience while simultaneously triggering a much harder quest to destroy this sinister, void-corrupted nightmare. Dodging a whipping black tendril, Noah firmly grips his daggers and prepares for a brutal fight. Igniting her fist with a burst of flame, Aurelia warns Jerome to back away from the impending chaos, and the tough miner wisely agrees, realizing he is completely out of his depth here as the corrupted host fully transforms, unleashing a swarm of writhing, purple-glowing tentacles. Noah swiftly leaps backward to dodge a sudden, vicious swipe from the creature's dark appendages, before immediately activating his blink skill to teleport away from the danger zone, only to realize the monster vanished just as quickly as he did, prompting Aurelia to unleash a massive wave of fire that completely engulfs the cavern, keeping her guard up alongside Jerome as she scans the smoke for their elusive target, while our boy desperately searches the shadows to pinpoint exactly where the beast went until a single drop of dark slime falls right in front of his face. Looking up, Noah spots the writhing, tentacled monster clinging directly to the cavern's ceiling, and the beast immediately dives down with a savage roar, aiming straight for them, but our boy triggers his blink skill just in time to evade the strike, reappearing a few feet away with his twin daggers raised in a defensive stance, only to find himself instantly locked in a frantic, high-speed clash against those whipping tentacles, prompting Aurelia to step in and blast the creature with a massive wave of fire, which only makes the screeching abomination even angrier as it unleashes a deafening howl, before a massive stone pillar suddenly collapses, threatening to crush her under tons of rocks, slamming down with a heavy thud and seemingly trapping her beneath its immense weight, but she casually catches the boulder, lifting the entire thing with pure fire-infused muscle. Channeling her inner pyromaniac, Aurelia hurls the massive boulder-sized fireball straight at the writhing abomination, before gracefully leaping back into the air to avoid the scorching heat of her own attack, which detonates in a spectacular explosion of pure heat that completely engulfs the screeching target. Seizing the perfect opening, Noah locks his eyes on the target and readies his twin daggers, sprinting forward at breakneck speed to close the distance before the smoke can even clear, leaping high into the air to deliver a vicious downward slash directly at the beast, plunging his blades deep into its flesh to trigger his devastating bleed and blood drain skills, prompting a blood-curdling shriek of pure agony from the heavily wounded writhing monster. Unfortunately, the thrashing beast immediately retaliates with a brutal whip of its heavy dark appendages, sending our boy flying backward with a nasty chest wound that his cheat code passive instantly begins healing. Deflecting a heavy tentacle strike, Noah barely has time to breathe before the beast flashes away, while Aurelia frantically waves her hands to scan the dark cavern for their hidden target, leaving a trail of fresh blood dripping onto the stone floor as Noah blinks away, only to realize his health bar has plummeted to a terrifying 7%. Desperate to stay alive, our boy quickly chugs a healing potion to stabilize his critical wounds, which somehow unlocks a handy poison resistance passive right in the middle of this chaotic brawl, prompting a highly focused Aurelia to wind up another massive fire-infused punch, unleashing a devastating torrent of flames that completely incinerates the cavern pathway. But as the smoke clears, the charred tentacles remain suspiciously still, revealing the mutated host is actually preparing to undergo an even deadlier transformation. Noah tightly grips his dagger as a violent pink aura bursts from the blade, and he immediately dashes forward with insane speed, leaving a trail of energy behind, launching himself into the air with a powerful leap to strike the beast, prompting a panicked Aurelia to scream at him to get back to safety, but our boy ignores her, slicing through a swarm of incoming tentacles with absolute precision, only for the remaining appendages to brutally whip him across the face and chest, as the fallen monster's glowing purple eye suddenly widens with a sinister intent, triggering a massive dark energy explosion that completely blows the entire cavern apart. A brutal system notification pops up, revealing Noah just lost a limb and got stunned, leaving him face down in a pool of blood as his lifeblood passive desperately kicks in. Trembling from the pain, Noah realizes the creeping poison has completely shut down his healing passive, and as he desperately grabs his severed arm off the bloody cavern floor, he simply hopes he can somehow glue it back on once this madness ends, while Aurelia channels another massive wave of fire to keep the floating abomination busy, unleashing a blinding torrent of flames that completely illuminates the dark cavern depths. Predictably, the agile beast blinks right out of the blast zone to evade her attack, but Noah is already blitzing forward with his remaining dagger clamped firmly between his teeth, delivering a brutal bone-shattering headbutt that catches the void-corrupted monster completely off guard, before instantly triggering his obliterate skill to slice the screeching beast wide open, and even tearing into its dark flesh with his bare teeth to force his passives to level up. This battle descends into absolute chaos as whipping tentacles clash against Aurelia's flames and Noah's desperate slashes. Realizing they need a massive reset, the fiery mage commands our boy to fall back immediately. Noah quickly retreats as a towering wall of blazing fire erupts right in front of him, completely engulfing the writhing abomination in a scorching inferno that lights up the entire cave, but as the smoke clears they realize the slippery beast has vanished into thin air. Our boy suddenly realizes the monster's trick, shouting that it can only teleport through the shadows, prompting Aurelia to immediately gather her mana and prepare to light up every single corner, weaving a massive blinding sphere of pure heat that leaves absolutely nowhere for the beast to hide, before unleashing a devastating solar flare that rattles the very foundations of the cavern floor. Exposed by the brilliant light, the desperate creature tries to scramble away, but Noah is already moving. Noah plunges his dagger deep into the writhing monster, determined to end this fight, but the slippery beast instantly blinks away, escaping his blade in a flash of purple light, only to reappear behind them and wrap its disgusting tentacles tightly around a helpless Garome. Seeing Aurelia preparing another massive fireball, our boy quickly yells for her to hold her fire, because he has a much better plan to exploit the monster's connection to the void, pulling out a legendary quest item known as the Letter of the Void God. Sensing the divine artifact, the terrified beast instantly freezes as Noah reveals their shared connection, triggering his powerful Voidborn perk to unleash an incredibly oppressive dark aura of his own, demanding the creature release the hostage immediately with a voice dripping with pure malice, which actually works, forcing the shrieking abomination to toss Jerome aside and charge at him. Seizing the distraction, Noah spins around and unleashes a blinding high-speed slash with his dagger, plunging his blade directly into the monster's core as he activates his blink skill, reappearing safely on the ground just as Aurelia dashes forward to take her turn, leaping high into the air to summon a massive swirling vortex of pure flame, which detonates in a spectacular explosion that completely rattles the entire cavern floor. Walking out of the smoke, Noah approaches the heavily charred, twitching body of the beast, keeping his dagger ready as he steps past the blazing walls of fire, only for the mutated host to weakly look up, begging our boy to end his misery, prompting Noah to look down with a solemn expression before raising his blade, delivering a swift mercy blow that finally removes the deadly necrosis poison from his system. With a final relieved sigh, the host's corrupted eye slowly closes as he gasps out his gratitude, and the system immediately floods Noah's vision with a massive wall of level-ups and epic rewards, leaving our boy and Aurelia horrified to realize the poor miner was conscious inside that nightmare. But the grind never stops, especially when a prompt asks if he wants to consume the corpse, prompting Noah to tap the yes button without a single shred of hesitation, sending a massive pillar of golden Light erupting from the fallen body as the absorption process begins, which successfully feeds his devourer skill while unlocking the tragic memories of the deceased host, though the sudden mental influx of raw trauma instantly drops our boy to his knees in agony, forcing him to witness the horrific torture and absolute suffering inflicted by the sinister cultists, fueling a burning rage inside Noah as he swears to hunt down every last member of the abyssal cult. With his eyes glowing red, Noah vows to hunt down and slaughter every last cultist, but Aurelia gently places a hand on his shoulder, insisting they find him a healer, helping our battered boy limp out of the dark cavern as they head back to safety. Once they are resting, the fiery mage crosses her arms and demands some real answers, admitting she held back her curiosity because Outworlders usually have weird, unexplainable powers. But Noah's bizarre performance has officially forced her to stop playing nice. She raises 3 fingers, explaining she can clearly sense 3 distinct mana types in his aura, leaving our boy in deep thought as she points out how unusually powerful those paths are. Not to mention his combat instincts look way too polished for a supposed rookie, especially since he randomly spawned right in the middle of a dangerous void cult. Even with all his secrets, Aurelia appreciates that Noah still stood by her side during the chaos, prompting our boy to casually claim he just practiced a bunch of martial arts back in high school, explaining that being dropped into a literal death trap made him keep his mouth shut, which the fiery mage surprisingly accepts with a quiet nod of understanding, before pointing her bandaged finger directly at his forehead to share a massive secret of her own, warning him that mutual trust is the only thing keeping her from doing something highly regrettable, as she reveals her ultimate goal was simply finding out if he was a worthy travel partner, presenting a mysterious golden ring wrapped in a strange red aura for him to inspect. But when Noah's initial scan comes up completely blank, she tells him to try harder, finally dispelling the veil to reveal a legendary cheat item that literally cheats death itself. Noah nods as Aurelia admits her little test was just to see if he was trustworthy, but she still has a ton of questions about his bizarre void-controlling abilities, wondering if our boy somehow managed to trick her high-level sensing skills from the start, only for Aurelia to laughingly admit her supposed lie detector skill was a total bluff, handing him a glowing orange truth stone to press directly over his heart instead, demanding to know his true identity once and for all as the magic activates. Holding the stone, Noah confesses that his memories of his past death are completely missing, explaining that waking up in the void is what granted him these strange powers. Raising his bandaged hand to swear he has absolutely no interest in destroying their world, which prompts the fiery mage to place her fist over her chest for an oath, swearing on her very soul. Aurelia promises she hasn't uttered a single lie to him today, which instantly triggers a system notification confirming that a binding oath of honesty has been established, leaving our boy completely baffled as a bright warm light suddenly erupts from his chest. But Aurelia just smiles warmly, taking back the intact truth stone since it didn't crack, explaining that any lie would have caused his mana to waver and instantly shatter the artifact. Turns out only absolute masters of aura can mask that kind of spiritual fluctuation from detection. Back in his room, Noah casually unwraps his bandages to inspect his freshly healed stump, before heading out into the bustling town streets to find some answers about this strange world, eventually stopping right in front of a quiet 2-story building to step inside, hoping the local library has some useful guides on magical prosthetics and basic world history. Flipping through the dusty pages, Noah's eyes light up as he finds a section on advanced prosthetics, but the book quickly shifts to explaining the terrifying anatomy of void-based parasites, detailing how these slimy worms burrow into a host's spine to hijack their brain. Though in incredibly rare cases, they can actually form a highly beneficial symbiotic relationship. Snapping the book shut, our boy realizes he might have just found his loophole, deciding he needs to research these creepy crawlies a bit more before doing anything reckless, especially since summoning a void creature requires a massive, constant drain on the host's life force, which explains why those crazy cultists resorted to human sacrifices to keep their summons in check. Fortunately, Noah's insane life force pool means he can bypass that little issue entirely, tucking the heavy tome under his arm as he prepares to put this wild theory to the test. Walking into a quiet room, Noah pulls up his system menu to finally learn the skill. He taps the confirmation button to consume the rare skill book of Advanced Abyssal Call, which immediately triggers a dark, swirling aura as the system grants him the powerful new ability. This instantly boosts the skill straight to level 25 before he grabs a glowing purple crystal. Crouching down, our boy uses the sharp crystal to draw a glowing magic circle on the floor. Our boy stands back proudly while Aurelia watches his bizarre ritual with a highly skeptical expression, but Noah just gives her a confident nod, completely sure his crazy plan will work. Suddenly, another ancient book begins to spin rapidly in a vortex of dark purple energy. A massive pillar of light erupts from the floor, completely engulfing our boy in a brilliant magical array, as the system asks if he wants to consume an epic tome of abyssal summon. Noah consumes the epic tome, instantly triggering a massive surge of dark, swirling energy. Meanwhile, deep within the endless void, countless creepy-crawly parasites float aimlessly in the dark, where massive, multi-eyed abominations constantly fight for dominance in a never-ending nightmare. But a sudden ancient chant begins to echo through the dark, hungry abyss, offering a fresh soul to bind with any creature brave enough to answer, promising to share their endless hunger in exchange for a taste of real blood. Suddenly, one lucky little parasite gets violently yanked upward by the summoning spell, flying straight into a glowing magic circle surrounded by massive, terrifying void beasts, getting squeezed so hard by their overwhelming presence that it actually feels alive. Unfortunately for the little guy, those massive monsters only see him as a snack. Dodging the massive jaws of a giant predator, the tiny parasite feels a sudden rush of adrenaline, only to crash headfirst into another multi-eyed beast blocking its path to freedom. But the summoning circle's pull is too strong, dragging it down through the chaotic void, while a barrage of strict system rules floods its mind to ensure absolute obedience. Back in the room, a dark, writhing shadow erupts from the glowing magic circle, as the newly summoned parasite receives its very first mental command to move forward, realizing it must comply with Noah's wishes or risk being banished back to the dark abyss, so it wraps its shadowy body around our boy's arm to begin the symbiotic fusion, forcing Noah to grit his teeth through the intense pain of the parasite burrowing into his flesh. Fortunately, the system confirms a successful bond, though it leaves him with a mild fever. Panicking at the sight of the dark magic, Aurelia ignites her fist and demands he dis-summon the creature, but our boy grits his teeth and insists he can handle the agonizing pain, only to let out a guttural scream as the void energy violently wraps around his arm, leaving him collapsed on the floor while Aurelia watches his body literally begin to cook from the inside. Fortunately, his sheer stubbornness pays off as the system grants him a handy new pain tolerance skill, though the searing heat quickly becomes too much to bear, forcing him to rip his shirt open as his arm begins to mutate while his internal fever spikes to a dangerous level 2. He explains that the parasite is actively devouring his life force just to reconstruct his missing limb, realizing he desperately needs high-grade health potions to survive this brutal flesh-melding process, but he forces himself to endure the agony, pushing his new skill all the way to level 21. Noah stands tall as his meditation and pain tolerance skills rapidly level up, focusing entirely on his breathing to regulate the chaotic flow of mana, which successfully pushes his meditation and pain tolerance levels even higher, but as the pain suddenly vanishes, he realizes his newly formed arm is completely numb. At that exact moment, a system notification confirms his dangerous fever has finally cleared, prompting Aurelia to quickly hand him a glowing green potion to help him recover, which our boy greedily gulps down while the fiery mage watches him with deep concern. He wipes his mouth, admitting the agonizing pain has completely vanished out of nowhere, only to notice his creepy new claw twitching entirely on its own, as the symbiotic Paris continues to squirm and reshape his arm with dark energy. Noah proudly admires his new arm, boasting about the thicker skin, stronger muscles and built-in poison glands, while the system confirms his parasite has officially evolved into a highly beneficial symbiote, boosting all his base attributes while granting him a loyal life force-eating partner named Tony, leaving Aurelia to admit she genuinely didn't expect his insane gamble to actually succeed. Our boy strikes a dramatic pose, testing the weight of his newly mutated clawed limb, flexing the razor-sharp talons that are now permanently fused to his physical body, wearing a wild grin as he decides the agonizing pain was absolutely worth the upgrade, though Aurelia quickly warns him to keep that monstrous appendage hidden from public view. Still, Noah can't help but geek out over how incredibly cool his new weapon looks, while the fiery mage sighs finding the half-human half-monster hybrid look more than a little disturbing. Aurelia finds his slang incredibly bizarre, muttering about how weird his original world must be, especially since his creepy new arm has a literal eyeball blinking back at him, prompting the curious mage to ask if she can give the monstrous limb a feel, which she immediately does, poking the hard scaly flesh with absolute fascination, until the claw suddenly twitches on its own, giving them both a massive jump scare. Recovering her composure, Aurelia points out that a built-in weapon is actually a massive cheat, explaining that since it's part of his body, it will level up naturally alongside him, leaving our boy eager to test his new toy out in the wild immediately. So the duo quickly heads outside, walking down a quiet path as evening begins to fall, searching for a secluded spot where he can unleash his new power without any witnesses. Stopping in front of a massive sturdy tree in the middle of the woods, Noah smirks as he prepares to unleash his newly acquired symbiotic weapon, charging forward with a sudden burst of speed to test his physical limits. As he swings his mutated arm in a wide, devastating arc, unleashing a powerful slash that cuts cleanly through the air, leaving deep jagged claw marks carved right into the thick bark. Deciding to test his built-in poison glands next, he coats the wounds in toxic purple fluid, wearing a wild toothy grin as he watches the dark venom seep into the wood, which instantly rots the massive trunk, leaving the tree completely dead and withered. Still, Aurelia quickly rains on his parade, pointing out his total lack of claw-based martial arts. Noah gently pats his scaly new limb, confident that Tony will help him overcome any initial clumsiness. He can't help but grin like a kid on Christmas as the clawed hand clicks responsively, while Aurelia just sighs in disbelief, pointing out that normal people usually hate looking like monsters. But our boy eagerly explains that rich folks back home would pay absolute fortunes for this aesthetic, leaving the warrior completely baffled by his bizarre slang as he tries to explain what cool means, even breaking down phrases like, "we cool," while she wonders what on earth he is rambling about, prompting Aurelia to call his world weird, though Noah counters that her world has literal flying dragons, arguing that giant fire-breathing lizards are definitely way weirder than anything from his old home, though she dryly notes that a dragon would still look more normal than him back on Earth. With a smirk, Noah suddenly dashes forward to put his deadly new claw to the test. Noah slashes a massive boulder with his new claw, expecting a spectacular explosion, but he only manages to crack it slightly while his arm throbs with intense pain, prompting the system to suggest his Void Hunter skill to completely obliterate the obstacle, though he realizes channeling this chaotic energy requires extreme caution to avoid losing control. Stealing his resolve, our boy lets the dark power surge through his mutated limb, unleashing a devastating shadow-infused strike that tears through the air with terrifying force, which cleanly splits the massive boulder in half and leaves him cheering like a kid. Rolling her eyes, Aurelia insists they head back before anyone notices his sudden disappearance, leaving our boy to reluctantly follow behind her while quietly snickering to himself, instantly making the fiery warrior turn around to demand what is so funny. Noah can't help but smirk as he admires the sheer utility of his creepy new arm, laughing hysterically at his luck while Aurelia facepalms at his absolute lack of common sense, which prompts the annoyed mage to instantly blast him with a massive wave of fire, but our boy casually blinks away to dodge the lethal heat with perfect timing, leaving him to sprint off into the woods while she screams her absolute hatred after him. Some time later, a local bartender asks how his strange new prosthetic hand is holding up, and Noah happily explains that it actually works way better than his original flesh and blood limb, taking a deep gulp of his drink before asking about any local rumors regarding his arm, admitting he actually finds the wild gossip spreading around the quiet village incredibly entertaining, especially since local kids genuinely believe he ate a mind monster to gain his demonic claw. Outside, a local mother literally uses Noah as a boogeyman to keep her kids in line, which naturally prompts our boy to flash a wicked grin and instantly teleport right behind them, letting out a playful roar that sends the terrified family running for their absolute lives, leaving him and the bartender to share a hearty laugh over the ridiculous prank. This tavern owner asks about his travel plans, learning that Aurelia is currently mapping their route, prompting Noah to take a massive gulp of ale to satisfy his symbiote's constant hunger, slamming his mug down while admitting that letting the fiery mage lead is better than dying, before leaning in to ask the tavern owner for a rather unusual personal favor. He slides over a bizarre shopping list, immediately sparking accusations of illegal demon summoning, though the businessman quickly agrees to source the weird items for a hefty express fee. Noah slides a glowing purple crystal across the wooden counter to seal the deal, prompting the merchant to shake his head while grumbling about the sheer absurdity of adventurers, but he quickly pockets the payment, promising to deliver the goods by the day's end. Stepping out into the warm sunlight, our boy feels pretty good about his shady transaction, as a delivery boy pushes a heavily loaded wooden cart right past him, who hands over a detailed list of all the bizarre items they managed to source, which sends Noah heading down into the dim basement to store his new testing supplies, only for Aurelia to completely ignore his desperate pleas for help with the heavy lifting, leaving her to stare curiously at a caged white rabbit sitting among the dusty crates. With a wicked grin, our boy explains that these innocent creatures are his new test subjects. Noah pulls up his glowing blue system interface, eager to run some highly classified experiments, while the poor caged rabbit trembles in absolute terror under his menacing shadow, as our boy casually whistles while grabbing a jar full of small black stones, tossing one of the heavy pellets into the air to prep his next move, which triggers a sudden flash of blue light that leaves the rabbit completely stunned. Turns out he successfully teleported right next to Aurelia, who nearly jumps out of her skin, prompting him to grab an even larger handful of stones for his next trial, explaining to the highly skeptical mage that he wants to test his carrying capacity, wearing a confident smirk as he readies himself to push his teleportation limits, gritting his teeth as the chaotic blue energy wraps around his body once more. With a sudden flash, Noah teleports a short distance and lands running, surprised by the physical strain. He opens his system inventory screen to check if storing items affects his teleportation speed, realizing that carrying physical objects directly in his hands makes the skill much harder to cast, so he decides to test if storing the items inside his inventory bypasses the penalty, landing perfectly on his feet as he confirms that pocketed gear doesn't slow him down at all, prompting our boy to grab a long metal pole to begin his next ridiculous experiment. Another bright flash of blue light erupts in the center of the dim basement, but this time he lands while the heavy metal pole clatters loudly against the wall, leaving the weapon behind as his body teleports without the extra mass of his gear, which leaves Aurelia staring in utter confusion at the vibrating metal poles clattering on the floor. Sitting cross-legged on the floor, Noah prepares to test the exact limits of his teleportation skill. Blue energy wraps around his body as he initiates the jump, leaving the metal pole behind. Our boy gasps in surprise, realizing the heavy weapon didn't make the trip with him. It turns out his skill only teleports items he is actively holding in his hands, prompting him to throw a bunch of random supplies into the air to test his theory. Standing amidst the scattered mess, he holds a single small box to run one final test. Grabbing a tiny black stone from the container, he prepares to trigger his spatial magic again. Balancing the box on his shoe, he teleports to see if indirect contact still counts. Landing right next to a highly bewildered Aurelia, he confirms that mere physical contact isn't enough, meaning he can't just touch a wall and accidentally teleport an entire building away with him. Aurelia nods thoughtfully, realizing his teleportation requires channeling mana directly into whatever he holds, explaining that physical contact acts as a necessary anchor within the world's magical laws, prompting Noah to turn his attention back to the trembling rabbit in the cage, wearing a mischievous grin as he prepares to test if living creatures can teleport too. He gently scoops up the fluffy test subject, praying the experiment doesn't end in disaster, and immediately triggers his spatial magic, wrapping them both in a bright blue light, landing perfectly intact with the unharmed bunny, much to our boy's absolute delight. Eager for more data, he grabs a jar of glowing green worms for his next trial, but instantly feels a strange, heavy resistance as he tries to channel his mana. Before a sudden, blinding flash of light erupts to consume the entire basement. After recovering from that massive mana drain, Noah sits cross-legged to fully recharge his energy, and immediately proposes a final, highly risky test to teleport Aurelia alongside him, but his spatial magic completely fails to grab her, leaving him glowing alone, realizing they need direct hand-to-hand contact to anchor her to his teleportation spell, which instantly drains his entire mana pool while leveling up his blink skill, dumping them both onto the hard basement floor in a state of absolute exhaustion. Dragging himself up, our boy groggily celebrates their survival despite the horrific physical toll, while the warrior clutches her throbbing head, questioning if death might actually feel better, prompting Noah to suddenly double over and violently throw up a literal rainbow, before he casually wipes his mouth and claims he is finally feeling much better. Noah realizes his teleportation works fine on small targets, but heavyweights leave him gagging on the floor. Moving on to the next test, he tries shoving a jar of pebbles into his system inventory, leaving him to manually swipe the scattered stones into the glowing blue interface one by one, which triggers a relentless barrage of system notifications confirming he is successfully hoarding useless rocks, prompting our boy to grab the entire jar to see if he can bypass the tedious grind. Gritting his teeth as he forcefully shoves the container directly into his digital storage screen, only to watch the jar vanish instantly with a satisfying swoosh that defies all physical logic, though he quickly notices the bulk upload actually drained a chunk of his precious mana pool, which brings him to his final, most diabolical experiment as he gently pats his fluffy rabbit test subject, successfully shoving the poor, confused creature straight into his pocket dimension for safekeeping. Standing over Aurelia, Noah decides to wait a couple of minutes to see if the rabbit survives. This duo waits in awkward silence as the imaginary clock ticks away in the background, before our boy pulls the perfectly healthy rabbit back out of his digital storage screen, wearing a highly suspicious grin as he asks Aurelia if she wants to jump in next, which immediately triggers her defenses while he excitedly explains his brand new human storage theory. But the fiery mage flatly refuses to become his next claustrophobic guinea pig, prompting Noah to dramatically swear that he will pull her right back out instantly, only for her to completely lose her temper and demand he stop annoying her, forcing the tough warrior to embarrassingly admit she is actually terrified of the dark, leaving our boy to hilariously wonder if that childhood fear inspired her entire fire magic career. Noah quickly backs off and apologizes, realizing he pushed the fiery mage just a bit too far. He explains his theory that time completely freezes for anything stored inside his pocket dimension, meaning he could theoretically store her there to pause her injuries if she ever got hurt. While she hates to admit it, his crazy logic actually makes a lot of practical sense, prompting the tough warrior to finally give in and agree to his bizarre experiment. She warns him to pull her out immediately or face a very painful physical beating, but first our boy safely tucks his fluffy rabbit test subject back into his system, before grabbing Aurelia's bandaged arm to forcefully drag her toward the glowing blue interface, sending her screaming in absolute panic as she gets sucked head first into his digital inventory. Unfortunately, a giant red warning screen pops up to inform him that her weight exceeds capacity. Noah collapses onto the floor completely drained of mana after trying to pocket a whole human, but despite the system error, he realizes the storage skill actually did activate for a split second, prompting Aurelia to sigh in relief, hoping they never have to resort to such extreme measures, before she sits down to take notes as our boy eagerly preps his next magical experiment, activating his Void Hunter skill to see how fast his dark magic can disintegrate solid matter, which reveals his left hand takes 4 seconds to destroy a pebble while his right takes 7, leaving him to analyze the data on his glowing blue interface with a satisfied smirk. Suddenly he channels a massive surge of dark energy directly into his palms once more, throwing the destructive spell straight at the floor to test its maximum area of effect, unleashing a violent shockwave that completely shatters the stone ground beneath their feet. Noah reaches out his hand to test the limits of his spatial magic once again, holding a tiny black stone while wondering if his skills have a fixed mana cost, but Aurelia looks up from her notes to explain that partial activations can bypass that, prompting our boy to pull the fluffy white rabbit back out of his inventory, confirming his theory that time completely freezes for anything stored inside his pocket dimension. He gently sets the creature down on the cold stone floor with a soft tap, watching the little test subject hop straight across the room toward the tough warrior, who catches the fluffy bunny in her arms, completely caught off guard by its affection, melting her tough exterior as the little creature happily nuzzles against her warm cheek, until Noah ruins the wholesome moment by drawing a knife to stab the poor thing. Noah quickly waves his hands defensively, trying to calm down a highly protective Aurelia, explaining that he has a backup healing potion ready just in case his blood test fails, prompting the reluctant warrior to finally sigh and hold the fluffy test subject steady. Our boy offers a quick apologetic prayer before committing to this highly questionable science experiment, swiftly slicing the poor rabbit's leg to create a small squealing test wound before immediately slicing his own gloved palm to draw a fresh drop of blood. Squeezing his fist, Noah lets his glowing red blood drip directly onto the injured bunny, which instantly triggers a sizzling reaction that completely mends the creature's flesh, leaving the fully recovered rabbit staring at his hand with a sudden drooling hunger, as the little beast happily licks his palm clean, prompting Aurelia to warn him to keep this secret safe. Noah holds the rabbit as Aurelia points out he is basically a walking cheat code health potion, warning him that some greedy maniac will gladly kidnap him to harvest his blood forever, which quickly convinces our boy to set the rabbit down and promise absolute secrecy. But the little creature is already hopelessly addicted, begging with big pleading eyes for more, forcing Aurelia to gently scoop it up the fluffy attic to return it to the wild, leaving the newly released rabbit sitting in the grass with a sudden, insatiable hunger. It aggressively chomps on some slocal weeds trying to satisfy its newly awakened cravings, only to realize that boring old grass just doesn't hit the spot anymore because its tiny brain is now completely obsessed with finding more of Noah's magical blood, transforming this innocent forest bunny into a highly motivated, bloodthirsty little monster, determined to find more of that sweet sweet blood. The rabbit hops through the forest, sprinting at absolute maximum speed as it hunts for its next magical fix, bouncing along the dirt path with the single-minded focus of a tiny fluffy crackhead, until it suddenly halts in its tracks, spotting a potential target nearby, which turns out to be a young brown-haired girl peacefully picking flowers in the woods. Seizing the opportunity, the little beast immediately hops over to investigate this unsuspecting target, prompting the girl to turn around as she hears a sudden rustling in the bushes, only to squeal in absolute delight at the sight of the adorable white visitor, who happily rubs against her leg to play the part of a perfectly innocent pet. But its tiny heart instantly drops when she offers us a boring green leaf instead of blood. This fluffy attic reluctantly munches on the offered leaf, trying to play it cool, while the sweet girl giggles and gently pats its back, completely oblivious to its dark cravings. But the little beast suddenly realizes this human might actually carry that sweet magical red drink, prompting it to eagerly scratch at her legs in hopes of securing its next fix, which works like a charm as she happily scoops the chubby creature off the ground, leaving the rabbit absolutely thrilled to finally get closer to its supposed source of delicious blood. Though she worries her family might not let her keep a random forest pet, still she can't resist poking its tiny nose as they walk together down the path, eventually leading her back into the bustling town square filled with noisy chatting citizens. She reassures her trembling new pet while the overwhelmed rabbit panics at the sheer number of giants. Squealing with excitement, Ori slams the front door open to announce her grand return, which immediately hurts the sensitive ears of her fluffy captive, who hates these loud giants, prompting her startled mother to point a trembling finger at the suspicious forest creature. While Ori begs to keep her new friend, the rabbit eagerly eyes its next potential blood donor. But the exhausted mother flatly refuses, rubbing her temples at the thought of more chores, claiming a wild animal will only run away the second it gets put back down, though the little addict is actually just waiting for someone to serve its next red drink. Desperate to win, the young girl thrusts the fluffy beast forward in a dramatic plea, ignoring her mother's solid logic that friendly wild animals are usually the most troublesome, before the older woman confiscates the squealing bunny to return it safely to the wild. Ori chases her mother through the house, desperately begging to keep her fluffy new friend, but the older woman ruthlessly tosses the rabbit right back out the front door, leaving the little addict to frantically scratch at the wood in search of its red drink, only to realize the heavy door is locked tight, completely cutting off its supply, prompting the furious creature to curse the giant who tricked it with a fake promise, before it quickly hops away to find another human who might carry that sweet blood. Bouncing straight into the busy town square, the rabbit weaves through the crowded streets, targeting a bald man who is casually chatting with a friend on the brick pathway, stopping right between their boots to demand their immediate attention with a soft squeak, which works perfectly as the bald man scoops it up, wondering why it's out here. This bald man casually muses about cooking the fluffy creature for dinner, sending it into absolute shock, prompting the desperate little beast to viciously chomp down on his hand to secure its next meal. Meanwhile, Aurelia finally returns to their hideout, stepping up to the heavy wooden door, pushing it open to find our boy already deep in his next round of magical research, where Noah eagerly asks her if there is any way to hide distracting system notifications during combat. She casually suggests creating a designated storage folder to sweep all those annoying pop-ups out of sight, inspiring our boy to immediately test the trick by tapping a glowing blue mail icon, which lets him easily swipe the clutter away with a highly satisfied grin. Next, he turns his attention to his core attributes, wondering how exactly these mysterious stats function, staring intently at the glowing screen as he prepares to unlock the system's deepest secrets. Noah clutches his head in absolute agony, desperately trying to force his way through the pain, but his suffering pays off when the system awards him a brand new soul modification skill, prompting Aurelia to explain that these hidden sub-attributes are usually evaluated by the local guild, though our boy can barely focus as another wave of intense pain hits his brain. Still, he pushes through to tap the screen, demanding to know more about these hidden stats, which triggers a massive level up for his soul resistance while he groans in agony. Suddenly, a bizarre medical diagram pops up on his screen, showing 3 mysterious colored flames, leaving the poor kid looking completely exhausted and deeply disturbed by what he's seeing, until his brain finally short-circuits from the strain, sending him collapsing straight onto the floor. Meanwhile, the bloodthirsty little rabbit leaps away from its latest victim, leaving a trail of chaos behind. This rabbit bolts from the scene with a blood-stained mouth, leaving the wounded man yelling in pain. But as the little beast sprints away, it realizes that normal human blood tastes absolutely nothing like Noah's magical elixir, leaving the fluffy addict completely disappointed by the bland flavor of this ordinary non-magical snack. It aggressively shakes its head in pure denial, refusing to accept this tragic, flavorless reality, desperately craving another taste of that sweet, life-giving red drink while wondering where its favorite giant went. Squeezing its eyes shut, the little creature tries to force its tiny brain to formulate a logical plan, recalling how wild predators in the forest always hunt down other furry beasts to get their fresh meals, which inspires a brilliant, highly delusional idea to start biting the blood straight out of local wildlife, prompting the newly minted apex predator to eagerly charge back toward the forest to begin its grand hunt. A few minutes later, the quiet bushes outside of town begin to rustle with terrifying, bloodthirsty intent. A happy little squirrel stretches in the warm sunlight, completely unaware of the danger, because our fluffy little addict is already sprinting through the brush to hunt it down, wearing a terrifyingly crazed grin as it prepares to harvest its next fresh snack, forcing the panicked squirrel to look back in horror at its relentless, bloodthirsty pursuer. With a desperate leap, the agile rodent barely dodges a vicious high-speed pounce, skidding across a branch before turning around to face its bizarrely aggressive attacker, only to watch the rabbit crash face-first into the dirt with a pathetic thud. This clever squirrel quickly climbs up a massive tree trunk, leaving its pursuer stranded below, prompting the frustrated beast to realize it might need to target a much larger meal, which leads its crazed eyes straight to a massive wild boar peacefully munching on berries. This rabbit locks its sights on the massive wild boar, ready to test its luck, charging forward with a terrifyingly crazed expression to secure a massive feast, only to sink its teeth into the boar's leg and trigger an immediate furious growl, which earns our fluffy addict a swift, brutal kick that sends it flying through the air. Shaking on the grass, the heavily bruised rabbit quickly realizes this was an incredibly bad idea, especially when the angry boar decides to charge right back to finish the job, forcing the injured little beast to bleed out on the dirt as its health rapidly drains, until it suddenly notices its own wounds are already starting to sizzle and heal, realizing Noah's magical blood has made it completely immortal as it dashes away, eventually stopping to spy on another unsuspecting forest rabbit, peacefully munching on grass. This little beast decides to stalk its fellow rabbit, wearing a deeply unsettling, blood-stained grin. It leaps through the air with a deceptively joyful bounce, hiding its dark predatory intentions. Sneaking up behind its target, the white rabbit starts sniffing around, leaving the brown rabbit completely baffled. It continues tapping and sniffing the stranger, trying to locate the absolute best spot to bite, but the friendly target suddenly bids farewell and happily hops away, completely ruining the perfect ambush, prompting our fluffy addict to let out a terrifying hiss, its eyes glowing with pure unadulterated rage. It launches a high-speed aerial assault, sending the unsuspecting brown rabbit into a state of absolute panic. A chaotic, blood-splattered dust cloud erupts as the two fluffy creatures engage in a brutal, no-holds-barred brawl. Standing victorious and covered in fresh blood, the exhausted predator stares down at its defeated opponent, before letting out a monstrous roar, ready to finally feast on its very first successful hunt. This system immediately rewards the rabbit's cannibalistic victory with a prompt to evolve into a literal murder bunny. While back at the hideout, Noah finally wakes up as Aurelia steps into the room, apologizing for the absolute mess of research papers scattered all over her wooden desk, prompting our boy to marvel at just how much intense planning she's been doing, as she points to a map detailing her quest to hunt down her betrayers. But Noah is far more interested in getting some answers about his own body, specifically demanding to know what those three mysterious colored flames on his status screen mean. Aurelia agrees it's finally time for a serious chat about his hidden sub-attributes, earning an eager, highly determined nod from our boy as he prepares to listen. Before they both take a seat to begin their long-awaited strategy session, Aurelia grabs a blank sheet of paper and begins scribbling a crude diagram, showing off a stickman drawing that Noah immediately mistakes for a rotten apple, before she explains that this outer circle represents his aura, which naturally exceeds his physical body, meaning his physical shell actually holds back his soul's true untapped potential. Physical vessel to handle more power. She rolls up the paper while explaining how maximizing these stats makes him incredibly formidable, though she advises him not to stress over these complex details just yet. Our boy ruffles his hair in confusion, wondering if all this math is even necessary, prompting her to simply smile and announce it is finally time for them to hit the road. An hour later, the grateful townspeople gather to send them off with fresh horses for their journey. This local mayor bids them a warm farewell, wishing them safe travels on their journey, and they happily wave goodbye as they ride their new horses out of town, triggering a brand new system quest to safely escort his companion to the City of Winds. But Noah is already whining about how long this tedious road trip is going to take, prompting Aurelia to ruthlessly shut down his complaints because they are on a tight schedule. Suddenly the temperature spikes as they ride into an incredibly dry, sun-baked wasteland, which Aurelia actually considers nice weather, leaving our sweating boy wishing for some ice magic. He casually suggests he just level up his heat resistance, which does absolutely nothing for his misery, especially since they just left a lush forest only to end up in this dusty desert. Aurelia explains that local mana types dictate the climate, and this region is packed with solar stones. Noah wipes his sweating brow under the blazing sun, listening to Aurelia explain the regional climates, while a lonely tumbleweed rolls across the barren dirt, making him pray they avoid any solar stone hot spots, prompting Aurelia to burst out laughing at his absolute misery in this dry heat. Though she quickly offers some cheerful, highly optimistic advice about staying hydrated on the road, our boy immediately pops open his canteen to chug down some warm water. But mid-gulp, he suddenly spots something unusual shimmering on the dusty horizon, squinting through the glare to confirm that a lone traveler is moving just ahead, inspiring Aurelia to immediately kick her horse into a high-speed gallop to investigate, leaving Noah to quickly catch up as they kick up massive clouds of desert dust, until they finally pull up behind a slow-moving merchant wagon pulled by a massive horned beast. Pulling up alongside the slow-moving wagon, they are greeted by a cheerful driver waving them down. This merchant immediately beams with hope, asking if the local guild finally sent them to help. Aurelia quickly clarifies they are just passing through, asking what kind of trouble has blocked the road. This driver sighs, explaining that a massive landslide has completely blocked the valley route ahead. Riding to investigate, our duo stares in absolute disbelief at the sheer scale of the blockage. A colossal boulder is wedged perfectly between the canyon walls, completely shutting down any hope of passage. Unrolling her map, Aurelia notes they could bypass this mess by taking a much riskier shortcut. She casually suggests traveling straight through the night, prompting a highly panicked reaction from our boy. Even the merchant looks horrified, warning them that their proposed shortcut leads straight through the infamous Serpent's Grove. He warns of a deadly worm lurking in those shadows, though Aurelia instantly dismisses his fears as total nonsense. Aurelia scoffs at the merchant's warning, pointing out the area's low mana levels. She points down the road, suggesting they might as well take a few tagalongs, referring to a desperate family stranded on the dirt path just ahead of them. Spotting the riders, the frantic father immediately waves his hand to grab their attention, begging our duo for help as Noah and Aurelia pull up with puzzled expressions, and the system immediately flags this panting stranger as a mysterious sculptor. He explains his young son is terribly ill, desperately needing safe passage to the nearest, which makes Noah perk up when the man introduces himself as Leon, a professional sculptor, who claps his hands together and begs them to act as their personal bodyguards. But local healers are useless, meaning they need a high-ranking professional to save the boy. Noah leans in, asking the mother if he can check on the sick boy, placing his hand on the kid's forehead only to realize he is absolutely burning up, prompting Aurelia to pull him aside so they can discuss their options in private, asking our boy if he seriously plans on leaving this helpless family stranded in the dirt. Since the nearest village is hours away and lacks the high-grade healer the boy desperately needs, our boy excitedly suggests feeding the kid his magical blood, earning an immediate deadpan scolding from Aurelia, so they quickly agree on a plan and turn back to face the desperate family, with our boy offering a reassuring smile as he promises to escort them to Windrest, which triggers a difficult new system quest while Leon tearfully bows in absolute gratitude. This relieved sculptor immediately waves to his wife, calling out that it is time to move. This mother cradles her sick son, Irios, letting out a massive sigh of pure relief, but before they set off, Noah pulls out a mysterious red potion vial, handing it over to the grateful parents as a temporary fix for the fever, though Aurelia silently warns him to keep his secret ingredient completely hidden. Stepping aside, our boy slices his finger to drip his magical blood into the tube, vigorously shaking the mixture to blend his life-saving essence with the medicine. He gently approaches the shivering kid, trying to play the friendly neighborhood hero, while the poor boy stares at the bubbling red liquid, like it's straight-up poison, prompting Noah to offer a warm, reassuring smile to coax him into taking a sip, even though the kid looks absolutely disgusted by this highly suspicious glowing cocktail. This sick kid finally takes a small, hesitant sip of the mysterious red mixture, gulping down the glowing liquid as his mother holds him close in her arms, and he exhales a hot breath of relief as the magical blood instantly takes effect, sending him into a peaceful, fever-free slumber right in his mother's comforting embrace. With the kid stabilized, Aurelia urges the group to move quickly before nightfall. Guiding their horses onto the shadowed forest path that leads directly toward their destination, she estimates they will reach the city by sunrise if they push through the dark, while Noah hitches a ride behind Leon, keeping a close eye on their surroundings. Our boy strikes up a casual conversation, asking the sculptor about his hometown of Altias, as Leon reaches into his leather pouch to grab something while confirming his profession. Leon reveals he can actually animate his custom sculptures to perform various tasks, leaving our boy absolutely amazed as the tiny wooden bear starts dancing on his palm, though the sculptor clarifies he doesn't directly control them, but merely issues simple commands. Meanwhile, Aurelia asks the mother how they plan to afford a rare C-grade healer, who gently pats her sleeping son while explaining a generous party agreed to help them, prompting Aurelia to ask if these saviors are the infamous Iron Fists Guild, only for the mother to name a suspicious group called the Righteous Light instead. This sculptor grips his reins tightly, admitting a terrifying plague has been sweeping through their region, sending a chill down Noah's spine as he learns the sickness targets children and the elderly. Before the mother delivers the grim news that every recent birth has ended in tragedy, Leon adds that creepy abyssal cultists have also been spotted lurking around the area lately, which immediately puts both Noah and Aurelia on high alert as they process this dark news. While Shea quietly suggests moving away once their son recovers, though Leon refuses to abandon their helpful mare, deepening shadows stretch across the dirt path as their horses continue trotting deeper into the dense woods. But the canopy above grows so thick that even the midday sun struggles to pierce the gloom, forcing our boy to activate his Void Hunter's eyes just to navigate through the unnatural pitch-black darkness. Suddenly Aurelia senses a spike in mana and prepares her magic, praying her worst suspicions right before a chilling, high-pitched screech echoes through the trees, sending a shiver down everyone's spine, prompting Aurelia to yell a warning as Leon panics, desperately steering his horse off the main trail. Both mounts gallop wildly into the brush, fleeing whatever terrifying beast is currently hunting them from the shadows. Noah's system immediately flags a bizarre threat ahead, identifying it as a literal undead bear, bringing their horses to a sudden grinding halt as the eerie silence settles over them. He's prompting Aurelia to order the panicked family to stay put while she investigates the unnatural darkness, leaping gracefully into the air to get a better vantage point from the canopy above as she swiftly bounds across the thick tree branches to scout out the path ahead. While Noah realizes they need to escape this creepy forest as fast as humanly possible, a sudden wave of pure dread washing over him as his danger senses scream in panic. Right before Aurelia drops back down to the forest floor with a heavy thud, grimly explaining that her worst fears have come true and they must abandon their mounts, leaving their loyal horses behind to avoid drawing any more unwanted attention in the dark. Aurelia slaps the horses' flank to send their mounts running as decoys and the startled beasts gallop away, kicking up dirt to throw off their pursuers. Our group dashes through the dark woods on foot, desperate to find a safe hiding spot. Noah asks what is happening as they run, only to learn a sudden eclipse is starting, while Shea tightly cradles her sleeping son, praying they can survive this bizarre celestial. Looking up at the sky, our boy spots the moon slowly blocking out the sun, but Aurelia immediately punches him to stop him from staring at the cursed sky, explaining that when the suns and moon align, a terrifying cosmic entity awakens. which apparently triggers bizarre system notifications about a rabbit evolving into a literal murder bunny. As the Watcher Moon opens its massive eye to cast a deadly gaze upon the world, a tiny rabbit paw aggressively taps a system prompt, instantly transforming the fluffy creature into a roaring beast. Aurelia explains that this cursed event is known as the Watcher's Night, a time of absolute chaos, where even the most harmless woodland creatures turn into bloodthirsty, horned monsters looking for a fight, and the system immediately warns Noah that the Watcher's gaze has inflicted a severe madness debuff. Suddenly, Aurelia grabs our boy's wrist with a tight grip to snap him out of his daze, urgently warning him that they need to find a secure hiding spot before things get worse. Noah nods in agreement, scanning the dark woods to confirm they aren't being actively hunted just yet. While the terrified sculptor and his wife watch their protectors, praying they can survive this nightmare, unfortunately dozens of glowing red eyes suddenly light up the pitch-black forest directly behind them, as the massive cosmic eye in the sky opens fully to judge their very souls. As the red sky bleeds overhead, the group sprints through the woods with heavy footsteps. Noah glances back in sheer panic as his system warns him the cursed eclipse has officially begun. Wondering if his companions are also seeing the terrifying cosmic warnings flashing across, realizing the massive cosmic eye in the sky is practically begging him to look directly at it, but he grits his teeth and forces his gaze away, desperately fighting the urge to look up, while Aurelia curses their terrible luck, demanding to know what their next move should be. She commands our boy to protect the sculptor's family while her fists ignite with roaring flames. Charging headfirst into the darkness with a fierce battle cry to intercept their incoming stalker, which turns out to be a massive glowing-eyed undead bear rotting right before her eyes. And she unleashes a relentless barrage of fiery punches to melt the beast into absolute ash. Noah quickly steps in front of the terrified couple, shielding them with his arm, as he swiftly draws his blade from its sheath with a sharp metallic ring, telling them to run while his system updates with a high-stakes legendary reward. But a massive red-eyed serpent lunges from the brush with a terrifying hiss, which our boy immediately slices in half with one clean blood-splattering strike, while Aurelia continues her fiery rampage, burning another mutated beast to a crisp. Unfortunately, a rotting zombie crawls out of the dirt right behind the fleeing mother, grabbing her ankle with a bloody grip that makes her scream in absolute terror, sending her crashing to the ground while she desperately shields her sleeping child, only for Noah to instantly slide in, catching her before the monster can strike. Noah swings his blade in a wide arc, aiming to sever the monster's grip, slicing cleanly through the undead's arm as a system notification identifies the target, before he drives his blade straight down to finish off the rotting creature. He immediately helps the trembling mother back to her feet, checking on her condition, but she winces in pain, explaining that her ankle is badly injured from the fall, prompting our boy to slice his own hand to activate his healing blood, pressing his bleeding palm directly onto her sprained ankle to work his magic. Meanwhile, Leon desperately commands his animated wooden bear to charge into the fray, sending the small puppet to clash fiercely against a much larger mutated beast, while Noah urges the mother to push through the remaining pain so they can keep moving. Aurelia delivers a devastating fire-infused punch straight to the mutated bear's jaw, sending the rotting beast reeling back as green blood spurts him its maw, before Leon's wooden puppet slams down to crush the monster into the dirt. However, Aurelia suddenly freezes as heavy rhythmic thuds echo through the crimson forest, prompting her to yell at Leon to get moving before they get overwhelmed, and the massive wooden bear puppet charges forward to act as their getaway ride, allowing Aurelia to leap onto its back while Leon sprints right alongside it, riding the wooden beast like a pro as they barrel through the chaotic woods. She reaches her hand down to pull Noah up onto their makeshift escape vehicle, but the wooden bear's giant foot suddenly slams down to a grinding halt. Noah reaches down from the wooden bear, stretching his hand out to pull Shia up. Leon points toward a dark cave ahead, shouting that they can take shelter there, while Aurelia charges up her fists with roaring flames to keep their pursuers at bay, as the massive wooden puppet barrels down the rocky slope directly toward the cave entrance. She incinerates a lunging zombie midair, turning the rotting threat into a literal bonfire, but her victory is cut short when she spots another threat dropping from above, prompting our boy to look up just as a feral zombie lunges at him, knocking him clean off the wooden bear with a heavy, bone-rattling tackle, leaving him struggling on the ground as he desperately shoves the monster's face away, before unleashing a point-blank blast of energy that completely vaporizes the creature's head. Aurelia looks back with her fists still ablaze, urging our boy to catch up with them, and with a sudden blink, Noah teleports right back onto the wooden bear's massive back, prompting Aurelia to check him for bites since undead necrotic poison is no joke. But Leon cuts the chatter short by pointing out the cave entrance just ahead, as the giant wooden puppet barrels straight into the pitch-black cavern with heavy thuds. This wooden beast skids to a halt, sending our boy sliding onto the cave floor, while Aurelia stands guard at the entrance, her body bursting with a wall of protective fire, only for the pursuing undead to halt right at the threshold, their decaying feet rattling in place, leaving the fiery mage completely baffled as to why the monsters refuse to step inside. Until Leon looks deeper into the darkness, his face turning pale as he realizes the truth. Heavy thumping echoes from the deep cave as glowing blue eyes pierce the pitch-black void. Aurelia stands at the entrance, completely bewildered by the massive presence lurking inside. This heavy thuds grow louder, shaking the cavern walls as the group realizes they've walked into a trap. Suddenly, Aurelia's eyes widen in sheer terror as an overwhelming pressure completely paralyzes her body. A massive glowing blue serpent looms over them, triggering system warnings of an absolute powerhouse. Noah grits his teeth in despair, genuinely believing this might be the end of the line. This colossal beast lets out a deafening snarl, towering over the frozen, helpless group. Leon and Shea tremble in absolute horror, completely unable to take another step forward. Even the fiery mage closes her eyes in defeat, utterly crushed by this hopeless situation. While the little boy bursts into tears, his loud wails echoing through the tense cavern. This massive blue serpent narrows its glowing eyes, reacting to the toddler's loud, echoing wails. It slowly lowers its colossal head, looming directly over the frozen and trembling group. Everyone embraces for the absolute worst, internally cursing their incredibly rotten luck at this moment. Noah panics as the beast focuses entirely on the child, realizing he cannot move to intervene. But his despair instantly turns to sheer confusion as the giant beast does something entirely unexpected. Instead of snapping its jaws, the colossal serpent gently nudges the crying toddler's tiny hand, instantly turning the kid's terrified wails into pure giggling delight as he reaches right back, happily patting the massive creature's glowing green scales without a single care in the world, before casually plucking a glowing blue scale right off the legendary beast's nose, which instantly dispels the overwhelming aura of terror paralyzing the entire group. This entire group lets out a massive collective sigh of relief as the tension finally breaks. While the majestic blue serpent gently coils itself back around a single glowing egg, telepathically commanding the intruders to leave the cave only when the cursed eclipse finally ends, prompting a sweating Noah to stammer out a very polite agreement to avoid any further trouble as the terrifying howls of mutated beasts echo through the blood-red forest outside. Once the morning sun finally rises, the group steps outside to set up a proper camp, but our boy glances back at his companions with a deeply pensive look on his face, staring up at the bright, peaceful sky to process the absolute madness of the previous night, especially after seeing the baby playing with a legendary scale that permanently boosted Noah's luck stat, proving that their wild encounter with the mythical beast was definitely not a dream. While Noah is fast asleep under his warm blanket, heavy boots quietly approach his resting spot. Aurelia gently pats his shoulder to wake him up, letting him know his shift has officially started. Our boy sits up with a massive yawn, agreeing to take over the watch so she can rest. She immediately collapses onto the makeshift bed, completely exhausted from their wild, monster-filled night. Noah stretches his arms high, feeling surprisingly refreshed after only a couple hours of sleep. This sculptor sits nearby carving a wooden toy and noting that high-ranking adventurers barely need rest. Surprised by this, our boy asks if the sculptor skipped sleeping entirely to work on his crafts. Leon smiles and holds up his tiny wooden bear, explaining it needed repairs after the intense battle. He asks Noah to ask if these wooden puppets can actually shrink and grow at will. Looking closely at the miniature beast, he curiously wonders if these animated creations can actually feel pain. Leon bursts out laughing, explaining that his creations are just wooden sculptures incapable of feeling pain. But he admits his little cub feels alive, prompting Noah to note how much he cares. And Leon beams brightly, revealing his ultimate dream is to sculpt something indistinguishable from reality, which our boy admits is a massive goal, though the sculptor is determined to try anyway. Especially since their wild encounter with the legendary blue serpent might have actually unlocked his potential. Suddenly, a blue system screen chimes to life in front of Noah, displaying his updated stats, revealing that he gained a massive chunk of levels from surviving that terrifying cave encounter, prompting him to swipe the interface to check how his individual skills have leveled up, only to find a barrage of notifications confirming his terror resistance has officially leveled up, which is a massive win since the paralyzing fear was easily his most hated status effect. Noah taps the back button on his system screen, eager to check his updated attributes, only to find his base stats looking pretty solid before the system starts updating. And with a loud chime, his attributes suddenly skyrocket across the board, sending our boy into a celebratory frenzy that completely baffles the nearby sculptor, who asks if he really just boosted every single one of his stats simultaneously, forcing Noah to freeze mid-cheer as he realizes he just broke common sense, prompting Leon to facepalm at our boy's complete lack of basic adventurer discretion. Leon urges him to rest, But Noah's body begins to violently tremble from the sudden power surge as the sculptor warns him that his rapidly expanding aura is putting his body into overdrive, suggesting meditation as a quick fix to stabilize his newly acquired power before he explodes. Noah grits his teeth, desperately trying to focus his mind and fight through the agonizing pain as he sits cross-legged to begin a deep breathing exercise, slowly stabilizing his chaotic aura, which immediately triggers a system notification confirming his mana regeneration has officially leveled up. Meanwhile, Leon watches him closely, surprised by how quickly the kid is managing to recover, until our boy finally opens his eyes, letting out a massive sigh of pure relief. This sculptor asks if he feels better, earning a cheerful nod from a fully refreshed Noah, before Leon explains the strict limits on how many attribute points an adventurer should safely allocate, noting that only wealthy nobles usually learn these safety rules to prevent their bodies from exploding. Our boy nods along thoughtfully, pretending to fully grasp the dangerous reality of his reckless power leveling, only for another sudden system chime to interrupt his thoughts with an unexpected new update. This system chimes again, revealing his Void Hunter's eye has leveled up to let him see life force. Intrigued by this new perk, Noah immediately channels his mana to test out the upgraded visual skill, green energy bursting from his hand as his eyes flare with a brilliant mystical light, but he quickly rubs his eyes to ease the sudden strain of his newly enhanced vision, turning his gaze toward the sleeping mother and child resting peacefully under their warm blankets. There he spots a blinding light radiating from the legendary serpent scale clutched in the baby's hand, prompting Leon to quietly ask how the little toddler is holding up after their wild night, and the sculptor happily notes that the kid's fever has miraculously vanished almost entirely. Noah warns him to keep that high-energy scale hidden, but Leon already plans to make a protective necklace. Just as Aurelia walks over to check on them, completely unaware of the legendary loot they're casually discussing. Watching the mother and child sleep, Aurelia notes the exhausted monsters give them a perfect head start, as she confidently predicts they can easily reach the city of Windrest before the sun goes down, prompting Leon to head over and gently wake up the resting mother and her baby, while Noah suddenly pops up behind the fiery mage to ask if she is doing alright, causing her to jump slightly before quickly insisting that everything is absolutely fine. She admits she is still incredibly rattled by their near-death encounter with the legendary, but the sculptor interrupts their chat by announcing that the camp is fully packed and ready, gently promising the baby to keep the magical scale safe until they reach their destination, only for our boy to suddenly freeze as strange tapping sounds echo through the quiet forest. Before the group finally arrives at the massive towering walls of the city the next day, two guards wearing mechanical wings smile warmly before leaping off the massive city walls, leaving Noah to stare up in absolute shock at the flying contraptions soaring overhead, as Aurelia happily explains they are feather gliders powered by embedded wind mana stones, promising to show them how they work once they finally step inside, though our boy is currently too busy scratching his head looking for the gate, until Aurelia points toward a massive glass elevator shooting up the side of the wall, which they quickly board alongside a few other travelers to begin their steep ascent, only for the magical lift to suddenly launch upward with stomach-churning speed, sending a stumbling Noah crashing right into Aurelia as she laughs at his terrible balance, before they all turn to admire the breathtaking view of the sprawling forest below. Stepping off the lift, Aurelia leads the group toward the city's heavily guarded security checkpoint while a crowd of bustling travelers chatters noisily near the massive stone entrance. Leon suddenly stops us, our boy looking incredibly sheepish as he prepares to offer a small token, presenting a handful of C-grade mana stones as a heartfelt thank you for their protection. This smiling mother cradles her healthy baby, expressing her deepest gratitude for their heroic rescue. Our boy and Aurelia stare in absolute shock at the surprisingly valuable glittering orange gems, with the sculptor beaming warmly, insisting they accept the reward without any hesitation. Soon after, Noah steps up to the security desk to register his name and age, placing his hand on a magical lie-detecting orb to confirm he has no cult affiliations before easily passing the final background check and officially stepping into the bustling city. As Noah strides down the stone hallway, a mysterious hooded companion walks quietly in his path while a barrage of system notifications suddenly confirms his escort quest is officially complete, rewarding him with a legendary dimensional pocket tome that acts like a supercharged inventory system. But his celebratory thoughts grind to a halt as his boots click against the stone floor, revealing a breathtaking view of the sprawling sunlit city of Windrest stretching out before them, sending our boy into absolute awe while his rogue companion smirks at his childish excitement, prompting him to pump his fist eager to finally register as an official adventurer. Soon, a guard straps a pair of mechanical glider wings onto Noah's back with a friendly pat. At the same time, his companion slips on an enchanted mask designed to alter her voice and hide her face, leaving our boy to dryly point out that she now looks like a creepy stalker. She retorts that looking creepy is far better than her old party finding out she's alive, as they both step up to the edge of the massive city wall with their gliders ready. But looking down at the dizzying drop below instantly makes our boy's stomach do backflips, while he desperately tries to summon an ounce of courage, while his masked companion casually tells him she'll head down first and wait for him below. Without a single shred of hesitation, she dives headfirst into the open sky like a pro, prompting Noah to pump his fist and aggressively hype himself up for the big leap, until his mechanical wings suddenly snap open with a violent jolt that scares him half to death, forcing him to take a few shaky steps forward until his boots touch the very edge, where he stands braced against the howling wind, preparing to take his first leap of faith. Noah takes a bold step forward, suddenly feeling incredibly light as he leaves the solid ground behind, and with a deep breath he plunges straight into the open sky to begin his descent, only to immediately stiffen up like a wooden board, completely failing to glide gracefully, leaving the watching guards to pity his absolute lack of basic aerial coordination, while another guard openly laughs at his incredibly tragic attempt at flying. Our boy blushes in pure embarrassment, realizing he has absolutely no idea how to steer, but he quickly recalls the guard's instructions about channeling his own mana into the device, focusing his mind to direct his energy flow and control the surrounding wind, which instantly activates the mechanical feathers, sending him soaring gracefully over the sprawling city until he loses control again, screaming in absolute terror as he plummets toward the ground. Noah's terror instantly melts into pure adrenaline as he flips upside down with a joyful shout, while his masked companion glides smoothly beside him, enjoying her long-awaited return to the open skies, though she quickly warns him that these mana-guzzling gliders will drain their energy reserves incredibly fast. Hearing this, our boy flashes a highly mischievous grin that spells absolute trouble for her wallet, instantly turning their casual descent into a high-stakes race where the loser pays for dinner, and before she can even protest, Noah rockets past her with a massive burst of wind. He cackles with pure delight as he swoops gracefully over the sprawling rooftops of the city, but his smug victory lap is cut short when his companion suddenly blurs right past him, prompting Noah to lock in with a fierce look of determination as he refuses to lose, channeling a massive surge of mana to launch himself forward like a literal blue rocket. Suddenly Noah's mechanical glider wing snaps under the intense pressure of his massive mana burst, sending him plummeting straight down toward the busy streets below while screaming for his life, as he desperately flails in midair, completely unable to stop his rapid, terrifying descent, before he crashes headfirst into a street vendor's cart with a spectacularly loud explosion. Our boy groans in pain, sitting amidst a pile of squashed watermelons and scattered feathers, while his masked companion lets out a heavy sigh at his incredibly chaotic landing. Shaking off the embarrassment, she leads him through the streets to get him registered, but their peaceful walk is cut short by blood-curdling screams echoing from a nearby building, prompting a highly bewildered Noah to stop dead in his tracks completely on guard. Just as a bruised adventurer is violently hurled through the front door onto the pavement, this poor guy flies backward through the air, propelled by a massive shockwave of raw force, before he slams hard against the wooden wall and collapses face-first onto the stone pavement, while a massive blue-scaled lizard man roars at him to stay out of his guild, prompting Aurelia to facepalm as she suddenly remembers exactly who runs this chaotic establishment. Turning his fierce gaze toward the newcomers, the giant lizard man demands to know their so our boy nervously explains that his masked companion brought him here to register, which instantly makes the giant guildmaster lean in close with a booming shout, announcing their arrival so loudly that both of them have to cover their ringing ears. Suddenly, a polite white-haired receptionist in a green uniform steps forward to greet them, leaving Noah to nod politely while silently noting just how incredibly tiny she actually is. She flashes a cheerful welcoming smile and warmly invites them to step inside, leading the way back to her desk while the massive lizard man watches them pass. But Noah suddenly freezes mid-step, his eyes widening in absolute horror at the floor, revealing a pile of bruised and battered adventurers scattered across the lobby like discarded trash. This receptionist casually waves it off, explaining it is just a friendly sparring day with the boss, assuring them that these half-dead warriors are simply too exhausted to stand up right now, prompting our boy and his masked companion to gulp in unison at the sheer madness. Before Noah carefully tiptoes over a groaning body to avoid stepping on anyone's face, resting her hands on the counter, the tiny clerk asks if they know how registration works, only for Noah to vigorously shake his head, admitting he has absolutely no clue. Noah asks if she's too young for this job, only for her to reveal she's actually a half-Celestian. Meanwhile, his masked companion steps up to request a replacement plate after losing hers on a recent quest, prompting the tiny receptionist to raise a finger and ask for a quick moment to check their records. Before a glowing magical book suddenly flies off the shelf and floats gracefully through the air, landing right in front of the clerk as she prepares to look up the rogue's registration details, only to casually announce that a reissue will cost them exactly 12 F-grade mana stones. Without missing a beat, the masked companion drops a handful of high-grade blue gems onto the counter, explaining that she is also vouching for Noah since he has absolutely no official identification here, leaving our boy sweating bullets as she explains the guild is his only shield against major legal trouble, which the receptionist quickly confirms, noting that unregistered outworlders usually end up in serious trouble. This tiny receptionist explains that joining the guild is by far his most liberating option, since an unregistered outworlder like Noah lacks any official proof of identity in this realm, sliding a dense registration form across the counter while offering to read it aloud. But a convenient system notification instantly translates the entire contract right before his eyes, revealing a magically binding agreement that places him directly under the local guild's jurisdiction. She kindly suggests he can hire a scholar to review the complex legal jargon, before leading the duo toward a private room to conduct the official screening, where our boy places his hand on a glowing stone to state his name and age. Next, she asks if he has any ties to the 3 dangerous cults, only for the Okfat's orb to suddenly spark, prompting the clerk to demand a full explanation. Noah sweats bullets, desperately trying to work out how to answer without sounding like a criminal, since he was technically summoned by those exact cultists to be used as a sacrifice. Though he did immediately murder them all and escape with his rogue companion, which he decides is probably too much detail for a basic background check. Keeping his answers vague, he prompts the tiny receptionist to move on to the next hot question, who asks if he considers himself a friend or foe to the local kingdom, before presenting a glowing holographic list of forbidden dark magic classes for him to review, prompting our boy to quickly lie that he doesn't possess any of those sketchy paths. Only for the tiny clerk to suddenly deliver some rather unfortunate news. Suddenly the giant lizardman guild master barges in, admitting he couldn't help but overhear their conversation. This giant lizardman steps right into the room, his heavy boots thudding against the floor. Looming over our boy, the massive beast asks if he is indeed the newly arrived outworlder, introducing himself as Razar Draken, the legendary and incredibly buff guild master of Windrest. Noah politely shakes his massive hand, completely unaware of the absolute chaos he just walked into. However, the giant lizardman suddenly grabs our boy by the waist with a terrifyingly tight grip, effortlessly hoisting Noah over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes to begin his combat evaluation. Nay can only offer a highly apologetic look as Noah screams for help, while heavy thunderous footsteps echo violently down the hallway of the guild building, carrying our terrified protagonist straight toward what is bound to be a very painful experience. As Razar loudly orders his tiny receptionist to immediately prepare the outdoor training screaming at the top of his lungs, Noah is carried right out of a high window, before the massive lizard man slams him onto the stone floor with a bone-shattering thud, leaving our boy completely crumpled inside a fresh crater while questioning his life choices. Razar smugly beckons him to stand up and show off whatever skills he has, radiating the absolute confidence of a boss who knows he holds all the cards, prompting Noah to nervously ask for just a few minutes to prepare a strategy, which the giant surprisingly agrees to, pointing him toward a nearby waiting chamber. Our boy wastes no time slipping inside, slamming the heavy wooden door shut behind him, letting out a massive sigh of relief now that he finally has some breathing room, instantly summoning his glowing system interface to search for any desperate tactical advantages. Pulling a thick black tome from his glowing system screen, Noah decides it is time to pivot. He flips the book open, hoping this legendary item can actually save him from a massive beating. A system prompt pops up, asking if he wants to unlock a legendary dimensional pocket ability. He taps yes, triggering a chain reaction that immediately offers to evolve his basic inventory space. Confirming the evolution, his inventory fuses with the pocket dimension to create a massive storage space. Meanwhile, the giant guild master aggressively bangs on the door, demanding to know if he is ready. Noah asks for another minute, his eyes locking onto a nearby ceramic vase to test his skill. Channeling his mana, a glowing blue magic circle instantly wraps around the target to initiate the transfer, and with a soft hum, the entire vase dissolves into pure light as it gets sucked away. Leaving our boy highly amused as he literally feels the heavy object resting inside his trouser pocket, Noah commands the vase to return to his hand, channeling his glowing blue mana, and with a sharp flash, the ceramic object instantly materializes right back in his palm, prompting our boy to test his limits by pushing it back into the dimensional rift, which works flawlessly, leaving him absolutely thrilled that he can now teleport items at will. Suddenly, the heavy wooden door is violently kicked open with a spectacularly loud crash, revealing the giant lizard man who demands to know if Noah is finally ready to fight, as he confidently gestures for our boy to step out and show his strength. Stepping onto the wide stone arena, Noah stands opposite the massive, towering guild master, who casually explains that Noah only needs to land a single blow to pass, leaving our boy scratching his head at a condition that sounds almost too easy. This crowd of onlookers erupts into wild cheers, eager to see how this lopsided matchup lays out. Noah is fully expecting to humiliate our boy in front of the entire guild, as he strikes a massive pose to flex his overwhelming million-point aura for the crowd, prompting Remy to let out a tired sigh as she prepares to officiate the match, while the two combatants square off on opposite sides of the massive stone arena. Raising her hand high, the tiny receptionist calls for both fighters to get ready, before chopping her arm down to officially signal the start of the evaluation, sending Noah sprinting forward at full speed to close the distance before Razar can react, drawing his twin daggers as glowing blue magic circles flare up around his wrists, launching himself high into the air to deliver a decisive strike right from above. Just as Noah thinks he has the drop on him from behind, the giant lizard man grins, revealing that he was completely expecting this exact aerial maneuver the entire time, spinning around with terrifying speed to catch our airborne hero completely off guard, and unleashing a devastating counterpunch that connects directly with our boy's midsection, sending him flying backward to crash violently into the stone floor below. Noah sits up in the fresh crater, coughing up blood while nursing his bruised ribs, while Razar claps mockingly, genuinely impressed that the kid almost pulled off a sneaky trick. But our boy refuses to stay down, his hands trembling as he grips his weapon, triggering a sudden system notification as his glowing red eyes activate a desperate survival skill, prompting the giant guildmaster to pause as he senses a sudden shift in the air. Razar taunts our boy, demanding he heal up and show off some real power. Quickly rising to his feet, Noah channels a dark purple aura around his twin daggers, before unleashing a rapid slash that cuts through the air with a sharp hiss. Suddenly he vanishes into thin air, leaving the giant lizard man scanning the empty arena, only to materialize directly above his opponent with a glowing blue magic circle, thrusting his blade straight into the portal to bypass the giant's defenses, which sends the sharp tip of his dagger warping right toward Razar's neck. Unfazed, the massive guildmaster casually grabs the blade barehanded, thoroughly praising his void tricks. But Noah is already executing his next move, slipping behind him like a ghost, ready to catch his second weapon and deliver a truly unexpected follow-up strike. Before Noah can even swing, Razar effortlessly catches both of his wrists mid-air. This giant lizard man smugly advises him to switch to a weapon with better range, but Noah suddenly activates his dimensional storage, causing his daggers to vanish instantly, leaving our boy empty-handed but safely out of the giant's iron grip, while Razar casually tosses the confiscated weapons aside with a disappointed sigh. As the twin blades clatter uselessly onto the stone floor, Noah struggles to catch his breath, only for the massive guildmaster to crack his knuckles and declare his turn, sending a wave of pure dread washing over both Noah and the spectators, as the towering beast coils his muscles and prepares to launch a devastating charge, exploding forward with a sonic boom that completely shatters the arena floor. Noah stares at the massive, smoking crater where the giant lizard man was standing just a second ago. Our boy quickly shifts his stance, wondering if the massive guildmaster can somehow teleport too, but Razar suddenly crashes down from above like a meteor, completely shattering the stone floor, forcing Noah to slide backward at high speed to avoid getting flattened by the shockwave. This giant lizard man chuckles heartily, genuinely impressed by our boy's quick reflexes, before flashing a terrifying toothy grin and declaring that the warm-up is officially over. With a sudden burst of speed, Razar lunges forward to press his overwhelming advantage, but Noah barely manages to block the incoming heavy strike with his newly summoned dagger, gritting his teeth as the sheer force of the impact threatens to shatter his bones, sending him flying backward through the air as he struggles to regain his balance. Utilizing his newly unlocked dimensional blink, our boy instantly teleports right behind his giant opponent, only for the massive lizard man to leap high into the air with a deafening roar, leaving Noah flat on his back as he desperately raises his monstrously transformed, unleashing a vicious slash that actually manages to draw blood from the giant's thick hide. But the legendary guildmaster barely flinches, immediately grabbing our boy's wrist in an iron grip, before effortlessly sweeping his massive tail to pin Noah completely flat against the stone floor. Looking down with intense curiosity, Razar asks how the kid obtained a grafted void beast arm, while our suffocating protagonist internally screams because he literally cannot draw a single breath. Suddenly, Noah's body begins to tremble as a surge of dark purple energy violently erupts outward, catching the giant lizard man completely off guard as the sinister aura wraps around them both. Sensing the sudden surge of dark energy, the giant guildmaster immediately tries to shut it down, but Noah merely grits his teeth, completely unfazed by the giant's condescending remarks. Razar doubles down on his grip, confidently explaining that his overwhelming aura has completely paralyzed our boy, which would be a great speech if Noah hadn't already his dimensional pocket right under him, instantly snatching the giant's leather pants right off his body with a swift magical swipe. This sudden breeze leaves the massive lizard man completely stunned as his brain struggles to process the theft, while the shocked crowd gasps in horror at the giant's newly exposed, family-friendly lower half. Teleporting a safe distance away, our boy catches his breath while Razar begrudgingly respects the sheer audacity, before the pantsless guildmaster hurls a massive weapon straight at Noah to keep the pressure on. Demanding to see what other ridiculous tricks this crafty outworlder has up his sleeve, dodging the flying weapon, Noah prepares to activate his dimensional pocket once again. As the system interface confirms he is accessing his newly upgraded storage space, sending his consciousness diving straight into the dark void of his personal inventory, our boy realizes he needs a massive brainwave to survive this lopsided beatdown, questioning how on earth he can land a hit on a vastly superior opponent until his eyes lock onto a jar of black rocks floating in the void, prompting him to snatch the container of gravel with a brilliant, highly questionable plan, and he immediately chucks the debris straight through a portal right at the giant's face, this pocket sand tactic working flawlessly to blind the massive guildmaster in a split second, leaving the screaming lizard man completely vulnerable as a dozen magic circles materialize above him. Noah hurls the gravel through his portals aiming the debris straight for the giant's eyes, and the pocket sand tactic works perfectly, leaving Razar blinded and thrashing in pain, but a sudden system warning flashes red, alerting our boy that his mana is dangerously low. Ignoring the alert, he activates his dimensional blink to launch one final desperate assault, only for the massive lizard man to instantly grab his ankle midair with terrifying precision, effortlessly flipping our hero over like a ragdoll to completely shut down his momentum and slamming him hard against the stone floor to deliver a brutal reality check. Coughing for air, Noah simply grins and whispers that the giant should have looked behind him, prompting Razar to turn around just as a dozen glowing portals materialize in the air, sending a barrage of summoned daggers flying forward to finally land the winning strike. Razar glances back in surprise as Noah's daggers successfully pierce his thick hide, but instead of getting angry, the giant lizard man simply flashes a massive, satisfied grin, casually offering a massive hand to declare that our boy officially won the match. Pulling Noah up from the shattered floor, the towering guildmaster cements his approval, while Remy raises her arm to loudly announce that Noah has passed his evaluation, sending the entire crowd of spectators into an absolute frenzy of disbelief as they frantically whisper among themselves to determine where the kid actually ranks, until a guild member checks the records and reveals Noah placed 48th overall, landing him comfortably in the top 50 and leaving the entire arena completely awestruck. Still, our boy remains incredibly confused until Remy explains this was just a timed survival test. Remy casually mentions that the giant lizard man had already beaten down over 100 challengers today, leaving Noah completely dumbfounded as he realizes he just barely survived a heavily fatigued boss, screaming in disbelief while the jolly giant simply laughs off the insane marathon workout. Suddenly a massive cascade of system notifications floods his vision with endless skill upgrades, forcing our boy to stare in absolute awe at his massive post-fight stat gains, especially since his signature blink skill has officially evolved into an epic tier ability, allowing him to bypass normal distance limits and slip directly through the mysterious astral rifts, while his newly acquired spatial resistance passive makes him far more resilient to raw magic. Walking down the quiet hallway, Noah reviews his newly optimized mana capacity and cognitive speed, only to suddenly freeze in his tracks as he senses something highly unusual waiting behind the next door. Noah reaches out and grabs the golden handle, slowly pushing the heavy wooden door open, only to be greeted by a furious echoing shout about some rotten-fested troublemakers, prompting our boy to awkwardly ask if he just walked into a terrible situation. Remy confirms the bad timing, complaining that some abyssal scum have slipped right past her watch, which immediately makes Noah wonder if she is referring to Aurelia's shady former party members. Aurelia nods grimly, explaining that her betrayal was far from just an isolated incident, as more reports of missing people are directly tied to quests taken by specific guild members, leaving the white-haired receptionist clutching her head in absolute frustration over these elusive cultists. Noah asks if they have located the targets. Aurelia points toward a nearby town, but Remy suddenly looks up, offering to pinpoint an even more specific location for them. Remy closes her eyes and channels her magic, summoning glowing papers that float around her. Noah watches in utter confusion, but Nay quickly shushes him to explain it is fate magic. Suddenly, the receptionist's eyes snap open, glowing with a brilliant starlit blue energy, and she snatches a single piece of paper right out of the swirling magical vortex. She confidently declares the targets are hiding out in a town called Aquarius. Noah warmly thanks Nay for her help as she prepares to head out, while Remy officially issues a high-stakes quest to track down the treacherous Iron Fists, prompting a system notification to pop up with a very specific rule to keep one alive. As they arrive at the bustling city, Nay asks if he still needs to buy a spear, and she leads the way through the streets while Noah gets easily distracted by a fountain. Following Aurelia down a shady alleyway, our boy keeps a close eye on their surroundings. Noah admits the creepy vibe is getting to him, but she tells him to stop complaining, leading him straight to a heavily carved wooden door tucked away in the stone walls. Pushing the door open, Aurelia casually greets an orange-haired crafter named Josiah, who looks up in surprise. This bubbly craftsman instantly lights us up, ecstatic to see his favorite Firebird back in town, and he practically sparkles with joy as he rushes forward to welcome his old friend. Wrapping Aurelia in a massive, enthusiastic hug that she surprisingly doesn't immediately try to escape. She quickly introduces our boy as her traveling companion, prompting Noah to offer an awkward little wave. These two guys share a friendly handshake, instantly hitting it off with easygoing, polite smiles. Turns out Josiah comes from a legendary family of genius crafters, though he humbly downplays his talent. Josiah suddenly looks down, curiously asking Aurelia what happened to her signature combat gauntlets. She sighs deeply, explaining they were lost during her capture by that shady cult, but her grim expression quickly shifts as Josiah hints at a potential silver lining. This bubbly crafter eagerly offers to forge her a brand new custom spellbound set instead, and Aurelia happily accepts the offer, hoping he can finish the job by today. Turning his attention to our boy, Josiah asks if he needs any custom gear too, prompting Noah to request a spear before the crafter happily leads them inside. Walking down a grand hallway lined with high-grade weapons, the duo heads toward the vault, where Josiah presents a sleek spear capable of unleashing 3 simultaneous strikes at once, before showing off a rare wind-tuned spear designed to launch devastating blades of air. Josiah cheerfully encourages him to look around, though our boy seems slightly overwhelmed by the massive selection. Strolling past rows of high-grade weapons, Noah keeps his eyes peeled for something that truly stands out until a sudden, dark aura makes him freeze as his instincts scream at him to stop. Josiah warns him that the glowing red spear is cursed, carrying a deadly rot that kills its wielder, which naturally makes our stubborn protagonist want it even more, begging for just a quick look. Reluctantly handing it over, the crafter watches as the system identifies it as a rare, self-growing weapon, prompting Noah to turn around with a massive grin, eagerly asking how much this dangerous toy costs. This leaves the poor craftsman completely speechless, staring in absolute disbelief at our boy's suicidal weapon choice. But before they can negotiate, a swirling blue portal suddenly erupts in the middle of the room, pulling their attention toward a mysterious new destination as the magical vortex violently expands. Noah casually drops that a wind elemental just invited him directly inside the swirling rift, but Aurelia warns him that entering means getting instantly shredded into pure, useless mana, which would be a great deterrent if Noah couldn't already see a massive temple inside, prompting our reckless boy to offer his hand and suggest they take a leap together. She immediately grabs his collar to stop him, screaming that this is a terrible idea, only for Noah to activate his newly upgraded blink skill and drag her right in, vanishing from the workshop. Activate his newly upgraded blink skill and drag her right in, vanishing from the workshop as the magical vortex completely swallows them both whole. Suddenly, the duo finds themselves plummeting down a chaotic rainbow-colored dimensional tunnel while screaming, hurtling head-first through the unstable spacetime continuum with absolutely zero control over their descent until Noah spots their exit and prepares to stick a highly chaotic landing. Hurtling toward a glowing doorway, they spot the tiny wind elemental waiting for them before they crash straight through the portal in a blinding flash of light, triggering a system alert that confirms they have officially entered the wind astral plane. This landing is anything but graceful, sending both of them face-planting hard onto a red carpet, prompting Aurelia to immediately scream at our boy for his incredibly reckless stunt. Suddenly, a calm voice echoes through the grand hall to welcome the unexpected intruders, revealing a stunning queen lounging on a golden throne surrounded by giant feather fans. She looks down at them with an elegant, highly amused smile that radiates pure authority, which instantly brings Aurelia to her knees as she stammers out a greeting to a goddess while Noah silently prepares to use his identify skill to see who they are dealing with. But his system completely glitches out, failing to identify her and displaying only question marks. She bursts into a hearty laugh, mocking him for trying to scan a literal deity, leaving Noah completely stunned as he wonders how this divine being already knows his name. She casually explains that as the goddess of knowledge, keeping tabs on him is child's play, taking a slow, elegant sip of her drink while letting the revelation sink in. Panicking, Aurelia immediately forces our boy's head down to beg the goddess of Era for forgiveness, calling him an absolute idiot for recklessly following a tiny wind elemental into her domain. But the goddess admits she is actually quite amused by their highly unexpected arrival, as the little spirit floats over to whisper some juicy gossip directly into her ear, prompting Aurelia to quickly clarify that our boy is actually just incredibly lost and stupid. Aurelia continues to roast our boy, suggesting his parents must have dropped him on his head, but the goddess gently intervenes, calmly explaining that this reckless trip wasn't entirely Noah's fault, pointing out that fate, or rather, the strange parasitic entity clinging to his arm, pulled him here, before snapping her fingers to offer him a much-needed celestial shower to wash away the stench. Instantly, a massive torrent of magical water blasts Noah, making him screech like a startled cat, leaving our boy blinking in absolute shock as the sudden deluge completely vanishes, only to realize his clothes and hair are completely dry despite the massive downpour. While the goddess floats down to explain she just cleansed the corruptive void residue from his body, gliding right up to his face to inspect her handiwork with an incredibly smug grin, forcing Noah to hold his breath as the divine presence suddenly gets way too close. Suddenly, the goddess reaches out and casually yanks the cursed red spear right out of Noah's system screen. Avera inspects the weapon, noting it once belonged to the legendary Scarlet Valkyries led by Raylina, pointing out that while the spear is currently dripping with deadly crimson rot, it still holds immense power. Looking directly at our boy, Avera asks if he realizes that Raylina herself has marked his very fate, which only leaves Noah sweating in utter confusion since he has absolutely no idea who that is. Aurelia quickly chimes in to explain that Raylina was actually the ancient, long-lost goddess of war, while Avera paces around with the weapon, confirming it indeed belonged to that legendary divine order. Turning back to him, Avera drops a massive bombshell, claiming Noah must have already met this legendary war deity, sending our protagonist into a state of absolute shock as a sudden forgotten memory flashes in his mind, recalling a mysterious armored woman who once gripped her hands and tearfully apologized to him. Noah squeezes his eyes shut, desperately trying to piece together that hazy, fragmented memory. But he admits to Avera that the details are slipping right through his fingers, prompting the goddess to stare back with an intense, knowing look in her eyes, before a subtle, highly enigmatic smile slowly begins to play across her divine lips. She wraps the cursed spear back up, explaining his fate-touched mark will guide him straight to Raylina, instructing our boy to deliver a message about a long-forgotten promise when they finally meet. Seizing the moment, Aurelia steps forward to ask the goddess a crucial question of her own, demanding to know how the treacherous abyssal cult is currently infiltrating their guild ranks. Unfortunately, Avera casually floats her drink away, claiming this is one secret she cannot share, since the dark void completely shields the cult's movements from her divine sight. Avera offers a compromise, pointing out her massive library filled with rare knowledge and even human rock music. But she demands a fair trade of knowledge for knowledge, wanting something she doesn't already possess, leaving the duo scratching their heads as they try to think of a worthy trade, until a sudden stroke of genius hits our boy, making his eyes light up with excitement. Grinning mischievously, Noah approaches the goddess, claiming he has a secret too scandalous to say out loud, and as he whispers the juicy secret, Avera gasps in absolute shock, clutching her chest, while Aurelia stands in the background, completely bewildered by whatever nonsense Noah just shared. Satisfied with the trade, the goddess officially grants them free rein to explore her divine library, before floating away with a warning not to disturb a grumpy resident named Vati, prompting Noah to proudly admit he just traded some top-tier celebrity gossip from his old world. While Avera takes another sip of her drink, Noah smugly boasts about his god-handling skills, leading them straight into the massive divine library where our boy immediately starts hitting the books. But his reading session is cut short when his parasitic arm suddenly begins to twitch, prompting Noah to happily welcome back Tony, his weirdly sentient void arm, after its long nap, as the sleepy parasite yawns and pats his chest, completely unfazed by their recent divine adventures. Reaching into his pocket, our boy decides it's time to pitch a highly unusual upgrade, pulling out a gold ring so Tony can finally experience some well-deserved personal space, and gently sliding the band onto his dark-clawed finger to see if it fits, asking the parasite if it can successfully inhabit the jewelry and gain some much-needed independence, which triggers a sudden surge of dark energy as Tony eagerly accepts the cozy new home. Swirling dark energy violently wraps around the clawed hand as the golden ring begins to fuse, as the ring's central red eye suddenly erupts with an intense blinding crimson light. And just like that, the dark hand proudly displays its brand new eye-catching accessory. This sentient ring blinks in utter surprise, realizing it now has its very own body, prompting Noah to burst into a cheerful laugh at his parasite's adorable new look, peering down through the ring's fisheye lens to ask if his buddy is feeling alright. Our boy then asks Tony to try detaching himself, leaving the parasite completely stumped, until a sudden light bulb moment hits the little guy, sparking a brilliant idea, causing the band to swell up and strain against the dark-clawed finger. Before Tony successfully detaches, sprouting a pair of tiny energetic red wings, Noah watches in awe as the newly detached parasite flaps its tiny red wings right in front of his face, revealing a surprisingly adorable single-eyed bat form that instantly wins over our protagonist's heart, prompting our boy to watch the little creature flutter around the massive library with pure childlike wonder. Until a sudden system notification chimes, announcing that Noah has officially reached level 91. While another screen pops up to reveal his rank has increased to intermediate, unlocking a brand new metamorphosis skill, leaving him absolutely stunned by the massive stat boosts and free attribute points he just secured. As Noah continues browsing the endless bookshelves to find some useful ancient lore, a familiar squeaky voice suddenly calls him a stinky man from behind, prompting our boy to dryly fire back that the little wind spirit's mother had far better manners, only for the hyperactive elemental to start spinning around him, eagerly promising to show him something cool. This hyperactive wind spirit cheerfully waves at Noah as he follows her down the hallway, leaving our boy slightly skeptical about where this hyperactive guide is actually taking him, until a massive swirling blue portal suddenly materializes right in the middle of the corridor, prompting Noah to smirk as he realizes his little tour is about to get interesting, deciding a quick stroll through a dimensional rift won't hurt. He steps right into the light, only to emerge inside a breathtaking sunlit conservatory where the little spirit eagerly awaits him. Walking down the lush green path, Noah follows his glowing guide deeper into the massive greenhouse, but his eyes suddenly widen in sheer disbelief as he spots what lies ahead, revealing a magnificent glowing fountain that seems to be the source of the area's magic, as several more adorable wind elementals suddenly materialize, happily fluttering around our completely bewildered protagonist. This little wind spirit cheerfully waves at him, completely thrilled to show off her favorite spot. But as Noah looks down at the fountain, something small suddenly splashes into the water, causing our boy to gasp in absolute shock as his jaw hits the floor, because a completely different world seems to be shimmering right beneath the water's surface. Yet before he can investigate, a sharp black claw taps the edge with a warning, revealing a massive, highly majestic blue peacock standing right behind him with a stern look, which instantly startles Noah as he slowly turns around to address this giant bird, guessing that this must be Vati, the notoriously grumpy resident the goddess warned him about. This giant bird sighs in annoyance, complaining about Avera's endless habit of dragging random mortals here, before leaning in close to sniff him, noting he reeks of both void and crimson energy. Staring deep into Noah's soul, the giant bird realizes our boy is actually bound by fate. Noah asks if destiny is literally holding his hand, but Vati quickly shuts down that fantasy, explaining that fate merely stacks the deck to make certain paths much more likely to happen, meaning our boy's strong cosmic ties would have dragged him to this sanctuary eventually. However, the grumpy peacock has zero patience left and demands Noah get lost immediately, warning him to never trespass in the wind astral realm again unless he wants trouble. Instead of running, our polite protagonist bows deeply to ask one final crucial question, bringing up the mysterious scarlet spear he was just researching back in the divine library. Since he cannot find any way to stop its deadly crimson rot from consuming him, Vati delivers some brutal news, revealing that healing magic actually makes this incurable rot worse. Noah frowns, asking the giant bird what his next move should actually be. Vati explains he must bond with the spear's spirit and let the rot run wild, warning him that he has to tame the weapon before the corruption completely consumes him, leaving our boy to stare at the newly identified spear of crimson end to weigh his options, before a confident, highly reckless smirk slowly begins to spread across his face, as he proudly declares himself a risk-taker while preparing to face the deadly curse head-on. This grumpy peacock scoffs at his foolishness, though he admits this suicidal stunt will be highly entertaining, offering a smug thank you as the crimson energy begins to swirl violently around him, unleashing a massive torrent of dark red power that completely engulfs his entire body, while a barrage of system warnings pops up, asking if he truly wants to bond with death. Noah braces himself as the crimson energy surges, ready to dive headfirst into the curse, only to immediately splash down into a literal, bone-chilling lake of fresh blood, finding himself surrounded by massive towering piles of rotting corpses under a crimson sky. Our boy looks around in absolute horror, completely bewildered by this nightmarish landscape, wondering what kind of twisted realm he just stepped into as a sudden presence looms. Standing completely alone in the middle of a literal river of death, he tries to orient himself, but the sheer volume of fallen soldiers lining the shores makes his stomach churn. Suddenly, a lone female warrior holding a massive spear appears through the hazy red mist, prompting Noah to instantly draw his weapon and charge forward to defend himself, only to freeze when he locks eyes with a scarred, red-eyed woman staring right back. Noah realizes this battle-scared warrior is the legendary Scarlet Valkyrie remnant he needs to bond with, but she skips the pleasantries and immediately lunges forward with a deadly lightning-fast swing, unleashing a massive wave of crimson energy that threatens to tear him to shreds, forcing our boy to teleport away at the absolute last second to avoid getting skewered, as her devastating attack obliterates the ground behind him in a massive fiery explosion. Sliding backward across the river of blood, Noah quickly reassesses his highly aggressive opponent, only to watch in horror as she effortlessly rips her weapon back from the flesh pile, leaping high into the air to prepare another crushing downward strike with terrifying speed, her glowing red eyes locking onto him with absolute cold-blooded killer intent. Before she unleashes a massive vortex of golden flames that completely engulfs the battlefield, Noah barely has time to process the heat as the massive vortex of golden flames closes in. But the Scarlet Valkyrie isn't done summoning a massive rain of crimson spears from the sky, forcing our boy to curse under his breath as the deadly projectiles lock onto his position. And though he teleports away, the relentless barrage completely obliterates the ground right behind him, only for the warrior to instantly give chase, her foot splashing violently into the river of blood, as she dashes forward with terrifying speed, determined to end this fight once and for all. Our boy glances back in sheer panic, realizing this relentless warrior is already right on his heels. Swiftly pulling off a slick teleportation trick, he materializes directly behind her as she swings at empty air, seizing the perfect opening to swing his own spear with everything he has left, cleanly impaling her through the chest, ending her relentless assault in a sudden spray of blood. Noah winces in pain as her acidic blood starts sizzling against his bare skin. But the crazy warrior doesn't even blink, screaming as she charges right back through the flames, spinning her weapon into a massive fiery vortex while Noah prepares for the next impact, as she leaps high into the air to deliver a devastating downward strike, unleashing a brutal explosion of energy that our boy barely dodges with a timely teleport, sliding backward across the bloody lake while realizing just how close he came to dying. Before he channels his own dark energy into his spear for a final counterattack, rushing forward with absolute determination to end this exhausting duel once and for all, throwing his weapon with incredible force as he tells her to catch his best shot, leaving the legendary warrior staring in absolute shock as the battle finally reaches its end. Noah's thrown spear hits its mark perfectly, impaling the legendary warrior right through her chest. Before she can even process the blow, our boy teleports directly above the bloody battlefield, landing a devastating follow-up slash that sends another massive wave of crimson blood spraying everywhere, as the heavy droplets sizzle and dissolve into the boiling lake of death below, sliding back to create some distance. Noah watches his stubborn opponent struggle to stand, quickly raising his hand to somersault a glowing blue magic circle to finish this, which instantly locks onto the spear still deeply embedded in the warrior's back, ripping the weapon free with a brutal yank that makes her scream in agony. This crimson spear flies straight back to its master, cutting through the hazy red air, allowing Noah to deftly spin his weapon as his exhausted opponent finally drops to her knees. This blunt end of Noah's spear thwacks her right on the head with a sickening crunch, leaving our boy panting heavily as he stands victoriously over his kneeling defeated opponent. But this relentless warrior merely growls in fury, refusing to accept her sudden defeat, as she suddenly unleashes a massive burst of golden flames that forces him back, leaping high into the air once again to deliver another devastating downward strike, which detonates against the bloody ground with a deafening, absolutely massive explosion, sending Noah flying backward to crash violently into the shallow lake of blood. Clutching his bleeding chest, our boy groans in pain as he watches her closely, realizing to his absolute horror that her severe wounds are rapidly stitching themselves shut, forcing our exhausted protagonist to drag himself back up for another round. This relentless warrior's eyes flare with pure unadulterated rage as she locks onto him, screaming for him to fight her as she charges forward with blinding speed, forcing Noah to curse his luck while bracing for another brutal head-on collision. Their weapons clash repeatedly in a dizzying blur of pure hatred and desperation as they trade blow after blow, lighting up the bloody sky with sparks. But she suddenly slips past his guard, delivering a heavy bone-rattling strike, which cleanly impales our boy right through the chest in a brutal spray of blood. Coughing up a mouthful of crimson, he watches his health bar plummet to critical levels, prompting him to activate a desperate teleportation circle right beneath his bleeding feet, pulling him out of the nightmare realm just before she can finish him off. Noah grits his teeth as he prepares to activate his final desperate trump card, summoning a glowing magic circle that instantly pierces the Scarlet Valkyrie remnant with a brutal strike, which triggers a system notification confirming he successfully inflicted a severe bleed effect on her, letting a smug, bloody grin spread across his face as he declares his trap complete. A new system window pops up, announcing the activation of his devastating skill, Blood Rain, which begins draining the life force from the countless fallen soldiers floating in the Crimson Lake, swirling the stolen vitality directly into Noah's body to rapidly patch up his fatal wounds. Though the sudden violent surge of raw energy makes his entire body crackle with pain, gritting his teeth through the agony, our boy watches a bright blue flash envelop his vision, as he teleports directly above the kneeling warrior to deliver a crushing final downward strike. His devastating downward strike connects, slicing right through the warrior's defenses with a brutal swish. Instead of falling, this absolute maniac grabs the spear shaft embedded in her chest, pulling herself forward along the sharp weapon to close the distance between them, leaving our boy completely stunned by her suicidal level of sheer unhinged commitment before she leans in and literally bites a massive chunk out of his neck. Our boy screams in pure agony as the excruciating pain surges through his entire body, desperately hammering her with a barrage of heavy blows to force her off him, finally throwing a powerful strike that sends her crashing back into the bloody lake. Heavy droplets of fresh blood slowly drip down, rippling across the crimson water, clutching his mangled neck. Noah desperately checks his system screen while his relentless opponent stands right back up. A system alert flashes as Noah activates Blood Rain, swirling the crimson lake around them. Our boy grits his teeth, feeling the warm blood dripping from his freshly mangled neck, while his unhinged opponent looks up in disbelief, wondering what kind of monster she's fighting. Ignoring his own massive bleeding chest wound, Noah refuses to back down now. This relentless warrior screams in fury, launching herself forward for another suicidal high-speed charge, summoning this barrage of glowing golden spears to rain down on him from above, forcing our boy to swiftly dodge her massive flame-infused swings with split-second timing, only for her to leap high into the air once more, preparing a devastating downward strike. Deftly anticipating the move as he swings his own crimson spear in a wide defensive arc, cleanly slicing through her defenses and sending another heavy spray of dark blood flying. Noah gets sent flying backward from the impact, letting out a painful groan as he crashes, but he immediately activates his lifeblood skill, cursing his opponent's ridiculous cheat code healing abilities, before launching himself right back into the fray with a high-speed dash, trading a flurry of lightning-fast spear strikes that echo across the bloody battlefield. Though a warning screen alerts him that his max health has plummeted to 59%, prompting our boy to summon multiple illusions of himself to completely encircle the warrior. Unfortunately, a low mana warning pops up just as he prepares his next spell, forcing him to rely on pure physical speed as they charge each other once more, but Noah simply bites down on a mana stone to instantly restore his energy reserves, meeting her head-on with a massive clash that sends sparks flying into the crimson sky. Multiple glowing blue magic circles suddenly materialize in the air, completely surrounding the bewildered warrior. Seizing the moment, Noah channels his remaining energy to activate a massive teleportation array beneath his feet. His crimson spear flies through the air with a deafening whoosh, crackling with dark power. With a powerful throw, he sends the weapon crashing straight down into the glowing magic circle, unleashing a brutal barrage of energy blades that impale the screaming warrior from every single direction. Our boy desperately prays this overkill attack is enough as a low mana warning flashes red, while another massive spear pierces cleanly through her chest in a violent spray of dark blood, sending the legendary warrior crashing heavily onto her knees in the middle of the bloody lake. Noah collapses into the crimson water, panting heavily as his body finally reaches its absolute limit. Clutching his throbbing head, he groans in agony as a severe mana backlash violently hits him. As Noah struggles to recover from the mana backlash, a trembling hand reaches out from the crimson lake, revealing the defeated warrior desperately sobbing and begging her mother for forgiveness. Our boy blinks in confusion, completely thrown off by this sudden emotional family drama, while the dying remnant continues to weep as she slowly sinks into the bloody depths. Noah slowly approaches her kneeling form, watching her reach out toward the empty sky, letting out a heavy sigh as he prepares to put her out of her misery. But before he can even strike, she collapses face first into the blood with a heavy thud, her lifeless body floating silently in the lake as her tragic story finally ends. Planting his spear firmly into the ground, Noah stands there in absolute silence, collapsing onto his knees as a system window finally confirms his hard-fought victory. Just as Noah thinks it's over, a foot splashes back down into the crimson pool and a bloody hand suddenly grabs his ankle, dragging him right back into the nightmare as the unhinged warrior crawls out of the blood like an immortal horror movie villain, delivering a brutal punch that sends our boy crashing face first into the shallow lake. Standing triumphantly over his battered body, she looks down at him with cold, murderous eyes before wrapping her hand tightly around his throat to lift him off the ground, casually asking what she actually has to do to make him stay dead this time, only to launch him across the battlefield like a rag doll with terrifying, effortless strength. Noah skids violently across the surface of the crimson water, desperately trying to recover, instantly freezing in absolute terror as he notices something bizarre happening to his surroundings. Noah watches in disbelief as his relentless opponent prepares to unleash her absolute worst, swirling the crimson lake into a massive, terrifying vortex of raw, unbridled energy as thick ribbons of blood wrap tightly around her battered body like protective armor. Realizing this unhinged warrior still has a ridiculous final phase up her sleeve, she lands with an intimidating thud, radiating a terrifying aura of pure crimson malice. But the bizarre transformation continues as thorny black vines wrap around her ankles, forming a creepy, glowing halo of blooming spider lilies right above her head, leaving her standing there looking like a literal goddess of death ready for round 2. Refusing to be outdone, Noah pulls out a high-grade mana stone and bites it, triggering a massive wave of system notifications as his stats instantly skyrocket to insane levels. With her new death goddess form fully active, the red-haired warrior dashes forward with terrifying speed, screaming in absolute fury as she closes the distance to tear him apart. Noah braces himself with his spear, realizing her unarmed state somehow made her even faster, and their weapons collide with a deafening clang that rattles his entire skeleton, sending our boy flying backward as he dryly compliments her absurd physical strength. But the relentless warrior immediately presses her advantage with another lightning-fast slash, prompting Noah to flash a smug grin as he prepares to activate his favorite escape tool. Instantly teleporting right behind her, he catches the unhinged warrior completely off guard, swinging his spear in a brutal arc that she barely manages to block in time, only for her to instantly grab him by the collar, completely shutting down his momentum. Noah gasps for air as her iron grip tightens around his throat, cutting off his oxygen. She effortlessly hoists him into the air, leaving our boy dangling like a helpless ragdoll. Gritting his teeth, Noah desperately tries to pry her hand off before delivering a sharp kick. His boot connects solidly with her chest, forcing her to release him as his spear falls. She barely flinches, mockingly reminding him that raw physical strength alone won't save his life today. And she immediately counters with a massive swirling blood slash that catches him completely off guard, sending our boy skidding backward across the crimson lake as his boots splash through the water. He collapses onto one knee, coughing violently while desperately trying to catch his breath. But a sudden memory of his dragon mentor reminds him of an even tougher opponent, sparking a brilliant idea that just might give him the ultimate edge to win this fight. Activating a glowing blue teleportation circle, Noah prepares to execute his high-stakes counter-strategy as he teleports right above the red-haired warrior to deliver a brutal surprise downward slash, cleanly impaling her chest with his spear while shouting a triumphant victory cry. But the unhinged warrior barely flinches, triggering her own passive blood-draining skill to stay standing, which rapidly drains Noah's maximum health down to a dangerously low 51%. Realizing he cannot win a battle of pure attrition, our boy decides to deploy his neurotoxins, calling upon the ancient spirit of his crimson spear to fully bond with its new master, before launching himself downward like a meteor to deliver one final decisive strike, injecting the deadly neurotoxins directly into her body with a satisfying sizzling hiss. Yet the relentless death goddess still manages to swing her weapon and block the fatal blow. This red-haired warrior swings her arm with terrifying force, sending Noah flying backward with a painful grunt. Crashing heavily onto the ground, our boy spits blood while cursing her relentless cheat code physical power. But he quickly gets back on his feet as a dark ominous aura begins to swirl around him. Unleashing his ultimate Void Hunter skill, Noah channels a massive vortex of destructive black energy before swinging his spear to launch a devastating wave of dark power straight at his opponent, catching the unhinged warrior completely off guard as the dark energy tears through her defenses, cleanly severing her entire arm with a sickening snap that sends blood spraying everywhere. Naturally, her ridiculous healing factor immediately kicks in, knitting the bloody flesh back together with creepy tendrils, prompting Noah to activate his next magic circle before she can even finish regenerating, charging forward with his glowing crimson spear to finally put an end to this endless nightmare. Noah drives his spear straight through her chest, hoping this final plunge finally ends her. But her passive blood drain skill instantly triggers, siphoning his life force directly through the weapon as she takes a heavy splashing step forward despite having a literal spear through her torso. Our boy freezes in absolute shock as a bloody hand suddenly clamps onto his face, pinning him flat on his back while she looms over him like a ravenous beast before sinking her teeth straight into his neck in a desperate feral bite. This kid recoils in pure disgust, utterly baffled by this unhinged vampire-style combat tactic, only for a barrage of cursed notifications to pop up as she slams him down, unleashing a brutal follow-up slash that leaves him screaming in agonizing pain, while thorny black vines wrap tightly around his neck to choke the remaining life out of him. Noah can't help but appreciate the view, even as the unhinged warrior chokes him to death while his health bar plummets to a pathetic under the crushing pressure of her vines, leaving him in critical condition with a measly 3% of his life force remaining before she delivers a final brutal stab that seals his fate once and for all, forcing our boy to accept that his journey has finally reached its tragic end as his eyes slowly close and he prepares to embrace the cold darkness. Drifting away into a silent void while a glowing spider lily blooms beneath his falling body, a massive bright red system notification pops up to officially confirm his demise. Suddenly Noah wakes up in a cosmic realm, staring at his own death screen in utter confusion, only to freeze when a familiar voice suddenly calls out to him from the dark. Noah stares in disbelief as Tony, his bat-like familiar, suddenly starts speaking in a high-pitched voice. This little bat explains they are currently floating in a bizarre realm where reality and dreams mingle. Confused by the cryptic spiritual jargon, our boy demands a much simpler explanation from his pet. Tony warns that losing this mental battle of wills means his soul will be gone forever, revealing that the Crimson Rod is actively eating away at his life force in the real world. Looking at his glitching system screen, Noah realizes his body is technically still clinging to life. His familiar clarifies that his mind only thinks he died because of the brutal beatdown he took, prompting Noah to ask how exactly he is supposed to force his mind back into the fight. But the little bat's vague suggestion of fighting together only leaves him scratching his head until Tony suddenly dives straight into his chest, unleashing a massive surge of dark energy. Noah suddenly gasps and clutches his throat as a massive surge of dark energy floods his system, clutching his head in absolute agony as Tony's power forcefully merges with his own consciousness, while his familiar urges him to focus and finally reclaim control over his battered mind, allowing our boy to shatter the illusion of death and blast his way back to reality. Back in the physical world, the red-haired warrior stands triumphantly over Noah's seemingly lifeless body, only for his fingers to suddenly twitch as he forcefully drags his consciousness back to life. Grabbing the shaft of his spear to pull himself up despite the thorny vines wrapping around him, leaving the unhinged death goddess completely speechless as her supposedly dead opponent stands right back up, she instantly leaps backward to gain some distance, her crimson blood spraying across the shallow lake, landing heavily on the water as she prepares to defend against his sudden, impossible resurrection. Noah stands tall amidst the dark aura, declaring that this brutal death match is far from over, though his battered body is still shaking violently under the crushing weight of her thorns. As his newly activated symbiote metamorphosis triggers a massive 25% boost to all his stats, giving him exactly 60 seconds to completely obliterate his opponent before his time runs out, he lunges forward, their weapons colliding in a spectacular shower of sparks and raw power, before he delivers a devastating slash that tears right through her defenses with absolute precision. But as he skids to a halt, he suddenly senses something incredibly strange happening. Realizing his bat familiar is actively modifying his body to handle this overwhelming dark energy, as his left arm forcefully mutates into a massive, terrifyingly sharp demonic claw, and his eyes glow with a feral blood-red light ready to unleash absolute chaos. Noah flashes a wicked grin with his newly mutated demonic claw, declaring they are finally on equal footing, before launching himself forward to seal her defeat with another glowing magic circle, crunching down on another high-grade mana stone to instantly replenish his energy by 300%. This massive boost spikes all his attributes by 50 points as he raises his spear with a roar, leaving the red-haired warrior completely stunned by the sudden overwhelming pressure radiating from his body. Their weapons collide with a deafening clank that sends shockwaves rippling across the bloody lake, unleashing a blinding pillar of light as our boy proves he is stronger than ever before, trading a relentless flurry of high-speed slashes and parries in a dizzying dance of death. But the unhinged warrior suddenly counters with a massive crimson swing that catches him completely off guard. With only 37 seconds left on his transformation timer, Noah desperately braces for her next relentless assault. Tony actively hardens Noah's skin to absorb the incoming impact, giving our boy some much-needed defense. And though the red-haired warrior lands a devastating blow, his newly reinforced body barely even flinches, sending her crashing back onto the bloody water as she struggles to regain her footing. Refusing to back down, she immediately launches herself forward for another high-speed clash, but Noah effortlessly blocks her lethal strike with his newly mutated demonic claw, thanking his bat familiar for the clutch defense while holding her blade at bay, before noticing his discarded crimson spear floating just a few yards away on the water. Instantly activating a blue magic circle, he prepares to summon the weapon back to his hand, snatching the spear right out of the portal to launch a devastating counterattack, plunging the spear straight through her chest to deliver a truly devastating final blow. This red-haired warrior coughs up blood, completely stunned by the sheer force of his brutal strike, and her massive blade slips from her grasp, splashing uselessly into the crimson lake below. Noah wastes no time ripping his spear free to prepare for a devastating follow-up attack while the unhinged warrior spits more blood, desperately trying to steady her trembling legs. But Tony is already working overtime, eagerly offering yet another physical mutation to secure their victory, which lets our boy launch a gravity-defying high kick wrapped in destructive purple energy, cleanly slicing through her thorny vines and leaving her completely defenseless in the water. Suddenly, a barrage of bloody spikes erupts from the lake, forcing Noah to brace himself as he effortlessly shreds them to pieces with a flurry of lightning-fast spear strikes, leaving him with a measly 17 seconds to finish this crazy death match once and for all. This red-haired warrior unleashes her full power, forcing Noah to block another desperate heavy strike. But as she tries to drain his life force, our boy activates his own counter-drain skill, leaping high into the air to prepare a devastating downward strike with his spear, pouring every ounce of his remaining energy into this one final make-or-break plunge, which crashes through her guard with a deafening metallic screech that echoes across the lake, cleanly impaling her chest and pinning her down as the final seconds tick away, right as his transformation timer hits 0, confirming his hard-fought victory over the legendary boss. Catching his breath, our boy looks down at his fallen foe, hoping his spear finally accepts him. While the system officially logs the kill, cementing his triumph over the level 127 monster, leaving him standing alone in the quiet, utterly exhausted but relieved that the nightmare is over. With the battle finally won, Noah's legs give out as he collapses heavily into the bloody water. Tony eagerly celebrates their hard-fought victory while our exhausted boy can barely muster a weak reply. But the eerie eye on his ring suddenly snaps wide open, pulsing with a strange dark light. A system prompt immediately appears, asking if he wants to consume the level 127 boss. And the moment he taps yes, a swirling vortex of crimson energy wraps around his hand, officially absorbing the fallen Valkyrie to boost his Devourer rank progress to 43%. Another notification pops up to confirm that the legendary Spear of Crimson End has finally bonded with him, before he suddenly wakes up floating naked in a glowing pool while a sassy peacock watches him. This feathered spectator admits she never expected him to survive such a brutal near-death experience, explaining that he is currently soaking in a tub of pure life force to heal his shattered body. This sassy peacock explains that the crimson rot completely devoured his clothes during the intense battle, prompting our boy to look down at his reflection only to let out a shocked gasp as he stares at his newly mutated body, sporting a glowing red eye and intricate dark tattoos, realizing he now looks like a straight-up villain instead of a heroic fantasy protagonist. But the peacock reminds him that this demonic makeover is what actually kept him breathing, pointing out that his newly acquired legendary spear is now a permanent part of his soul, which he tests out by effortlessly spinning the weapon to feel its perfect natural balance, until a sudden system chime interrupts his practice, drawing his attention to some massive updates, revealing that his paths, abilities, and skills have all received an absolutely ridiculous level boost, while his core attributes skyrocket and leave him with over 100 free points to spend. Noah stands in a healing pool as the peacock explains that absorbing a legendary Valkyrie yields massive rewards, advising our boy to carefully review his massive upgrades as he edges closer to E rank, who nods in agreement while scrolling through a rare bleed skill that applies directly to his weapons, before checking out a handy blood drain ability that lets him heal himself and nearby allies. And he practically drools over an epic obliterate skill that channels raw void energy to vaporize enemies. While his new rot resistance is great, he finds a double-edged pain tolerance skill slightly concerning, prompting him to dump 25 of his 100+ free attribute points straight into his stats, until a sudden realization hits him, making him freeze as a crucial question pops into his mind. This sassy peacock quickly clarifies that he avoided deadly mana backlash because the fight happened in a dreamscape, sending our boy off to find his host while the bird happily returns to her peaceful slumber. Leaving the healing pool behind, Noah walks away while the sassy peacock watches him go, as a swirling blue portal suddenly materializes in front of him to take him home. He offers a quick word of thanks to his avian savior before stepping into the light, which deposits him right back into the middle of his host's massive luxurious library. Our boy steps out of the portal immediately greeted by a familiar voice welcoming him back, only to find his host and the peacock goddess Aurelia casually playing a game of chess. They discuss his reckless behavior, noting that while he is lucky, luck is incredibly fickle, until his host dramatically surrenders the match, admitting she was completely outclassed by her opponent. Walking up to the table, Noah remarks on how close the two ladies have suddenly become, but his host immediately roasts his new demonic look, which he proudly defends as pure badassery. Aurelia warns our boy that his familiar's physical modifications are permanent, threatening his very humanity, and she delivers the chilling truth that his transformation has already crossed that line, pointing out the literal crimson rot and abyssal parasites currently flowing through his veins. Since rapid growth always demands a heavy price, she reminds him that power is never free, before deciding it is finally time for them to part ways now that their game is over, explaining that a responsible deity cannot ignore her devoted followers for too long. Our boy and his host politely offer their respect, thanking her for the unexpected hospitality, while a firm handshake officially grants Noah a legendary blessing to double his learning speed. With a cheerful wave, the duo bids farewell to their divine host as they prepare to leave, prompting the goddess to snap her fingers and instantly send them back to their own reality. Back in the real world, the goddess Aurelia casually sips a drink as a portal zips open, sending our duo hurtling through a chaotic high-speed tunnel of blinding, multicolored light, only for Noah to faceplant spectacularly onto the floor with a painful thud, leaving both of them groggy and nursing massive headaches from the sudden dimensional shift. But their recovery is cut short by the sudden ominous sound of heavy footsteps approaching. As a squad of armed guards rushes into the hall to investigate the disturbance, instantly spotting Noah's new demonic look, the guards mistake him for a dangerous void beast, and before our boy can even explain, they aggressively tackle both of them to the ground, pinning them down under a dog pile of heavy armor while shouting to keep him suppressed, which triggers a system warning that completely locks his abilities and leaves him utterly helpless. Just as things look completely hopeless, a booming voice commands the guards to stand down, revealing a heavily armored lizard man captain who immediately places them under arrest for trespassing, keeping our boy pinned to the floor while the captain steps closer to inspect them before ordering his men to throw both intruders straight into the local holding cells. This massive squad of guards wastes no time, marching our bound duo down to the dungeon, where Noah casually remarks that they might have messed up just a little bit, prompting his host to turn around with an expression of pure, unadulterated disbelief before she absolutely explodes, reminding him that she explicitly told him to be careful, listing off every single one of his reckless life choices while struggling against her magic sealing shackles and capping off her rant by pointing out that he now looks like a literal monster. Aurelia angrily declares there is no we here, completely distancing herself from Noah, leaving our boy looking completely stunned as he processes her harsh, unexpected rejection, before he quietly asks if she truly despises every single choice he has made, wondering if she genuinely feels that way about his entire journey up to this point. This sudden vulnerability catches Aurelia completely off guard, making her flinch with a visible jolt as she stares back at him with a mixture of shock and sudden guilt, sighing deeply as she admits this weakened state is just her without her active perks. But Noah gently reassures her, saying he actually prefers this much more honest version of her. Softening up, she quietly apologizes, admitting that he did not actually deserve her entire angry lecture, though our boy just smiles, fully owning up to his own reckless and idiotic behavior. Noah sheepishly admits his habit of acting way before thinking, which Aurelia immediately agrees with, and the two of them sit in silence, processing their ridiculous predicament in the dark cell, before they both burst out laughing, finding some dark humor in their shared misery, until the heavy echo of footsteps down the corridor cuts their little bonding moment short. As a guard approaches their heavy metal door and slides a key into the lock, swinging it open with a loud creak to inspect his two bound prisoners, demanding their names while holding a glowing blue holographic tablet to record their answers, which instantly pulls up Aurelia's official profile as a registered near D-rank adventurer. He asks why she entered the rift, prompting her to blame it all on Noah, leaving our boy sweating bullets as he wonders how on earth he will explain his paths. This guard suspiciously asks Aurelia about her connection to the supposed void beast standing beside her, but she quickly clarifies that Noah is registered, prompting the guard to finally accept her explanation, who promptly unlocks her glowing mana-sealing cuffs with a loud metallic clink of the chains, leaving our boy completely dumbfounded as his companion is casually escorted right out of the cell, before the heavy metal door slams shut with a deafening bang that echoes through the dark room. Letting out a heavy, exhausted sigh, Noah stares at the wall while processing his terrible luck, realizing he must desperately find a way to bypass the cuffs and access his astral script, which prompts him to strain against his bindings as a faint swirling blue energy begins to spark, praying his system will actually respond as the glowing metal cuffs begin to shine with intense light, only for the sudden violent feedback to shatter the air and leave him coughing up fresh blood. Wiping the blood from his chin, Noah grins and eagerly taps the glowing confirmation button, which immediately pulls up his locked status screen to reveal his hidden perks menu, prompting our boy to grit his teeth and force his mana through the seal. But his core violently rejects the strain, shattering his internal energy with a sickening crack. He face plants onto the stone floor as a new system notification flashes the word Voidborn, struggling to sit back up while realizing this forbidden perk might be his only escape, which the system immediately hides from external detection to keep his secrets safe, leaving him to quietly test his limits against the glowing magic sealing wall chains. As he pants heavily in the dark, his single demonic eye glowing with pure determination. Suddenly the heavy cell door creaks open, forcing him to quickly wipe away the blood. When the guard demands his name, our boy calmly introduces himself as Noah Brown, but he instantly senses a strange invasive pressure creeping deep into his mind. Realizing the guard's high-tech tablet is actively scanning and exposing his hidden status screen before the officer coldly orders him to stand up and follow him out, leaving Noah to ask for his cuffs to be removed only to get rejected. He is brought before a fancy elven noble who questions his status as an outer worlder, while Aurelia stands beside him, looking completely serious as she prepares to defend him, explaining to the skeptical noble exactly why Noah lacks any official kingdom registration before boldly stepping forward to personally vouch for our boy's character and safety. Leaving the noble to ponder the bizarre nature of Noah's unique abyssal fusion. This elven noble points out that Noah illegally entered an astral rift, risking total destruction, but his companion calmly counters that a divine creation wouldn't collapse so easily, though the governor insists that laws must be respected to prevent dangerous precedents until a guard suddenly rushes up to the desk to whisper some urgent news, delivering a secret update that makes the noble's eyes widen in sheer disbelief. Hearing footsteps behind him, Noah glances back to see who just entered the room and his heart skips a beat as he recognizes the unexpected visitor, revealing Miss Ney walking in with absolute confidence and a very serious expression as she casually strides right past our nervous hero to address the governor, politely apologizing for the trouble while the noble quickly reassures her she isn't responsible. Miss Ney shoots a sharp glance, claiming her guild always honors its word to recruit new talent, meaning Noah is officially one of theirs provided he actually agrees to join their ranks. This governor sighs and asks our boy directly if he plans to sign the contract, prompting the heavy magic sealing cuffs to instantly snap open with a satisfying metallic clink. Suddenly Miss Ney delivers a swift kick to his shin to keep him from hesitating, threatening to leave him to rot in this dungeon if he doesn't sign immediately, leaving our boy with absolutely no choice but to tap the glowing confirmation button. With the paperwork finalized, Miss Ney politely apologizes one last time before leading her group out. As they finally step out of the Grand Palace and back into the warm sunlight where Miss Ney immediately turns around to remind Noah that his troubles are far from over. Turning around with a sharp glare, Miss Ney reminds him of the absolute headache he caused her, which only earns a clueless sweating response from our boy as he tries to play dumb, prompting her to deliver a swift comedic kick to his shin to force some professional respect. threatening to let their giant lizard man ally turn him into a punching bag if he slacks off, leaving Noah with no choice but to nod frantically while sweating bullets under her intense gaze. Suddenly she grabs him by the shoulders and pulls him in close with a deadpan expression, whispering that she actually sneaked a peek at his highly classified astral script during the chaos, demanding to know what kind of freakish monster he is to possess such insanely overpowered sub-attributes. But our boy stays dead silent, refusing to leak any secrets about his forbidden void powers until she finally sighs and backs off, letting him keep his mysteries for now. Miss Ney suddenly shifts her stance, turning back to face our boy on the cobblestone street, getting right in his face to demand why he possesses two separate divine perks. While she easily understands his temporary wind blessing, the second perk completely baffles her, prompting Noah to wonder why he still got arrested if fate is supposedly on his side. But she explains that even gods must respect local laws to prevent absolute chaos, admitting she pulled some major strings with the governor to secure his incredibly lucky release, before asking if he knows anyone else marked by this legendary fate-altering status, only for our boy to admit his memories of arriving here are completely blank. Stopping in her tracks, she sighs in disappointment after realizing he isn't actually lying, casually kicking a small pebble away while asking if he knows what an ascendant is. She explains that ascendants are legendary entities whose names are completely hidden by 5 question marks, which instantly makes her spin around in absolute shock as she realizes he actually met one. Before she can press him for details, they enter a lavish hall to meet a waiting knight, prompting our boy and his companions to size up the heavily armored warrior standing before them, revealing a remarkably handsome blonde paladin who radiates an aura of intense divine authority. This legendary warrior stepping forward with heavy echoing strides to greet his newly arrived guests, while Miss Ney casually introduces Aurelia and Noah as the capable party she previously mentioned, as the handsome knight politely welcomes them, though Noah's system flags him as a mysterious paladin. But before they can even start planning, Miss Ney turns around and declares Noah is officially grounded, threatening to throw him straight back into the dungeon if he dares join this dangerous quest. Noah scratches his head, arguing that his reckless mistake is already costing him a massive pay cut, but Miss Ney shuts him down, pointing out that risking his partner's life is completely unacceptable, explaining that raw talent means absolutely nothing if his own teammates can never trust him, while wondering how Aurelia has managed to stay so incredibly patient with his constant nonsense, prompting the warrior woman to step forward and defend him, admitting he is indeed reckless, adding that our boy has actually saved her life on 2 separate occasions, which is why she is fully prepared to give him another chance to prove himself, insisting that his unique skills will be absolutely invaluable for their upcoming high-stakes quest. Sighing at their stubbornness, Miss Ney relents and orders them to be vetted by Erwist first, leaving the handsome pal test. Erwist explains he is about to activate a specialized holy skill designed to sniff out pure evil, specifically targeting anyone associated with dark cults, necromancy, demons, or any other unsavory undead creatures, promising that innocent souls will feel absolutely nothing but a comforting warm light. While Aurelia remains perfectly calm, Noah gulps hard as his internal panic button starts screaming, desperately wondering if he should just confess his sketchy void powers and run away. But before he can make a move, the paladin unleashes his blinding holy magic. Swirling golden energy wraps around them, sealing our boy's fate before he can even speak, summoning a massive winged angelic entity that instantly subjects them to the ultimate divine test, as the terrifying gaze of the celestial being bores directly into Noah's very soul, until his inner devourer violently resists the spell, flashing a massive red warning of absolute guilt. Erwis stares in absolute disbelief as his ultimate holy spell completely fails to incinerate our boy, while Aurelia stands perfectly fine under the divine halo, proving her absolute innocence. But Noah's monstrous right arm suddenly bursts into bright flames, triggering his pain-tolerant skill, as the swirling golden magic slowly dissipates, leaving the tense trio standing in awkward silence. Instantly sensing danger, the paladin grips his hilt and begins drawing his gleaming sword, pointing the sharp blade directly at Noah's throat while demanding to know his true identity. Fortunately, Miss Nei grabs his arm and orders him to put the weapon down, explaining that the guild doesn't discriminate against void users since the void itself isn't inherently evil, urging him to focus on their actual target instead of wasting time on their new recruit, which forces the frustrated paladin to grit his teeth and reluctantly agree to the plan. Erwis quickly backs down, offering a stiff apology to Nei and Aurelia while sheathing his blade, but Noah is left completely out of the peace offering, prompting him to complain immediately, though the paladin coldly reminds him that he only survived thanks to his friends, which our boy responds to by casually flipping him off the second his back is turned. Moving things along, Miss Nei taps the mission files to finally get their strategy meeting started, explaining that their primary target is actually Aurelia's treacherous former party of rogue adventurers. Sitting around the lavish table, she asks the group for any intel they have on these traitors, prompting Aurelia to reveal that they are dealing with a highly coordinated trio of killers, specifically naming their targets as the dangerous combatants in the mysterious Alta, starting with Garrett, a heavy-hitting D-rank brawler who leads the squad with a massive broadsword. Next is Evans, a versatile E-rank ranger who handles both long-range sniping and dirty close-quarters combat, and finally Alta, a creepy blood mage specializing in healing her allies during a chaotic brawl. Miss Nei emphasizes that their best bet is a swift, brutal ambush to end things instantly, prompting Aurelia to volunteer for Garrett, confident her berserker mode can match his heavy-hitting style, while Erwist nods along as she assigns him to counter the poison-using Ranger Evans, leaving Noah to deal with the crafty blood mage, despite Aurelia warning him about her tricks. With the matchup set, Miss Nei slams her hands on the desk to finalize the strategy, revealing she pulled some major favors to secure a massive flying wyvern for their rapid transit, ordering the trio to rest up and prepare for a departure before tomorrow's first light, before casually kicking them out of her office so she can finally tackle her endless paperwork. Stepping into a cozy workshop, Aurelia is warmly welcomed back by a familiar voice, as the cheerful craftsman Josiah proudly presents a brand new pair of custom-made gauntlets, revealing the epic-grade Pyroclash gauntlets forged from volcanic steel and infused with pure flame essence. She slides them on, the heavy metal fitting her hands with absolute perfection, and with a sudden grin she winds up a devastating practice punch, unleashing a massive swirl of blazing fire that lights up the entire workshop, staring in absolute awe at the incredible destructive power humming at her fingertips, before turning back to Josiah with a massive grin to praise his legendary craftsmanship. This charming merchant simply bows, claiming he only crafts the absolute best for his favorite customer, though she immediately worries about the price, only for him to joke it costs way less than Noah's spear. Speaking of Noah, Josiah steps closer and asks what on earth happened to his eye, but our boy just laughs nervously and claims it is a totally normal injury, though the skeptical craftsman warns him to get that creepy red eye checked out immediately. Meanwhile, Aurelia steps up to collect a pouch of glowing mana stones from the counter, thanking the friendly merchant who warmly wishes her the absolute best on her upcoming journey. Heading out, the duo walks down the quiet stone steps of the city streets, where Aurelia nudges Noah to ask why he suddenly went completely silent back there, bluntly asking if he has a death wish, though he claims he was just thinking, prompting her to warn him about reckless rookies who gain power fast but die faster, constantly jumping into danger under the delusion that they are completely invincible. She recalls the painful memory of her previous teammates suddenly vanishing in the middle of a quest, leaving her with a deep fear of forming attachments only to lose them all over again, turning back to Noah to point out they have been traveling together for nearly a month, admitting that despite all the chaos, she is actually starting to enjoy having a reliable partner, before bluntly offering to help him end his life now if he is truly that suicidal. With that heavy threat delivered, she casually walks ahead, leaving our boy standing in complete silence, pointing out that while he claims to be running from his past, he is still running from reality. Catching up to him, she asks if he was actually reflecting on her harsh but necessary warning, her expression softening as she realizes he might actually be taking her words to heart, though she quickly warns him not to get completely to snog his own head as they move forward. Aurelia gently pats his shoulder, admitting she really doesn't like him being this quiet, teasingly asking where her loud annoying partner who loves hearing himself talk has gone, but Noah just flashes a cheeky grin, claiming he occasionally enjoys a little peace, prompting her to laughingly dismiss his moodiness while promising a quick cure for his blues, which instantly piques our boy's curiosity as he wonders what she has in mind. Pointing out their brand new gear, she eagerly suggests there is only one logical way to test them, though Noah nervously reminds her that his toxic spear might actually rot her to pieces, so he quickly dumps 25 attribute points into his agility and constitution to survive her onslaught. Before they face off in a massive stone arena to establish some basic ground rules, this warrior woman raising her blazing gauntlets with a wild grin, demanding they go absolutely all out. Noah summons Tony, his loyal spear spirit, who eagerly answers the call to arms, as dark, shadowy energy begins to hiss and swirl violently from his demonic ring, wrapping around him like a sinister cloak while he readies his toxic red spear, leaving Aurelia genuinely impressed by how easily his multitasking familiar handles the transformation. Before the two partners take their positions and prepare to clash in earnest, Aurelia instantly closes the distance, launching a blazing punch straight at our boy's head, but Noah barely manages to block the heavy strike with his spear shaft, realizing with a nervous grin that her new gauntlets pack a serious punch. Suddenly, she blinks forward in a flash of blue light to catch him off guard, forcing Noah to quickly tap into his newly upgraded agility to dodge her next move. Noah swings his toxic red spear with blinding speed, trying to keep her at bay, but Aurelia easily deflects the strike with her heavy gauntlets, praising his decent effort, before charging right back in with a fist fully charged with blazing flame magic, forcing our boy to instantly blink high into the air to avoid getting incinerated. He spins his spear midair and launches a rapid downward thrust to catch her off guard, but the warrior woman casually grabs the weapon's shaft with her bare hand, violently yanking Noah down from the sky like a helpless kite on a string, leaving him gritting his teeth in frustration as he desperately tries to trigger his escape skill, only for a massive red warning screen to pop up, revealing his blink has failed. As Aurelia smugly explains that her new gauntlets have a handy little aura suppression effect, Aurelia delivers a brutal gut punch, sending our boy coughing up spit and folding like a lawn chair, before he rockets backward across the arena, crashing into the stone floor with a massive explosion. Standing tall amidst the smoke, the warrior woman smugly admires her smoking new volcanic gauntlets, while a shadowy silhouette slowly begins to rise from the massive dust cloud. Noah wipes the blood from his chin, glaring up with a wild vengeful look in his eyes, but Aurelia just ignites her fists again, completely unfazed by his sudden dramatic spike in anger. Gripping his toxic red spear, our boy pushes himself back onto his feet to retaliate, flashing a wicked smirk as he prepares to launch a devastating counterattack of his own, violently hurling his weapon forward with enough raw force to tear through the air, sending the deadly spear rocketing straight down at his partner to see if she can actually handle it. Just as the spear is about to impale her, a glowing magic circle suddenly manifests, warping the deadly weapon away in a sudden flash of bright blue light, leaving Aurelia scanning the empty arena in complete confusion as a ripple forms beneath her, only for the toxic spear to instantly materialize right next to her face. She barely reacts in time to deflect the surprise strike with her heavy gauntlet, but the razor-sharp tip still manages to slice a clean cut across her cheek, prompting her to swing a wild counterattack that only hits empty air, as our boy uses his spatial magic to instantly close the distance once more, leaping high into the air while summoning a massive wave of dark shadowy energy before bringing his spear crashing down against her raised gauntlets in a deafening explosion. This impact of their clash sends a massive shockwave cracking through the stone floor beneath them, but Aurelia just grins and prepares to retaliate with a fully charged counterpunch, which Noah barely manages to deflect with his spear shaft as sparks fly everywhere, prompting our boy to flash a wicked smirk while preparing his next magical trick, instantly warping around the arena to launch a relentless barrage of strikes from every angle. This warrior woman gritting her teeth as she desperately raises her heavy gauntlets to block, only for Noah to suddenly activate his blood-drained skill to completely bind her, materializing right in front of her face with a smug shout of victory, leaving Aurelia wide-eyed in sheer disbelief as she realizes she's been completely outmaneuvered, but she quickly recovers, igniting her volcanic aura to meet his final devastating strike. Noah lets out a fierce battle cry as he channels his spatial magic once more, triggering a massive explosion of fire and shockwaves that completely engulfs the stone arena, but our boy quickly realizes he might have severely underestimated her raw destructive power, as Aurelia suddenly lunges through the smoke to grab his wrist with iron-tight grip, shutting down his desperate attempt to blink away before delivering a heavy punishing blow. She effortlessly deflects his spear with her volcanic gauntlets, completely dominating the close-quarters exchange, sending Noah skidding backward across the cracked stone floor as he struggles to regain his balance. With a wild, bloodthirsty grin, the warrior woman ignites her fists for another round, unleashing a relentless barrage of blazing punches that leaves him desperately defending from every direction, barely managing to block her overwhelming strikes as the sheer force rattles his entire body. Aurelia winds up another explosive punch, forcing Noah to desperately brace himself with his spear, but our boy quickly swings his weapon around to regain some momentum, only for the warrior woman to casually grab the spear shaft mid-swing, triggering a sudden spatial blink that warps both of them into the air as they materialize high above the ground in a crackle of blue energy. Suddenly a flashing red system warning alerts Noah that his mana is completely depleted, leaving him completely helpless as Aurelia locks him in a tight mid-air grapple. Realizing way too late that gravity is about to do the rest of the work, before they crash violently into the stone floor, shattering the arena beneath them, Noah lets out a painful scream as the brutal impact leaves him coughing up blood. Aurelia lands a devastating final punch straight to Noah's face, sending him crashing down. She clenches her fist with a satisfied look, enjoying the thrill of their intense spar, while our boy lies flat on his back, completely exhausted but surprisingly peaceful, taking a moment to catch his breath on the cold, cracked arena floor until he suddenly blinks his eyes open in confusion as a shadow looms over him. This warrior woman stands over him with a warm smile, praising his incredible strength. Grabbing her offered hand, Noah dryly points out that the actual winner is talking, but Aurelia admits his performance was ridiculous considering she is 40 levels above him. Though Noah explains his ultimate skills are high-risk gambles that leave him completely paralyzed, leaving Aurelia to complain about his annoying teleportation skills while he proudly embraces his irritating play style. Stretching his arms, Noah admits the intense spar felt a bit silly but was definitely worth it, flashing a genuine smile as he thanks her for helping him clear his head, which prompts Aurelia to offer a surprisingly warm, gentle smile in return, before she pats his shoulder and reminds him that teammates always look out for each other, suggesting they find someone to purify her crimson rot before resting up for tomorrow's quest. Suddenly our boy's heart violently thumps as a dark, ominous sensation washes over him as a flashing red system notification warns him that his pain tolerance skill has officially ended, sending him collapsing to the floor in absolute agony while Aurelia watches in sheer panic, his vision blurring as the delayed damage from their brutal spar hits him all at once. This warrior woman desperately shakes him, screaming for her partner to get himself together. Aurelia screams in absolute panic, begging her unconscious partner to snap out of it when Noah's eyes suddenly snap open as he jolts back to reality, leaving him panting heavily while the warrior woman keeps a firm grip on his shoulders. He rubs his aching head in confusion, wondering what on earth just happened, while Aurelia anxiously asks if he is alright after his sudden, painful episode. Later that night our boy looks up at the sky and gasps at a massive creature, revealing a giant beige wyvern happily munching on meat next to their waiting allies. Although Aurelia is completely amazed, the blonde knight just scoffs at their dramatic arrival, prompting Noah to check the system screen only to realize this beast is just a juvenile. As the silver-haired girl dryly points out, they are not exactly heading into a full-scale war. Before they head out, Aurelia asks if there is anything else they need to know. As the silver-haired girl presents a glowing golden tracker designed to locate their targets, Aurelia carefully takes the delicate device, thanking her for the sleepless night of crafting, while Noah and the blonde knight easily scramble onto the back of their massive wyvern. Standing below, the young crafter bids them farewell with a confident, slightly menacing grin, shouting for them to absolutely demolish the enemies waiting for them in the abyss. This giant beast flaps its wings, soaring high into the clouds with our crew aboard, prompting Noah to check his status screen, feeling fully prepared for whatever danger lies ahead. But Aurelia is mostly surprised by how incredibly calm he is during his first high-altitude flight, until our boy nervously asks how often people actually fall off these giant flying lizards. Aurelia assures him that falling is impossible as long as he holds on tight, but her reassurance is cut short when the golden tracking device suddenly starts ringing, prompting the blonde knight to warn them that they need to land immediately, before the giant beast folds its wings and dives straight toward the forest below, sending our boy into a screaming panic while his companions remain completely unfazed, as the massive flying lizard barrels through the canopy at breakneck speeds, kicking up a massive cloud of dust and debris as it finally touches down, sliding across the grassy clearing before coming to a sudden violent halt. This abrupt stop sends Noah face planting directly into Aurelia's back with a loud thud, leaving our boy to finally step onto solid ground with a massive sigh of relief. Kissing the grass, Noah dramatically celebrates his survival while Aurelia mocks his complete lack of flight readiness, while the blonde knight hops down to explain the concept of basic safety to their clueless companion, tying up their massive flying mount because they absolutely have zero time to waste on small talk, urging the group to move out immediately and hunt down the heathens hiding in the woods. Pointing toward the dense tree line, Aurelia confidently directs the team toward their target's last known location, revealing a hidden cavern nestled deep within the rocky cliffs just ahead of them, prompting our boy to flash a confident smirk as he prepares to crush their unsuspecting enemies, leaving their giant lizard behind as they quietly slip into the shadow of the dense forest, eventually arriving at the mouth of a dark, eerie cave where only birds dare to chirp, before stepping inside, to find the cavern walls completely covered in glowing magical blue crystals. Noah spots a cluster of glowing water mana stones shining brightly along the damp cavern path, leading the blonde knight to cautiously scan their surroundings while reporting no immediate signs of danger, but Aurelia quickly takes charge, directing the group to follow the left path deeper into the cave, as their footsteps echo softly against the damp stone walls while they navigate the crystalline tunnels, keeping their guards up as the eerie blue glow of the mastons illuminates their path. Until the blonde knight suddenly brings his heavy armored boot to a sharp, decisive halt, ordering the others to wait behind him while he slowly reaches for his sword hilt, before suddenly launching himself forward into a full sprint, leaving his surprised companions shouting after him, drawing his blade with a sharp metallic ring as he charges headfirst into the darkness, unleashing a devastating slash that cuts clean through the cavern air with blinding speed. Noah and Aurelia watch in absolute bewilderment as their overzealous knight charges ahead, while a clueless cloaked man inside the cave turns around just in time, only to get brutally skewered through the neck by the knight's lightning-fast blade, leaving the poor guy choking on his own blood in sheer agony, before he faces plants onto the cold stone floor completely neutralized in seconds. Splattered with blood, the knight calmly turns back to call his teammates over, prompting Aurelia and our boy to quickly jog over to inspect the damage, finding their overeager companion standing over the freshly defeated enemy like a proud hunter, revealing a sinister tattoo on the dead man's neck that confirms cultist activity. As the knight points deeper into the cavern, warning them that more targets await, Noah confidently steps up to handle the remaining guards, gripping his spear with absolute focus. Charging down the crystalline corridor, our boy targets the two unsuspecting sentries stationed ahead, before suddenly warping directly above them in a flash of blinding blue light. He drives his spear straight through the first guard, instantly ending any chance of an alarm, leaving the second cultist choking in sheer horror as his partner drops dead beside him. Without wasting a single second, Noah activates his blood-drained skill to siphon the survivor's life force, turning the helpless enemy's veins completely pale until his hand limply drops to the floor, as system notifications confirm 2 quick kills and some easy experience points for our boy. Gesturing for his allies to keep moving, Noah leads the group deeper into the dark cavern, only to freeze as heavy stomps echo ahead, revealing a massive enemy wielding a giant curved sword. This massive brute is labeled as an abyssal executioner, prompting Aurelia to volunteer as bait, as she channels her fiery energy, preparing to put on a convincing performance, and with a loud thud she successfully catches the giant executioner's attention, dropping to the floor and letting out a hilariously fake gasp of distress, before sprinting away while screaming for help with the big guy hot on her heels, leading him straight into a narrow side tunnel where their trap is set, completely unaware that he is charging directly into a deadly two-man ambush. Suddenly, Noah and the knight drop from the ceiling to launch a coordinated pincer attack, closing in from both sides with their weapons primed to slice him to pieces. But the massive brute miraculously blocks both of their strikes with one sweeping swing. This brute counters with a devastating sweep, slicing through the knight and drawing blood, sending both of our boys flying backward through the damp, crystalline cavern air, while Noah barely manages to stabilize himself, completely stunned by the monster's raw power. Landing firmly on his feet, the giant executioner turns his attention back to Aurelia, but his smug confidence instantly vanishes when he realizes she isn't running anymore. Channeling her fiery rage, the warrior woman charges forward with a massive blazing fist, unleashing a devastating explosive punch that connects straight with the brute's chest, sending a massive pillar of roaring flames tearing through the narrow stone corridor, slamming the giant executioner hard against the cavern wall with a bone-shattering impact. Seizing the perfect opening, a fast silhouette immediately dashes forward to finish the job. This blonde knight capitalizes on the distraction, delivering a brutal, decisive slash to the giant's throat. And as his heavy boots step forward, the massive brute slumps against the stone wall, before a final clean decapitation completely severs the monster's head from his shoulders, leaving the headless corpse to collapse as a system notification confirms their high-level victory. This massive body hits the floor with a heavy thud, officially ending the brief skirmish. Our boy casually suggests they keep moving, which Aurelia eagerly agrees to without a second thought, as she presses her armored hand against the heavy stone door blocking their path, prompting the entire trio to put their backs into pulling the massive barrier open. But as the door rumbles open to reveal a sinister pink glow, Aurelia suddenly halts them. She holds out her hand to stop the boys, warily peering into the mysterious chamber ahead. Peering inside, they spot the notorious iron fists gathering around a glowing ritual altar. Aurelia grinds her teeth in pure disgust, recognizing the vile cultist standing right beside them. She whispers that 2 D-rank cultist chiefs are holding 3 caged hostages at the altar, prompting Noah to warn them that they must strike before their trail of bodies is discovered. This blonde knight volunteers to hold the rear, sending our duo to quietly rescue the prisoners. And with a quick nod, Noah signals Aurelia that it is time to move in. Slipping past the massive stone doors to find a sneaky path through the shadows, while Aurelia carefully creeps behind a pillar, keeping her eyes glued to the enemy leaders, as Noah uses his stealth skills to seamlessly blend into the dark stone environment, while the angry cultist chief loudly complains about the disappointing lack of quality sacrifices. This silver-haired mercenary complains about how incredibly difficult it is to capture high-ranking targets, explaining that his team actually caught 5 before the hostages decided to end their own lives, which doesn't sit well with the cultist chief, who demands exactly 5 live sacrifices for their ritual. Suddenly, a flying dagger grazes the chief's cheek, drawing blood and cutting his complaints short. As the mercenary group's hooded assassin draws his blade, tired of hearing the cultist's constant whining, before things escalate, the red-haired cultist chief steps in to play peacemaker and de-escalate the sudden tension, reminding the mercenaries that their entire deal falls apart if they fail to deliver the correct numbers, prompting the hooded assassin to begrudgingly sheath his weapon and fall back into line. Watching this internal drama unfold from the shadows, Noah carefully plans his next move, spotting a glowing blue magic trap right before he can reach the caged hostages. Slipping past the magical security, Noah quietly approaches the first cage to reassure the terrified hostage, realizing the heavy lock requires a specific runic slate key to open it, prompting our boy to ask if she can draw the pattern on the ground, which she quickly does, tracing the triangular symbol in the dust with her finger, allowing Noah to carefully carve the exact replica onto his own makeshift key, and with a satisfying click, the heavy magical lock instantly pops wide open, instructing her to slip away and find the blonde knight waiting outside for rescue. He watches as the freed captive quietly sneaks into the shadows of the cavern, while Aurelia successfully guides another hostage out of the ritual chamber at the exact same time, leaving only one final prisoner to rescue before their stealthy operation is complete. Noah slides his makeshift key into the final lock, ready to free their last captive, revealing a chained red lizard man who looks up in absolute disbelief as the heavy door creaks open, but just as our boy offers a reassuring smile, a deadly shadow looms silently behind him. Sensing the sudden shift in the air, Noah whips his head around in pure panic, only for a glowing green dagger to slice through the darkness with blinding speed, grazing his cheek and drawing blood before he can even register the assassin's presence. Before he can recover, a brutal physical strike sends Noah crashing hard onto the stone floor, followed by a barrage of toxic green projectiles that pierce straight into his chest. System alerts immediately flash red, warning him of severe paralysis and deadly toxin levels, leaving his hand glowing with a sickly green aura as his body rapidly goes numb. Noah screams in absolute agony as more toxic green projectiles pierce straight into his chest, revealing a hooded archer identified by the system as a deadly potion craft ranger who quickly pins our boy down while the system locks away his magic abilities. Meanwhile, Aurelia finds herself bound in glowing red ropes as the silver-haired mercenary smugly greets her, prompting the fierce warrior woman to glare back at her captor with pure unadulterated hatred as he leans in close, mockingly asking how she is still breathing after their last encounter. But their reunion is cut short when the red-haired cultist chief furiously storms over, forcing the mercenary to defend his failed assassination by insisting her death was supposed to be guaranteed, explaining that he personally delivered her to a secure cultist hideout near the Lost Woods, leaving the angry cultist chief to complain about the absolute disaster this unexpected survival has created. Turning around with a desperate grin, the silver-haired mercenary insists he can still fix this mess, ordering his hidden muscle to track down the two escaped hostages and drag them back, prompting a massive bald swordsman to step out of the dark, swirling smoke while the red-haired cultist chief panics, demanding they just execute everyone and flee immediately. But the smug mercenary refuses to run, pointing out the guild only sent low-rank scouts, leaning in close to mock Aurelia about their pathetic failed rescue attempt, only for the fierce warrior woman to spit directly in his face to shut him up, fiercely warning him that the guild will hunt down every last one of them. But he calmly wipes his cheek, completely unfazed by her desperate empty threats, before delivering a brutal, lightning-fast strike that leaves her gasping in absolute pain. Aurelia crashes onto the hard stone floor, leaving the smug mercenary to mock her eternal defiance, as he casually pats his chest, reminding the cultists they finally have their 5 required. However, the red-haired priestess complains that Noah's low rank means his life force is completely useless. But her partner points toward our paralyzed boy, insisting his energy is actually overflowing. Suddenly, Noah is violently dragged across the floor, coughing up blood as his body completely fails him, while a heavy leather boot steps right beside his head, sealing his grim fate. Kneeling beside him, the male cultist chief mockingly inspects our boy's horribly mutated, blood-soaked body, only to gasp in pure shock upon realizing Noah willingly hosted a deadly abyssal parasite. He grips Noah's jaw in disbelief, utterly baffled that this absolute madman is still breathing. But the impatient priestess barks at him to stop staring and immediately begin the ritual. This silver-haired mercenary casually hoists a struggling Aurelia over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes. She kicks and screams for him to let her go, but her protests do absolutely nothing. Meanwhile, another hooded grunt carries a battered Noah right toward the glowing ritual altar, where a flashing red system notification warns our boy that his astral script remains completely locked. Refusing to give up, Noah desperately commands his system to force open his abilities menu, gritting his teeth through the agonizing pain as his interface violently glitches out, but his stubbornness pays off when he successfully bypasses the lock and accesses his inventory, secretly catching a powerful purple attribute gem in his mouth to save for later. Suddenly, Aurelia and the red lizard man are violently tossed onto the hard stone floor, leaving Noah to stare up at his captors as they prepare to initiate the deadly ritual. An ominous pillar of pink light erupts from the altar, signaling the start of their dark ceremony. Wondering why their executioner is taking so long, the male cultist chief decides to go check, leaving his partner behind as he walks down the dark corridor to investigate the delay. Meanwhile, the remaining cultists raise their hands to channel their magic into the glowing sacrificial circle, where our boy lies completely motionless, bleeding from his nose as the dark energy drains his life. But inside his mind, Noah secretly orders his hidden abyssal parasite to await his command. While back in the corridor, a mysterious hand suddenly grabs a stone pillar from the shadows, unleashing a blinding flash of light that catches the unsuspecting cultist chief completely off guard. As the blonde knight charges into the corridor, unleashing a devastating slash with his glowing sword, determined to rescue his allies and put a violent end to this twisted ritual. This blonde knight's sudden ambush catches the cultists completely off guard, instantly taking down one of their own, leaving the male cultist chief to scream in absolute vein-popping fury at the sudden intrusion. But meanwhile, Noah crunches down on his hidden mana stone to trigger a massive stat-boosting metamorphosis, unleashing a violent explosion of dark energy that sends the surrounding cultists flying in every direction, prompting the terrified grunts to completely abandon their posts and scramble for the nearest exit. While the raw surge of power instantly shatters the heavy iron shackles binding our boy's wrists, which also allows Aurelia to ignite her fists with a blazing torrent of pure fire, as she roars in fury, ready to unleash absolute hell on her captors. Meanwhile, Noah's eyes glow a menacing crimson as the dark symbiote fully takes over his body. She launches herself straight at the silver-haired mercenary, determined to turn him into a pile of ashes. Aurelia crashes her flaming fists directly against the silver-haired mercenary's massive blade, while the sneaky hooded archer draws his bow to snipe her from afar, unleashing a toxic green arrow that streaks across the cavern toward our boy. But Noah casually shatters the deadly projectile with his bare, dark confused hand, flashing a terrifying fanged grin as he mockingly shuts down their cheap tricks. Leaping high into the air, our boy dives straight toward the panicked sniper, prompting the desperate ranger to throw a barrage of daggers to stop him, which Noah easily swats away like annoying flies while closing the distance, before unleashing a massive circular spear slash that completely overwhelms his opponent. With the sniper dealt with, his glowing red eyes lock onto his next target. Noah leaps through the air, unleashing a devastating blood-red slash that tears through the cavern, before throwing his spear with pinpoint accuracy to lock down the female cultist chief, who screams in absolute agony as the brutal projectile pierces straight through her chest. Utilizing his blink ability to close the remaining distance in a single fraction of a second, our boy instantly materializes right in front of her and grabs her throat in a crushing chokehold, pulling his weapon free to finish her off while she desperately gasps for air. Suddenly, a barrage of toxic green arrows pierces straight through Noah's back with a sickening crunch, triggering a system alert warning him that he has just been inflicted with a deadly life drain. But he merely glances back with glowing red eyes, completely ignoring the agonizing pain, casually spinning the priestess around to use her as a meat shield against the next incoming barrage. Suddenly, glowing red chains wrap tightly around Noah's body, pinning his arms to his sides, but our boy just flashes a terrifying fanged smirk as if this was his plan all along, instantly shattering the bindings and slicing the cultist priestess in half with a single brutal strike. Leaving her lifeless body on the stone floor, he immediately blinks toward his next target, closing the distance to the hooded archer with his dark-infused spear raised to strike. Although the agile ranger leaps backward, desperately firing a volley of toxic green arrows to defend himself, prompting Noah to laugh maniacally as he easily bats the projectiles out of the air, which leaves the masked assassin staring in absolute horror at our boy's monstrous unstoppable speed. This desperate ranger barely ducks under a devastating horizontal sweep of Noah's dark-infused spear, only for our boy to instantly spin around and snatch the arrows right out of his quiver. Noah drives his dark-infused spear straight into the archer's shoulder, drawing a massive spray of blood. This spear pierces completely through the assassin, leaving him to gasp in absolute disbelief as he falls. Landing gracefully on the stone wall, Noah looks down at his defeated foes with cold, calculating eyes, while the dying ranger curses his luck as the deadly abyssal poison rapidly spreads through his veins. With his enemies finally neutralized, Noah stands amidst the carnage as his dark aura slowly begins to fade, panting heavily as the extreme physical toll of his sudden metamorphosis finally catches up to him. But he still flashes a smug grin even as the system announces his powerful transformation has officially ended, triggering a massive wave of debuffs alongside a glorious notification that he is finally ready to rank up. Meanwhile, another hidden sniper draws his bow, aiming directly at Aurelia as she battles the mercenary, unaware that the fierce warrior woman is already roaring in fury, her fist engulfed in fire. Aurelia unleashes a relentless barrage of fiery strikes, forcing the silver-haired mercenary onto the defensive. Sweat drips down his face as he struggles to hold his ground against her overwhelming fury, screaming that he lied to her as she shatters his guard with a devastating blow, before burying a solid fire-infused fist directly into his chest and knocking the wind out of him. With her target completely off balance, she pursues him through the air like a heat-seeking missile, sending him crashing violently into the stone floor with a bone-shattering impact that cracks the earth. Gritting her teeth in pure rage, the fierce warrior woman tightens her fist for the final blow, unleashing a relentless torrent of fiery punches that completely pulverizes the helpless mercenary below her. Memories of her fallen comrades flash through her mind, fueling her desire for absolute vengeance. As she screams in agonizing grief for all the innocent lives lost to their twisted schemes, this silver-haired mercenary takes a brutal beating, his face exploding with sparks from Aurelia's relentless fiery punches, but a sudden massive shockwave forces the fierce warrior woman to halt her assault and brace herself. As the mercenary retaliates with a blinding circular sword slash that forces her to leap backward, leaving the battered Sellsword clutching his bleeding chest and coughing up blood on one knee. While Aurelia demands to know why he betrayed her, a golden healing light mending her wounds, prompting the mercenary to flash a bloody, sinister grin as he slowly begins to chuckle, before standing tall and declaring with absolute, cold-blooded malice that it was simply a job. As he unleashes a flurry of heavy red glowing slashes that send Aurelia flying backward, forcing her to cross her armored forearms to block a devastating downward strike, only to realize with dread that each of his incoming attacks is growing heavier than the last. Aurelia braces herself as the silver-haired mercenary prepares to unleash another devastating strike, but she quickly realizes she cannot afford to play defense any longer, leaping high into the air to dodge his incoming slash with perfect agility, before spinning upside down to channel a massive burst of flame into her fist, crashing down like a meteor and unleashing a violent explosion of fire, which shatters the stone floor and sends a massive shock wave through the cavern, forcing the mercenary to slide backward across the stone floor to keep his balance, though he merely sneers, mockingly pointing out that her low level made her an easy target. Hearing his smug words, Aurelia silently remembers the horrific tragedy of her past. Recalling the agonizing screams of her loved ones as they were mercilessly slaughtered, reliving the horror of being forced to slay her own mutated, screaming family members, she boils with absolute rage as her fists ignite with a fresh wave of fire, while the mercenary just sneers, claiming his greed easily outweighs her annoying self-righteousness. Disgusted by his complete lack of remorse, she prepares to end him once and for all, prompting the smug Sellsword to eagerly welcome the fight as she charges up her mana, slamming her burning gauntlets together to channel every ounce of her remaining strength, before launching herself forward like a blazing rocket straight toward her target. A violent fire-infused punch buries itself directly into his gut with a massive explosion, though the mercenary barely manages to block, sliding backward while gritting his teeth, only to immediately counterattack with a savage roar as he swings his heavy blade. This mercenary unleashes a massive red glowing slash that tears across the stone floor, but Aurelia leaps high into the air, easily dodging the deadly energy wave, before throwing a blazing fire-infused chain that stabs directly into his chest. With a powerful yank, she pulls the chain to hoist him into the air, slamming him back down with a violent, explosive impact that shatters the ground. This battered mercenary barely slides to his feet, grunting in pain as he recovers, only to drop to one knee as crackling blue lightning begins to surge around him, unleashing a massive shockwave that blows the fierce warrior woman completely off her feet, sending her crashing violently into the stone wall with a bone-shattering impact, leaving Aurelia to grit her teeth in agony as she struggles to catch her breath. Gret dashes across the stone floor, closing the distance to the vulnerable warrior woman, slamming directly into Aurelia while mockingly asking if this is her true wild side, before delivering a brutal blow that completely paralyzes her as her fiery aura fades. Standing triumphantly over his helpless victim, the twisted mercenary demands she show him more rage, cackling like a total psychopath as he eagerly prepares to end her life, prompting the paralyzed warrior to call him mad as he searches for a better reaction, wondering aloud if he should slaughter the blonde paladin fighting in the background, or perhaps take out our exhausted boy Noah who is currently lying defenseless on the floor. Aurelia screams in absolute terror for him to stop, instantly giving away her biggest weakness, which only causes Garrett to burst into a fit of maniacal, bloodthirsty laughter. Desperate to turn the tide, Aurelia quickly swallows a glowing mana stone while Garrett charges, determined to save our boy as a surge of fiery power erupts around her, with the system juicing her stats to double her capacity for one final stand. While Noah barely keeps his eyes open watching her desperate struggle from the floor, she remembers the brief but precious bond they shared during their short time together, realizing that traveling with him was the first time she actually felt happy. But the ruthless mercenary mercilessly drives his massive blade downward to finish the job, plunging the cold steel deep into her shoulder with a mocking apology, which only ignites her absolute fury, triggering a massive system buff that doubles her strength, as she officially ranks up to rank E ready to unleash absolute hell on her tormentor. A cascade of golden system notifications confirms her massive stat boost as she fully embraces her new path, before two blazing spears of pure fire impale Garrett straight through his back with a sickening crunch. But the crazy mercenary just laughs, completely ignoring the burning weapon currently sticking out of his spine. This only fuels Aurelia's rage as she dives back into the fray, her fists crackling with absolute fury, colliding with his lightning-charged defense in a massive elemental explosion that shakes the entire cavern floor. And while Garrett smugly grins, a system alert reveals she has just gained a handy resistance to lightning. Seizing the moment, the fierce warrior woman drives a brutal, fire-infused fist right into his chest, following up with a devastating uppercut that launches the heavy mercenary high into the air, shattering his ribs with a sickening crunch that echoes loudly through the dark cavern. This final explosive strike sends Garrett flying backward, his heavy sword clattering uselessly to the stone floor. Garrett spits out a mouthful of blood as Aurelia's relentless flames completely engulf him, and she keeps throwing fiery punches, determined to make him pay for every single betrayal, screaming in absolute agony and rage as she pours her entire soul into the beatdown. But suddenly a firm hand grabs her blood-soaked fist mid-air to stop the onslaught. As the blonde paladin holds her back, quietly telling her that the mercenary is already dead, dropping to her knees in exhaustion, she watches the system confirm her massive level-up rewards, panting heavily as the adrenaline finally fades and the sheer weight of her grief returns, until a sudden realization hits her, forcing her to look up in absolute panic as she desperately asks the paladin about Noah, fearing the worst for our defenseless boy, before sprinting across the shattered cavern floor to check on her fallen friend. Aurelia rushes over only to find our boy Noah completely unresponsive on the cold stone floor, tears streaming down her face as she blames herself for dragging him into this deadly mess, sobbing uncontrollably while cradling his limp, blood-soaked body close to her chest. But the blonde paladin steps forward with a grim look, admitting his healing magic has limits, though his eyes suddenly widen as he senses a faint, lingering spark of life inside Noah, explaining that while he can technically save the kid, there is still one major catch, since his holy goddess might not look too kindly on Noah's dark demonic powers. Sometime after the chaotic eclipse finally ends, the peaceful night sky returns to the forest, where a tiny panicked fox dashes frantically through the thick undergrowth to escape some unseen threat, letting out a terrified screech as a massive shadow suddenly looms directly over it. A vicious horned rabbit with glowing red eyes pounces on the helpless little fox, tearing into its prey with a brutal blood-splattering strike that ends the chase instantly, revealing its terrifying system status as a level 27 cannibalistic murder bunny. Leaving the poor fox behind, this bloodthirsty rodent immediately dashes back into the shadows, hopping effortlessly from branch to branch as it searches for its next target, sniffing the air for a mysterious red drink it can suddenly smell nearby, leaping through the dark forest canopy with absolute speed to locate the source, only to freeze in sheer terror as a sudden chilling sensation paralyzes its body. Realizing a massive terrifying predator with glowing red eyes is currently stalking it from behind, forcing the panicked murder bunny to scramble away before it becomes the next meal. Instead of running away, this crazy horned rabbit flashes a creepy toothy grin, reminding itself that it is a top-tier predator that doesn't back down from anyone, as its madness skill completely negates the terrifying aura and sends it hopping forward, boldly stepping right into the dark cavern known as the Worm Offspring's lair, its tiny paws pattering rapidly across the cold stone floor as it searches, until it suddenly halts in its tracks, spotting a massive nest just ahead, where a glowing blue serpent is coiled up, hissing softly in the dim light. This rabbit's red eyes lock onto the beast, sensing an incredibly rich life force, which only fuels its hunger as the blue serpent rears back to strike, but the rabbit leaps high and crashes down, slamming its prey into the dirt. Pushing off the cavern wall, this bloodthirsty bunny launches itself straight toward its prey, channeling a surge of crimson energy as it prepares to deliver a lethal strike, before plunging its sharp horn directly into the blue serpent's neck with pinpoint accuracy, tearing through its scales as a fountain of dark blood sprays across the cavern floor, though the thrashing serpent quickly wraps its coils around the rabbit in a desperate counterattack. But the crazy rodent violently throws the beast off and slams it down with ease, unleashing a flurry of crimson slashes that completely shred the serpent to pieces, leaving the legendary monster to flop lifelessly in a massive pool of its own blood. A glowing system notification confirms the kill of a legendary newborn lifeworm, prompting the victorious rabbit to sniff the carcass, eager to absorb its lingering power. This crazy rabbit eagerly licks the fresh blood, hoping to gain a sweet power-up from its meal, before happily nibbling on the carcass to absorb every last drop of the serpent's energy. Letting out a massive burp, the satisfied rodent stands triumphantly over the leftover scraps, but suddenly a violent surge of crimson energy erupts deep within its tiny body, unleashing a terrifying high-pitched screech as the raw power completely takes over, while its single horn splits into multiple sharp antlers amidst a creepy toothy grin. A cascade of red system alerts confirms its evolution into a terrifying draconian jackalope. Meanwhile, a stressed-out guild official slumps over her desk, completely overwhelmed by the endless paperwork, until a sudden loud knock on her office door abruptly interrupts her miserable thoughts, prompting a muscular blue lizard man in a leather jacket to politely ask for permission to enter. Walking into her office, the muscular lizard man asks if the grim news is actually true. When he asks if the council knows, she reveals she is about to deliver the news. Rizar immediately offers to accompany her, but she politely declines to save his precious time, offering a reassuring smile while promising her worried lizardman companion that she will be perfectly fine. Though he trusts her strength, Rizar still can't shake a lingering sense of deep, impending dread. Shortly before Celestine stands in the Grand Hall, introducing herself to the powerful council lords, who waste absolutely no time and coldly command her to present the official documents immediately. These high-ranking officials watch her with stern, unreadable expressions as she prepares to share the truth, sliding the critical paperwork across the polished table to let the grim reality speak for itself, leaving the powerful lords trembling in absolute terror as they realize how doomed they really are. One bald council lord waves the report in disbelief, screaming that this simply cannot be real, while another slams his fist onto the table, furiously shouting that the whole thing is absolute madness. But Celestine calmly confirms the worst, revealing their enemies are actively trying to open a new abyssal rift, leaving the remaining lords completely speechless as they slowly connect the dots on what this actually means. Realizing that a massive, unavoidable war is now the only possible outcome left on the table. Meanwhile, our boy Noah is resting peacefully in a quiet clinic room with Aurelia watching over him until he slowly opens his eyes, revealing a single glowing red pupil that hints at his demonic side. Turning his head slightly, he spots the exhausted warrior woman fast asleep in the chair beside him, and the slight rustle of his movement instantly wakes her up, her sharp eyes snapping wide open. Sitting up with his torso heavily bandaged, Noah quietly stares back at his loyal companion in silence. Aurelia stares at him in absolute silence, her eyes wide with sheer disbelief, before suddenly reaching out to pinch his cheek to make sure she isn't dreaming, only to pinch her own face next and realize that yes, it actually hurts. Tears instantly well up in her eyes as the overwhelming relief finally hits her, but instead of a warm hug, she violently slams a heavy book onto his head, leaving our boy rubbing his sore head and yelling at her in utter confusion, while the tough warrior quickly spins her chair around to hide her crying face. Seeing right through her tough act, Noah just smiles softly and lets out a sigh, gently telling his loyal companion that he is officially back from the brink of death. As she quietly wipes away her tears of joy in the warm morning light, Aurelia turns around with a warm smile, welcoming our boy back to the land of the living. Noah immediately asks how long he was out, only to find out he slept for 10 whole days. She explains that the healers did everything they could, but Noah jokingly promises he won't die that easily. Noticing her massive power spike, Noah asks if she ranked up, which she reluctantly admits is true. When he asks about Erwist, she tells him to thank the grumpy paladin for saving his life later. Our boy then shifts his focus to the cultists, his single demonic eye glowing with intense curiosity. Turns out they actually captured one of the cultists alive and managed to extract some vital information. Before she can leave to fetch a healer, Noah calls out to stop her from walking away. He brings up her previous question about his death wish, catching her completely off guard at the door, explaining that while a goddess offered him eternal paradise, he ultimately chose to return and keep fighting. Noah flashes a confident smirk, pointing out that he has a very important promise to keep, which earns him a supportive thumbs up from Aurelia before she heads out to find a healer. Leaving our boy alone to witness a massive cascade of completed quest notifications flooding his vision. Stretching his limbs, Noah grins as the system unlocks a brand new party feature and multiple path upgrades, while his passive skills level up to intermediate, boosting his resistance to soul attacks and rot. He now has 34 free attribute points to distribute as he pushes open the clinic window, letting the cool morning breeze wash over him as the system prompts him to rank up. Looking out at the horizon, he reflects on the incredibly long, brutal road he has traveled so far, remembering the desperate struggles, the terrifying beasts, and the near-death encounters that forged his strength, ready to unleash his true demonic power and show this world exactly what he is made of. Noah strides forward with his trusty spear, fully aware that his wild journey is just getting started.